Is that Lord about to descend? Between heaven and earth a faint whisper came. Everything seemed calm, but the calm did not last long. Since that's the case, then let me welcome you with the highest standard. The same faint voice spoke the moment it fell silent. Mountains roared, deep seas trembled, forest birds took flight, and myriad beasts stampeded. The Linglang immortal domain, which had been peaceful for so long, began to boil, attracting countless gazes. Some showed shock, some wore grave expressions, and others were extremely excited. This scene truly shocked them beyond measure. The Linglang immortal domain with thousands of great worlds and countless small worlds. Within the Li family in the Qingyun Great World, a grand hall was tightly shut, and outside the hall were dense silhouettes of people. Most of them were elders, and despite their age they exuded a terrifying aura. An ordinary person standing there would burst from the pressure. They were all Li family elders and ancestors. At this moment each of them stared nervously at the hall, and some even paced back and forth. They could hardly hide their excitement. Dao Yuan, stop pacing, you're making me dizzy, said the leading elder with a hint of a smile. Inside the hall a stunning woman lay on the bed with maids and female elders bustling around nervously. The woman's forehead was beaded with sweat as she had reached a critical moment. With a cry a baby's voice rang out, and the woman's face instantly bloomed with a smile. She was Su Yin, wife of Li Xinghe, the current head of the Li family. The Li family had been passed down since ancient times, one of the most glorious powers in the immortal domain, with dozens of great emperors born among their ancestors. At the moment the baby was born, the entire Qingyun Great World trembled, and not only in Qingyun, but even the entire Linglang immortal domain saw a divine phoenix phantom flying across. Colorful auspicious clouds and 10,000-foot golden light appeared one after another, endless wonders, shocking the world. This phenomenon attracted countless gazes. People from countless great and small worlds fixed their eyes on it. What's going on? How could such a phenomenon appear in the sky? I don't know. A scale like this might only be seen once in tens of thousands of years. Brother, be more confident, it should be once in hundreds of thousands of years. This phenomenon is truly terrifying. Inside the Li family. After the baby's cry and the hall was tidied, many Li family elders and ancestors rushed in eagerly. Then they looked at the baby in the swaddling clothes with excitement. The baby was round and plump with big eyes blinking as he surveyed the surroundings and the crowd. Similarly, the elders examined him. Is this a true king body? One elder took a deep breath, doubting his eyes. Yes, it's a true king body. Heaven has played a huge joke on us, another elder said with helplessness and bitterness. As for why the elders were so disappointed, the reason was simple. Although the true king body was not the worst among the 3,000 physiques ranking in the upper middle, with the Li family's resources they could cultivate him to a physique not weaker than the top 100. But so what? At best he could only reach the Saint King realm, unable to enter the Great Saint realm, let alone the more powerful Supreme Saint and Great Emperor realms. This was the limitation of the physique. If word got out that the son of the Li family head was only a true king body, wouldn't it become a laughingstock? The elders had originally planned to make him the Li family's divine son, but it seemed they would have to choose someone else. What puzzled them even more was the origin of the external phenomena. Could a true king body cause such phenomena? Absolutely impossible. There was no precedent in history. Even the top 10 strongest physiques might not have such powerful phenomena. But the timing of the phenomena was so coincidental. If not him, then who? Doubts filled everyone's minds. Today was indeed a strange anomaly. At this moment the baby, or rather Li Qingchen, finally came to his senses. I've actually transmigrated, and it seems this body isn't powerful. No way this week. Li Qingchen was speechless. In his previous life, he loved reading Xinxia novels, and always wished he could become the protagonist. Then he died in an accident, and when he woke up it was this scene. Opening his eyes he saw a group of old men surrounding him chattering about something. After listening he understood that he had transmigrated into the Xinxia world he had always dreamed of. But it seemed he wasn't the protagonist. How could a protagonist be so weak? With such a powerful family, he wasn't the protagonist. Wait, aren't protagonists usually without background, and then rise up? Seeing this setup, Li Qingchen felt he had no chance. This was the standard configuration of a villain. No matter how strong, in the end, they were just cannon fodder for the protagonist. Just then something seemed to enter his nose, and Li Qingchen sneezed. Ding! Congratulations on activating the Super Cleanliness System. Ding! You cleaned a speck of dust from your body, obtained the supreme primordial chaos body. Boom! At the moment the system's sound rang, Li Qingchen felt an unparalleled force surge into his body, vast energy erupting from within. Golden patterns appeared on his body's surface, and the entire Li family hall was filled with chaotic energy. What happened? The elders were stunned, their eyes fixed on Li Qingchen. Holy crap! Li Qingchen was also shocked. Happiness came too suddenly. Under the astonished gaze of the elders, Li Qingchen's body slowly transformed. When the transformation was complete, outside the Li family, beyond the Qingyun Great World, and even the entire immortal domain, wind and thunder changed color the 9 heavens rumbled. The phenomena became more abundant. A divine maiden phantom smiled gracefully at the Qingyun great world, and countless sword shadows hovered in the air. 2 majestic figures with unclear faces appeared, one black and one white, like gods. That lord is indeed that lord. Truly terrifying. The voice in the heavens and earth appeared again. Clearly the scene was beyond its control. This phenomenon alarmed the entire Linglang immortal domain. What's going on? Who are those phantoms? So terrifying. Especially the black and white one, like gods. This is the umpteenth phenomenon after the previous ones. I've never seen such terrifying phenomena in my life. On that side, the only powerful one is the Li family in the Qingyun great world. Could their gaze be on the Li family? If so, unimaginable what happened in the Li family to cause such phenomena. The leaders of many forces in the Linglang immortal domain were amazed. Throughout history, a phenomenon of this scale had almost never occurred. Even with 1/10 of this phenomenon, the worst future cultivation would be at the peak of Great Saint and possibly break through to Supreme Saint. At this moment, speculations about the cause of the Li family's phenomena were endless. Inside the Li family, the elders who had seen all kinds of events were stunned. They had clearly seen the true king body just now, but in an instant such might erupted. Is this the supreme primordial chaos body? An elder asked weakly after sensing carefully, so shocked that he pulled his own beard off without noticing. Probably. Yes, another elder said uncertainly, mainly because they had just seen the true king body, and in a moment it became the supreme primordial chaos body. The most excited was the old man who had been pacing outside the hall. His name was Li Daoyuan, an elder of the Li family and Li Qingxin's biological grandfather. My grandson has the potential to become a great emperor. He couldn't help but roar to the sky. Then he quickly walked to Li Qingxin, picked him up, and began running around the hall with him. The elders were afraid he would drop Li Qingxin, so they followed behind. The entire hall was in chaos. Li Qingxin felt dizzy and guessed that this was his biological grandfather. But even if you're happy, you have to consider my feelings. Outside the hall, the 5th ancestor of the Li family who had just arrived saw the chaos and turned green with anger. He punched Li Daoyuan on the head and shouted, "If you're happy, you need to be careful. What if you drop him?" The 5th ancestor was somewhat angry. After so many years, the family finally had a seedling with the hope of becoming a great emperor. If anything went wrong, he would be a sinner of the family. Actually, they were overly concerned due to their love. In reality, with the supreme primordial chaos body, Li Qingxin's physical constitution was not so fragile. Not to mention, one fall, even dozens or hundreds of times, would be fine. I heard that several holy lands and ancient families have established saint sons and divine sons. I was worried about their monstrous talents, but now it's fine. No matter what monstrosity, our Li family can crush them. Right, the heavenly sword Holy Land once provoked our Li family, thinking we had no one. If it weren't for not wanting to meddle in younger generations' conflicts, we would have destroyed it long ago. By the way, we haven't named the little one yet. Let's think of a good name. An elder suddenly thought of this. How about Li Wudi? Invincible under heaven sounds good. No, although the meaning is good, it doesn't sound nice. How about Li Yuanba? Go away if you want to call him that, go ahead, it's so ugly. Alright, let's call him Li Qingxin. Clear and ethereal, the 5th ancestor said, and sought Su Yan's opinion with his eyes. Su Yan nodded gently. Seeing that the 5th ancestor and Su Yan had agreed, the others had no objections. Li Qingxin chuckled inwardly. As expected, it's all cliches. He was not surprised. 80% of transmigrators have the same name as their previous life. Li Qingxin's mother Su Yan was also a divine maiden from an ancient aristocratic clan. Though the Li clan enjoyed far greater renown, hers was a great family that could not be overlooked. She had once been one of the most celebrated beauties of the Linlang immortal domain. When she married Li Xinghe, countless prodigies were left heartbroken, and even now many still harbored lingering feelings for Su Yan. And those suitors had all become, without exception, figures of authority, leaders of great sects, clans, and factions. Since hearing those 2 sentences from the system, Li Qingxin's entire attention had been fixed upon this extraordinary obsessive-compulsive system. His heart surged with excitement, and he could hardly wait to try it again. He stretched out his clumsy little hands, sweeping them about, attempting to brush away a grain or 2 of dust. But how could dust ever find its way into such a place? So after sweeping for a long while, he still heard no system notification. Li Qingxin steeled his resolve, flipped himself over, and slid off the bed, blowing here and there across the floor. The elder's eyes widened in panic at once. Qingxin fell onto the ground. Quickly pick him up, one clan elder cried out in alarm. Li Qingxin had blown about for ages without hearing any system notification, and upon hearing these words he grew anxious all the more. Yet being anxious served no purpose, but even knowing this did nothing to quell his urgency. Watching the clan elders treat him like a precious treasure, lifting him up and encircling him protectively, Li Qingxin was utterly at a loss, on the verge of tears. The 5th ancestor observed the chaos in the grand hall, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. He had long believed these people far too impulsive, which was precisely why each of them lingered at the Saint Realm. Given Qingshan's constitution, even if he had fallen from a height of 10,000 meters, not the slightest harm would befall him. This was the so-called folly of misplaced concern. But he seemed to have forgotten that when he himself had rebuked the other elders moments ago, his thoughts had been anything but composed. Enough, all of you are several hundred if not 1,000 years old. Can you not maintain some composure? With Qingshan's supreme chaotic body, a fall from such a height is nothing at all. The fifth ancestor took Li Qingshan into his arms and set him back on the ground. The little one seems to be searching for something. We shall simply watch. Upon hearing this, Li Qingshan felt as though he could have planted a kiss on the fifth ancestor, thinking to himself that the old man truly understood him. And so, Li Qingshan crawled across the ground blowing as he went, while a long procession of clan elders trailed behind him until they passed out of the grand hall. Distant disciples of the clan spotted a throng of elders following a baby, their eyeballs nearly popping out of their sockets, and they hurried off to spread the news. The scene descended into utter pandemonium. Extra! Extra! The clan's elders are all following a baby, someone shouted in every direction. What? A baby? How dare you make such an absurd joke? A disciple replied in disbelief, his tone dismissive. It's true. They say that baby is the one who summoned the celestial phenomenon today, another disciple spoke up. What? Quick, where is it? Let's go see. Within mere minutes, everyone in the clan with nothing to do rushed to witness the spectacle, and even those occupied set aside their tasks to hurry over, eager to see what was so special about the one who had summoned such a phenomenon. Pair upon pair of eyes converged upon Li Qingshan. Damn it! Li Qingshan felt the urge to curse. The system had given him no response, and he had already been on the verge of giving up. Yet now so many people had come to stare at him. Did he have no dignity left to preserve? But gazing at the dense sea of countless figures behind him, each wearing expectant eyes, Li Qingshan felt that retreating now would be far too humiliating. For the sake of his own pride, he resolved to persist a while longer. Yet though he had blown across every supposedly dirty spot, the system stubbornly refused to respond. Frustrated beyond endurance, he slashed his palm across the floor. Ding! You have swept away a single strand of hair and obtained the supreme Xianyuan sword. It's finally here. Li Qingshan was overcome with excitement. He had no idea where that rogue strand had come from, but it had fallen victim to his sweeping rumble. The heavens blazed with sudden radiance accompanied by a tremendous gale. The disciples were blinded by the light, unable to keep their eyes open. Only the clan elders kept their eyes slightly narrowed, lost in contemplation. In the sky, a sword suffused with a wisp of chaotic aura suddenly materialized. The blade was 7 chi in length, its entirety a resplendent gold. Several arcane runes were etched along the body of the sword, and a divine dragon coiled about its hilt, its head turned toward the blade. A faint tint of cyan edged both sides of the hilt. The sword descended slowly, coming to rest as it hovered around Li Qingshan. From the very first moment the clan elders had laid eyes upon this sword, they had not looked away. After a moment, heavens above, this is a companion sacred artifact, Judging by this aura, it has every chance of maturing into a primal chaotic artifact. The fifth ancestor leapt to his feet. Perhaps realizing that no one had answered him, he turned his head backward, and only upon seeing everyone staring at him did he realize he had grown overly excited. Ahem, that was just a momentary lapse. The fifth ancestor cleared his throat and regained his composed demeanor. At that moment the radiance gradually faded, and only then did the disciples see the sword hovering beside Li Qingshan. Majestic, domineering, sacred. The moment they sensed the undulations emanating from the blade, they were struck dumb in unison. Fifth ancestor, our Li clan has birthed such a monstrous prodigy, yet you did not inform us. Had I not sensed it in my heart, who knows how long we would have remained ignorant. Just then a cold harumph suddenly exploded from the heavens. 8 overwhelmingly powerful auras simultaneously manifested in the firmament. The entire Li clan was stirred, countless gazes turning toward the sky. Such overwhelming auras. Could the other old ancestors have awakened from their slumber? And all 8 at once. Inhales of shock echoed from every direction. Those were the old ancestors. Countless members of the Li clan would never in their entire lives behold even one of them. Yet upon Li Qingshan's birth 8 had appeared at once, and with the fifth ancestor that made 9. Indeed, not only had these disciples never witnessed so many old ancestors gathered together, even the clan elders and the fifth ancestor himself had never seen the like. For every 1,000 years one old ancestor would take charge of guarding the clan, and it was now the fifth ancestor's turn. Generally, the various old ancestors only met one another when handing over their duties. The Li clan presently had 15 old ancestors. The fifth ancestor had only ever met the fourth, and the sixth, for those 2 had been the ones to succeed him and hand it to him in turn. As for the first, second, and third ancestors, they had been in slumber for nearly 10,000 years. They would not emerge unless the clan faced a true crisis of life and death. For each appearance consumed an immense amount of their vitality, and they could not squander such opportunities lightly. The fifth ancestor raised his head, and his gaze fell upon an elder he had never before seen. Though portraits of every old ancestor hung in the clan, this was the first time he had ever met one face to face. His gaze swept across them in turn. From left to right stood the 8th, 6th, 12th, 15th, 9th, 14th, 11th, and 10th ancestors. The one who had just spoken was the 8th ancestor, a master of the art of heavenly secrets, capable of perceiving and divining all manner of things. Though not everything could be calculated through his arts, generally speaking, anything not involving forbidden matters posed no difficulty. It was he who had sensed that one blessed with tremendous fortune had been born into the Li clan, and so he had devised a means to notify the other old ancestors. As for those who had not come, it was because they slept too deeply. In truth, at their level of cultivation, most of them could sense what transpired in the world without. Greetings, honored old ancestors. Everyone present bowed hastily. All that is except the 5th ancestor. These old ancestors were the very pillars upon which the Li clan stood. So long as they remained, no one would dare trespass against the Li clan. With a flicker, several old ancestors reappeared beside Li Qingshan. The 8th ancestor lifted Li Qingshan into his arms and examined him closely. The remaining old ancestors gathered around the supreme Xianyuan sword, examining it in meticulous detail, occasionally reaching out to touch it and exchanging whispered comments. In the end, they unanimously agreed that this sword had a very high chance of maturing into a primal chaotic artifact. Only Li Qingshan knew that the supreme Xianyuan sword was in fact already a primal chaotic artifact. It merely bore a seal imposed by the system. Feeling the 8th ancestor's aura up close, Li Qingshan even sensed that the 8th ancestor was stronger than the 5th. After observing him carefully for a while, the 8th ancestor could not contain a burst of laughter. Excellent, excellent. Our Li clan has at last found hope for attaining the sovereignty in this generation. The position of divine son for this generation has already found its bearer. Qingshan shall be the divine son of our Li clan. What say you all? We have no objections. The old ancestors had just heard the 8th ancestor declare that Qingshan held the hope of attaining the sovereignty. What objections could they possibly raise? They were well aware of the 8th ancestor's attainments in such matters. Very well. Once Qingshan comes of age, our Li clan shall proclaim this to the world. For now, let those others speculate as they will. Until Qingshan reaches adulthood, the 9 of us shall take turns in guiding his cultivation. Having spoken, the 8th ancestor entrusted Li Qingshan to the 5th ancestor, and then vanished along with the other old ancestors. Later, through the conversation between his mother and the 5th ancestor, Li Qingshan also learned that his father had apparently suffered grave injuries upon entering a certain secret realm, and was now in closed-door recuperation within a small world. That was also the reason he had not yet seen his father in this life. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. Although Li Qingshan had caused a tremendous stir across the Linlang immortal realm 5 years prior, no reports of his deeds had emerged during this period. Thus, most of the outside world remained unaware of his existence. Only those truly well-established powers harbored vague knowledge, understanding that the Li family was merely lying low, waiting for the moment their movement would astonish the world. Yet even so, within the Li family, the fervor surrounding Li Qingshan had not waned. In fact, it had only grown more intense. After all, Li Qingshan was the first individual in the Li family's history to have 9 ancestral patriarchs appear on his behalf. Consequently, some within the Li family had even formed the Qingshan Society, consisting of those who wished to follow Li Qingshan. In this world, followers have always flocked around prodigies. Moreover, most already knew that Li Qingshan would become the future divine heir. The moment he turned 18 would be the moment he made his name renowned. Those who did not seize the opportunity now would find no chance later once members of other forces had already caught wind. Qingshan, the 4 realms of the physical body, are refining the skin, refining the bones, refining the tendons, and refining the blood. Upon completing these 4 realms, one enters the origin fetus stage. Beyond that lies the true essence stage, then the divine ability stage, the spirit transformation stage, the heavenly king stage, the demon king stage. As for what comes after, there is no need to elaborate. You will come to know naturally when you reach that point. For now, focus on laying a solid foundation. Inside a palace within the Li family's inner world, the 5th ancestor was explaining cultivation knowledge to Li Qingshan. Over these 5 years, the ancestral patriarchs had tirelessly worked to fortify his foundation. They not only showered him with the family's resources without restraint, but also ventured into perilous territories across the land to procure resources suited to him, even resorting to outright robbery on occasion. Yet others dared not voice their grievance, for the disparity in strength was simply too great. During these 5 years, Li Qingshan had also received numerous rewards from the system, mostly pills and resources, as though the system knew precisely what he needed at this stage. Li Qingshan could only help but feel somewhat resigned. He had unhesitatingly applied everything to himself. It must be said the system's provisions were indeed remarkable. Thus, throughout these 5 years, Li Qingshan had remained continuously consolidating his cultivation realm, laying the most flawless foundation possible. Then on this particular day, while the fifth ancestor was instructing Li Qingqian's expression suddenly changed. A powerful force seemed to erupt from within his body, surging upward. A burst of five-colored divine radiance exploded in the sky. This was the sign that his physical body's foundation had been tempered to its absolute limit. Countless people turned their heads, their faces etched with shock. That's five-colored divine radiance. Someone has tempered their physical foundation to perfection. Good heavens, what kind of monster is this? Not only a monster, but one requiring massive resources. Only superpowers could achieve this. Even a superpower would suffer severe depletion. Judging by that direction, it must be the Li family. Too formidable. Absolutely too formidable. Without exception, Li Qingqian had caused another sensation. As for the Li family members, their excitement knew no bounds. Divine Heir Qingqian is invincible. The Divine Heir is simply too impressive. The fifth ancestor who stood closest to Li Qingqian was utterly stunned, his face brimming with overwhelming excitement, more joyful than if his own realm had broken through. Fifth ancestor, I wish to go to the immortal realm battle arena, Li Qingqian said. He had long ago heard his grandfather Li Daoyuan speak of the immortal realm battle arena, located somewhere within the Linlang immortal realm. People from all manner of great worlds gathered within the arena. Should one display exceptional strength or extraordinary talent there, their name would spread across the entire Linlang immortal realm. Qingqian, already eager to make a name for himself at such a young age. The fifth ancestor stroked his beard, somewhat surprised. No, I merely wish to test the extent of my current strength. Indeed, Li Qingqian did not seek fame. He sought to verify his capabilities. As far as he knew, many disciples of major powers would visit the immortal realm battle arena early in their cultivation journey. For one to gauge their strength, for another to establish their reputation. A prime venue for the disciples of great forces to make their debut. Although Li Qingqian had not yet reached the origin fetus stage, his physical strength far exceeded that of someone at that realm. He was eager to put it to the test. While the family also possessed an arena, he felt that fighting outsiders would be more practical than sparring with his own people, for he need not hold back. Very well. If you wish to go, grandfather will accompany you. The fifth ancestor waved his hand, and in the next instant both he and Li Qingqian appeared upon the Linlang continent. Gazing at the unfamiliar continent before him, Li Qingqian's face revealed both astonishment and confusion. His astonishment stemmed from having traveled from the Qingyun Great World to this continent in the blink of an eye, allowing him to feel the fifth ancestor's profound strength. His confusion arose from having never heard of a continent named Linlang, which bore only a two-character difference from the Linlang immortal realm. Noticing his bewilderment, the fifth ancestor explained, Linlang continent is the heart of the Linlang immortal realm. It connects numerous great worlds, and virtually every powerful force maintains territory here. One could say each great world serves as the ancestral homeland of a different mighty faction. Li Qingqian remained somewhat puzzled. Logically, this place should possess richer resources and be more conducive to cultivation. So why did everyone cultivate within their respective great worlds? The fifth ancestor smiled, guessing his thoughts. In truth, the resources Linlang continent once possessed have long been divided among the powers. For every person, their homeland remains the most difficult attachment to sever. Li Qingqian finally understood. Very well, I shall take you to the arena. Following the fifth ancestor, Li Qingqian walked toward Linlang City, a distance not far from where they stood. At this moment, Linlang City teemed with bustling crowds from every corner of the realm, including spies from other major factions. The pair drew considerable attention. Is that not the fifth ancestor of the Li family? What is he doing here? And who is that boy following behind him? Indeed, I have never seen this child before. Since the fifth ancestor personally brought him to the Li family, must place great importance on him. Walking through the city, listening to the surrounding murmurs, Li Qingqian maintained a calm expression. That they could recognize the fifth ancestor surprised him not at all. The Li family had already become quite renowned within the Linlang immortal realm, and the fifth ancestor had been the patriarch guarding the family for the past millennium. It was only natural that many knew his face. Amidst countless gazes, Li Qingqian arrived before the battle arena. Crowds streamed in and out, dressed in bizarre attire, their strength varying wildly. Li Qingqian took a deep breath and followed the fifth ancestor's footsteps toward the arena entrance. He intends to challenge at the battle arena. Is this some joke? What strength could a child his age possess? Even if he is the Li family heir, entering that arena would be nothing short of suicide. Perhaps someone actually has the confidence. All eyes in the vicinity of the Linlang City battle arena converged upon the moment they spotted the boy beside the Li family's fifth ancestor, no older than mere years. Their gazes held both disdain and mockery. At this age, even disciples of major powers were still in the foundational tempering phase. Coming here would only lead to humiliation. Yet they dared not be overtly provocative, for the Li family's fifth ancestor was still present. From the moment they entered the arena, both drew everyone's attention. The fifth ancestor merely stood there, and immediately high-ranking officials of the arena approached to pay their respects. He did not engage in lengthy pleasantries, simply stating that Li Qingqian would enter the ring. The arena officials, daring not delay, immediately made arrangements, and specifically instructed the opponent not to strike too harshly. This demonstrated the considerable prestige of the Li family. Of course, Li Qingqian was unaware of these proceedings. He simply followed the fifth ancestor's instructions and stepped onto the platform. The moment he took his stance, the audience erupted into chaos. What the devil? Sending a mere child onto the stage. This is hilarious. Has the arena run out of fighters? What is this? An appetizer? Amidst the crowd's scrutiny, a man in black robes ascended the platform, holding something resembling a microphone. Standing in place, he slowly declared, "Next is a special match. The protagonist behind me is no ordinary youth. He comes from the ancient aristocratic Li family. Do not underestimate him." Boom. The atmosphere shifted instantly. What? It's the Li family's master. Stop disturbing my viewing. Who was it that called him a mere child? The Li family patriarch is present. How dare you behave so presumptuously? Ah, it's the Li family. The young master of the Li family is indeed handsome and possesses such courage at such a tender age. He is truly a role model for our generation. Make way. Don't block my view of the young master's fight. Li Qingqian watched this scene in utter astonishment. These people changed their faces faster than turning pages. Immediately after, another man stepped onto the platform. He was Li Qingqian's opponent for this round, Su Zheng, whose cultivation rested at the 9th layer of the origin fetus stage. His expression was somewhat apprehensive, fearing he might accidentally injure Li Qingqian. Come then, use your full strength, or I shall annihilate your entire clan. Li Qingqian spoke, his voice tender, yet his expression extremely serious. The man's face turned crimson. On one hand, he had been told not to use his full strength, on the other, his opponent demanded full power. What was he supposed to do? After much internal struggle, he ultimately chose to obey Li Qingqian, for Li Qingqian was after all the one from the Li family. With a mighty cry, his aura surged, and he unleashed a full power punch. Many spectators' expressions darkened, and the arena officials' faces turned extremely grim. However, upon seeing that the fifth ancestor's expression remained unchanged, they breathed a sigh of relief. Li Qingqian clenched his 5 fingers, and with the aid of his movement technique, dodged Su Zheng's strike. Gathering his strength, he delivered a straightforward punch directly towards Su Zheng. Boom. His fist crashed into Su Zheng's body. No elaborate techniques, just this simple direct punch. Whack. A spray of blood erupted from Su Zheng's mouth as his entire body was sent flying backward, crashing heavily against the barrier beside the platform before falling unconscious. This scene caused a ripple of shock among the spectators. Not merely a startle, but a profound internal tremor. How many years had passed since anyone had witnessed someone at the blood refining stage defeat a 9th layer origin fetus cultivator with a single ordinary punch? The arena fell into an unprecedented silence. Their earlier assumption, that this was merely a wealthy family seeking entertainment, dissipated without a trace. The fifth ancestor's face also broke into a smile. This completely overturned everyone's expectations. The gap between the blood refining stage and the 9th layer of the origin fetus stage was as vast as heaven and earth. Something never recorded in history. What kind of monster is this? Defeating a 9th layer origin fetus cultivator at the blood refining stage. This is too monstrous. I'm convinced. Heavens. Someone kill me and liven up the atmosphere. Stab. What the hell are you doing sticking a sword into me? Didn't you say to kill you and liven things up? I didn't mean you should actually do it. Stab. Here we go again. Next, at Li Qingqian's request, Chaling stepped onto. They were defeated one after another by Li Qingqian. Li Qingqian repeatedly astonished the crowd. Boom. As the last man in the true Yuan realm 7th layer was defeated by Li Qingqian, gasps erupted throughout the martial arena. Hisses filled the arena. Inconceivable. Truly inconceivable. A monster. A peerless prodigy. I capitulate. I am utterly defeated. What is a prodigy? This is a prodigy. The Li family truly lives up to its name. That was unbelievably powerful. Countless exclamations rang out, and Wu Zu's smile grew deeper. After a thoroughly exhilarating battle, Li Qingqian found his cultivation nearly bursting its bounds. In fact, even before arriving here, he was already near his limit. Now, after the clash, it was time to break through. Within Li Qingqian's body, as if thunder roared, his vital energy surged, and his entire body radiated a golden light. All 5 years of accumulation and refinement burst forth. No way. Wu Zu watched Li Qingqian closely, astonished by the fluctuations he felt within him. Although he suspected Li Qingqian's cultivation would soon break through, he hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. While Wu Zu was still dazed, the surges continued. Li Qingqian roared as if a great burden had been lifted. His aura rose in steps, and in the blink of an eye he breached into the Yuan Tai realm, and he kept advancing. Yuan Tai realm 1st layer. Yuan Tai realm 2nd layer. Yuan Tai Realm 3rd Layer. Up to Yuan Tai Realm 9th Layer it did not stop. True Yuan Realm. True Yuan Realm 1st Layer. True Yuan Realm 2nd Layer. True Yuan Realm 3rd Layer. Until True Yuan Realm 9th Layer it finally stopped. He could feel his physical strength strengthen many times, and his spiritual energy underwent a qualitative change. The surrounding people were numb. It was not until some time later that the crowd reacted. This is terrifying instantly at the True Yuan Realm peak, and he is only 5 years old. I fear he may be the Li family's divine son. I suddenly remember something. The huge sensation 5 years ago must have been him. Yes, over these 5 years the Li family hasn't heard any news about him. They thought he was just a flash in the pan, but who would have thought? Indeed, the crowd began to chatter again. The Li family remains as formidable as ever. Wuzu had hardly known how many times today he had been shocked. A 5-year-old at the True Yuan Realm peak. Li Qingxun would be impossible to ignore after today. After Li Qingxun completely absorbed it, Wuzu instantly came beside him and escorted him back to the clan. Just as Li Qingxun defeated the 9th layer of Yuan Tai, many powerful clans had already noticed him, and he had just now leapt to the True Yuan Realm peak. Wuzu saw many people quietly retreating, so the urgent task was to hurry back to the clan. After all, there were still numerous powers hostile to the Li family. They would not allow Li family to give rise to such a genius. Many may come to kill him, but now outside it would be hard to say. Although his cultivation was strong, he was but one person. If 4 or 5 attacked, Li Qingxun could not be protected. By the time Li Qingxun reacted, they had already returned to the Li family. Not long after stepping through the gates, a crowd of disciples densely gathered around, all curious to look at Li Qingxun. But because Wuzu was present, they did not dare come too close, instead observing from afar. Li Qingxun's name had already spread through the immortal domain. When it reached the Li family, they were instantly excited, for Li Qingxun belonged to their Li family. More than that, when they discovered Li Qingxun's cultivation had reached the True Yuan Realm peak, Li Qingxun's popularity had reached its apex. There were even many young female disciples shouting Li Qingxun's name, and more people would join the Qingxun faction. Although Li Qingxun had not yet been officially appointed as the divine son, his prestige was already on par with some veteran disciples. Under the gaze of a crowd of disciples, Li Qingxun returned to the palace and began his plans. He felt that although the Li family had resources, the resources provided by the system were just as strong, if not better. But alas, the system's treasures were not guaranteed to appear every time. This kind of thing still depended on luck. He glanced at the clan's servants and thought the job might be pretty good to do it for a few years, more than a decade, and then would he not be invincible with the system? Grandpa Wuzu. I want to experience the life of the common people. Li Qingxun spoke with a serious, righteous expression. Common life? What is that? Wuzu was puzzled. He had never heard the term. It means the life of the servants. Li Qingxun trembled slightly, lowering his head, and dare not meet Wuzu's gaze. Huh. Impossible. You will be Li family's divine son in the future. How could you do such a thing? If the clan finds out, I'll be cursed to death by their scolding. If your other grandfathers find out, they'd skin me alive. If other powers hear of this, won't they mock our Li family as well? So absolutely not. Wuzu snorted, his eyes wide with anger. The divine son of such an ancient clan actually wants to do a servant's work. If he hadn't heard, clearly Li Qingxun thought he had misheard. Li Qingxun felt a bit embarrassed. He expected it to be more complicated, but he hadn't expected Wuzu to be this angry. He didn't know what to do. After a long while, he finally figured out how to speak. Grandpa Wuzu, since that won't do, then sweeping floors should be fine, right? Li Qingxun watched Wuzu cautiously, afraid he would erupt. Just as Li Qingxun saw Wuzu about to get angry again, he hurriedly restrained him. Grandpa Wuzu, please don't be angry yet. It's like this: cultivation cannot be pursued blindly. Oftentimes progress comes from insight. Since ancient times there have been mortals who ascended in one night. What did they rely on? Isn't it reliance on insight? Li Qingxun paused and continued. And sweeping floors is also a form of insight, perceiving the true meaning of life. So Grandfather Wuzu, please agree. Rest assured, I will only sweep in this palace, not before the other ancestors. Wuzu was a bit surprised. He hadn't expected Li Qingxun to speak such truths at such a young age. On reflection, Li Qingxun's words were not without merit. Thus, under Li Qingxun's gaze, Wuzu reluctantly nodded. Yes. Li Qingxun was overjoyed. He rushed forward and kissed Wuzu on the cheek, triggering a hearty laugh from Wuzu. All preparations complete, Li Qingxun believed that with a little time, he would become invincible. That night, Li Qingxun lay awake with excitement, eager to begin his sweeping life. The following day, Li Qingxun cultivated as usual. In his spare time, he would sweep the grounds, hoping to receive some reward from the system. Regrettably, after 2 days of sweeping, he only obtained one reward. Even worse, it was 5 kidney-nourishing pills. Li Qingxun held his head in exasperation, feeling that the system was becoming increasingly bizarre. These pills were meant for ordinary people. Cultivators with vibrant vital energy typically had no use for them. Even if they were needed, such low-grade pills would be useless to cultivators. He had no idea what the system's true intention was. Li Qingchen sighed and decided it was better than nothing. He gripped his small broom and continued sweeping. Meanwhile, within the Li family, discussions about him were growing increasingly heated, with most believing his position as the divine heir was beyond question. Even the other prodigies of the Li family could not match Li Qingchen's prowess. Not only had he shattered records by defeating a true Essence Realm's 7th-layer warrior while still in the blood-refining stage, making him the first in hundreds of thousands of years, but he had also reached the peak of the true Essence Realm at merely 5 years of age. The eldest of the other prodigies was 15, the youngest 12 or 13, and the highest cultivation achieved among them was only the 7th layer of the divine ability realm. At this moment, within the palace of another prodigy of the Li family, Li Xiantian sat cross-legged in meditation. Aura intermittently surged from his body in unstable waves, indicating he was on the verge of a breakthrough. The 8 great prodigies of the Li family enjoyed privileges unlike ordinary disciples. While both groups resided in palaces, the 8 prodigies' residences stood independently within realms of spiritual abundance. This was the palace of Li Xuantian, ranked 4th among the 8 great prodigies. Outside, a man waited reverently for his emergence from seclusion, having kept watch for several days. Anxiousness marred the man's face as he paced incessantly before the hall's entrance. His name was Li Che, and years prior, he had become Li Xuantian's devoted follower after being utterly captivated by the young master's formidable aura. Naturally, he desired Li Xiantian to claim the position of divine heir. Yet Li Qingchen's influence grew ever stronger, drawing an expanding faction of supporters. This prompted rising concern within him. He recalled that 5 years prior, when the clan ancestor had declared Li Qingchen the divine heir, he had paid the proclamation no mind. Every previous divine heir of the Li family had been required to command respect within the clan, and he remained convinced Li Qingchen could not rival Li Xiantian in this regard. The notion that a child barely out of infancy could surpass Li Xuantian's standing seemed absurd. However, once Li Qingchen's cultivation suddenly surged to the peak of the true essence realm, panic began to take hold. He felt as though Li Xiantian was about to be overtaken. When will Lord Xiantian emerge from his seclusion? With each passing hour, Li Che's composure frayed until he nearly stormed inside, fully prepared to accept whatever punishment might follow. A quarter hour later, just as he was about to burst through the doors, a tremendous surge of energy erupted from within the palace. Before him, a youth clad in azure robes gradually materialized. He appeared to be 13 or 14 years old, his jet black hair flowing in the wind. His gaze sliced through the air like a drawn blade, his expression cold as frost, his presence sharp and piercing. Li Che bowed deeply with folded hands, acutely aware of the oppressive aura radiating from Li Xiantian. His heart trembled. The young master's cultivation had broken through again. "Speak. What is it?" Li Xuantian's tone was cold. "My lord Li Qingchen defeated a 7th-layer true essence warrior while still in the blood-refining stage, and his cultivation has now reached the peak of true essence. I fear." Li Che spoke reverently, long accustomed to Li Xuantian's curt manner of speech. "Oh, I did not expect him to reach such a pinnacle in merely a few years." A fierce gleam flickered in Li Xuantian's eyes. The competition for the divine heir position within the Li family was already fierce, and now Li Qingchen had emerged as an unexpected rival. It was time to humble him. "Take me to Li Qingchen's residence. I will teach him that the position of divine heir is not easily claimed." "Yes." Li Che replied, a spark of excitement in his eyes as he led the way. Within the Li family, conflicts between disciples were tolerated, for without rivalry, there could be no advancement. This tolerance extended only to the present before Li Qingchen's formal proclamation as divine heir. Once that status was official, Li Xiantian would never dare directly challenge him. To assault someone of higher standing constituted insubordination, a punishable offense. Yet Li Xuantian, still young himself, possessed the reckless courage of one who feared neither heaven nor earth. Along the way, other disciples noticed Li Che guiding Li Xiantian at great speed in a particular direction and exchanged puzzled glances. "Is that not Lord Li Xuantian, one of the 8 great prodigies? Where is he storming off to in such fury?" "I have no idea, but Li Che is leading the way. He is Lord Xuantian's most devoted follower. Something must have been said to provoke this. Have you not noticed? That direction leads to Lord Li Qingchen's residence." "What? You're right. It appears Lord Xiantian is indeed going to confront Lord Li Qingchen." After a moment of discussion, the disciples realized the significance of the situation and hastened toward the scene. A direct clash between 2 prodigies was rare and unforgettable. Li Qingchen had already been recognized as a prodigy 5 years ago, making him 9 in total among the Li family's current generation. Meanwhile, news reached both the Qingchen Society, Li Qingchen's devoted followers, and the Xiantian Society, Li Xuantian's adherents. Both groups immediately made their way toward Li Qingchen's residence. Meanwhile, Li Qingchen lay sprawled on the ground, still lamenting the system's latest reward. He had just received another delivery of kidney-nourishing pills. He began to suspect the system was mocking him. "Li Qingchen, My lord requests your presence for a sparring session. Just as he was lost in thought, a sudden shout nearly made him start. Li Qingshun rose to his feet and retorted irritably. I have sweeping to do. Leave me in peace. What manner of person demanded a spar at such an inconvenient moment? He had no time to waste on meaningless combat. Outside the door, Li Xiantian clenched his fists, interpreting the dismissive response as outright contempt. Sweeping. Such an obvious lie. What prodigy would deign to sweep? Before either party had even met face to face, their respective factions had already begun exchanging barbs. Your Lord Li Qingshan is nothing but a coward too afraid to show his face, sneered the Xiantian society. Pa. It is our Lord Qingshan who simply refuses to dignify your Lord Xiantian with a response, countered the Qingshan society. Your Li Qingshan is nothing but a child. What right does he have to compare himself to our Lord Xiantian? Pressed the Xiantian society. What of it if he is a mere child? When Li Xiantian was our Lord Qingshan's age, could he have defeated a late-stage true essence warrior from the blood-refining realm? Does he possess the strength of true essence peak? Oh, and speaking of which, your Li Xiantian is merely at the divine ability stage at 13 or 14. Within 2 years our Lord Qingshan shall surpass him entirely, retorted the Qingshan society. The Xiantian society fell silent at a loss for words. Li Xuantian's temper flared at the exchange. Casting a cold glare at the debaters, he inhaled deeply and declared, I have come specially to request a sparring session with my cousin Qingshan. I hope he will graciously share his insights. Your affections are futile unless you bring more of those kidney-nourishing pills. Li Qingshan tossed back, idly showing no intention of engaging further. Fighting held no appeal when sweeping offered such rewards. At least sweeping occasionally yielded rewards. Oh, what did fighting ever offer? The crowd outside erupted in laughter while the female disciples blushed in embarrassment unexpected from a 5-year-old child. They secretly cursed Li Qingshan as a brazen rogue. Li Xiantian seethed his composure, nearly fracturing. As one of the Li family's 8 great prodigies, when had he ever been so openly mocked? Once was forgivable, but a second offense. Did they take him for a pushover? Still, even in his rage, he knew better than to damage the palace, particularly one belonging to a prodigy. Forcing his wrath down, he bellowed, kidney nourishing. The crowd erupted in fresh peals of laughter. Li Xuantian's sharp gaze swept across them. The disciples fell silent instantly. Only Li Che stood drenched in cold sweat, recognizing the depth of his lord's anger. Kidney nourishing. Who speaks of kidney nourishing? Li Qingshan, who had picked up his broom again and was sweeping with great enthusiasm, became excited upon hearing those words. He had been meaning to find someone to test the kidney tonifying pill that the system had given him. Although he had full confidence in the system, having a lab rat would naturally be better, and one could never have too many lab rats after all. As long as that lab rat wasn't himself, there would be no problem. That settled then. Li Qingshan tossed aside his broom and headed toward the door. Who needs kidney tonifying? Is it you? The moment Li Qingshan opened the door, he saw Li Xiantian standing right in front of him. Who the hell needs kidney tonifying? I've come to spar with my clansman's strength. So you finally decided to show yourself? Li Xiantian replied with a smile and a curse. Even if he were to jump off the mountaintop today, he would never tonify his kidneys. That would be an insult to his dignity. He clearly said it with his own mouth just now, and now he's going back on his word. Yeah, and to think he's supposed to be one of the heavenly prodigies. Exactly. So many people are watching too. Unfortunately, everyone around had overheard, and the gathered disciples began whispering and pointing fingers. Li Xiantian clenched his fists, realizing his earlier words had been rather rash. The pointing fingers from the crowd caused his body to tremble ever so slightly. It was from rage. Li Che, watching Li Xuantian's trembling body, changed his expression and immediately rebuked the disciples behind him. All of you shut up. If Lord Xiantian gets angry, you'll be the ones to suffer. The disciples collectively spat in contempt. If Li Che hadn't had Li Xiantian backing him, they would have beaten him senseless long ago. He would never have had the chance to throw his weight around. Li Qingshan was furious too, his cheeks puffed out with anger. He had never expected someone to toy with his feelings. He truly wanted to kick that bastard Li Xiantian standing before him to death. But on second thought, if he killed him, there would be no one left to experiment on. Merely crippling him would suffice. You're the one who said you wanted kidney tonifying, and now you're saying it's a sparring match. Li Qingshan stepped forward, baring his teeth as he glared at Li Xuantian, trying to appear as fierce as possible. However, he forgot that he was only 5 years old now, and possessed no intimidating presence whatsoever. Instead, he caused the female disciples watching around him to cry out in unison about how adorable he was. High above in the void, Li Qingshan's grandfather Li Diyin watched the scene below with a face full of helplessness. This child, so young yet already thinking about tonifying his kidneys. Li Qingshan's grandfather Li Daoyuan stroked his beard in puzzlement. Qingshan was only 5 years old and already thinking about kidney tonifying. Could there be something wrong with his kidneys? But that shouldn't be the case either. With his supreme chaotic body constitution, he should only be more powerful than others in comparison. Could it be that he lacked confidence in himself? It seemed he would need to find some time to counsel the boy. Thinking of this, Li Daoyuan continued to gaze downward, curious to see what tricks his grandson was about to play. That's right, don't think you can get away just by acting cute. Given your age, I'll let you make the first move. Li Xiantian stood with his hands clasped behind his back, composed and at ease. He didn't believe Li Qingshan could inflict much harm. After all, his cultivation realm was far superior to Li Qingshan's. That doesn't seem right. Li Qingshan couldn't quite believe his ears. Wasn't this just asking for a beating? A gentleman's word is irrevocable, and 4 horses cannot chase it back. Come on already. Are you sure? Sure. Stop blabbering and get on with it. Li Xiantian nearly lost his composure again. Li Qingshan truly had a gift for infuriating people. All right then. This time Li Qingshan was going all out. The instant his voice fell, a terrifying fluctuation suddenly manifested in the heavens. A sword radiating golden light slowly emerged from the void. The mere fluctuation from the sword's appearance wounded numerous disciples, and even Li Xiantian let out a muffled groan. Li Daoyuan watched the sword with some surprise. He naturally knew this was Qingshan's innate sacred artifact, but he couldn't fathom how the sword had suddenly appeared. He vividly recalled that 5 years ago, when several ancestors had gathered to discuss how to safeguard this sword, the sword had inexplicably vanished into thin air. The ancestors had employed every divine ability at their disposal, but failed to locate it. At that time, Qingshan had only just been born not long ago, so no one believed he possessed the ability to hide the sword right under the noses of the ancestors. The crowd could only sigh helplessly, and the 8th ancestor had also said to let fate decide. Now that the sword had reappeared, he couldn't help but suspect that Qingshan had truly been behind it back then. In truth, Li Qingshan had simply stored it away in his system space. He wasn't certain what kind of existence the system was. He only knew that anything placed within it could only be retrieved by him. Li Qingshan gazed at the sword and gently caressed its blade. After all these years, had it not been for Li Xiantian coming to cause trouble, he would have nearly forgotten about this sword entirely. He lightly grasped the hilt, and a familiar sensation coursed through Li Qingshan's body, as though the sword had always been a part of him. Although he could not unleash even 1/1000th of the power of the supreme Xianyuan's sword at present, dealing with someone at the divine ability realm would still be effortless. When he pointed the sword at Li Xuantian, beads of sweat became visibly visible on Li Xuantian's face, cascading wildly to the ground. In his heart, he had already cursed Li Che bloody. Meanwhile, dense beads of sweat had also broken out on Li Che's forehead. He had forgotten that when Li Qingshan was born, Li Xiantian had also been in closed-door cultivation, so he had no idea that Li Qingshan possessed an innate sacred artifact. Although Li Che himself had known since Li Qingshan had never used this sword in the past 5 years. And no one had seen Li Qingshan use this sword afterward either. He had assumed the sword must have been kept in safekeeping by the ancestors. But who could have known it was actually on Li Qingshan himself? Had he known, he wouldn't have dared to come provoke him, even if you'd given him 10,000 guts. So now, do you want kidney tonifying, or do you want to fight? Li Qingshan waved the sword in his hand. He felt he was being extremely magnanimous, and still wished to give Li Xiantian a chance. Li Xuantian would rather die today, be split clean in half by this sword, than ever tonify my kidneys. That would be an insult to me. Li Xuantian's face flushed crimson. He needed to preserve his dignity and refused to believe Li Qingshan would truly dare to kill him. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong. At this moment, not only the surrounding onlookers, but even Li Daoyuan, hidden in the void, was breaking a sweat for him. Li Qingshan was utterly unscrupulous. Once this sword appeared, who among the younger generation, except those with their own sacred weapons, could possibly be his opponent? And how many in the younger generation even possess sacred weapons? Then you shall be split in half. The moment his words fell, Li Qingshan swung directly at Li Xiantian. Li Xiantian truly felt the breath of death this time. He suddenly didn't want to die anymore. But the sword was already before his eyes. All kinds of thoughts surged within him. Am I truly about to die? If heaven granted me another chance, I would definitely tonify my kidneys. And if I had to set a number, it would be 10,000 times. After thinking all this, Li Xiantian closed his eyes and awaited death's arrival. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The sword Li Xiantian had anticipated never fell. He cautiously opened his eyes and saw an old man blocking the blade. Grandpa, why are you here? Li Qingshan scratched his head, his heart a little uneasy. If I hadn't come, you would have killed him. You brat, attacking your own clansmen with no sense of propriety. But I gave him a chance. Li Qingshan stuck out his tongue and secretly glanced at Li Daoyuan's expression. When he saw his grandfather about to say something else, he hurriedly spoke first. All right, I won't do it again next time. Please don't be angry. Only then did Li Daoyuan's expression soften. Li Qingshan also breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Li Xiantian on the ground, he suddenly remembered his objective was yet unaccomplished, so he asked again, do you want kidney tonifying? Li Xiantian was truly terrified this time, and hurriedly nodded. Yes. I love kidney tonifying the most. Ha. Another wave of laughter erupted from those around. The members of the Xiantian Society, Li Xuantian's fan club, felt rather embarrassed. Some even defected on the spot and became members of the Qingshan Society. But Li Xiantian had no mind for any of that now. At this moment, he was holding the kidney tonifying pill Li Qingshan had given him. Under Li Qingshan's watchful gaze, he could only forcefully suppress the notion that it was poison and swallow it in one gulp. A moment later, a blinding radiance erupted from Li Xuantian's waist while his face grew increasingly red. Thick gusts of steam spouted from his nostrils. He let out a great roar, and every stitch of clothing on his body crumbled to ash. A quarter of an hour later, Li Qingshan watched in stunned silence as he sprinted around a mountain several hundred times. Li Xiantian felt an unprecedented sense of comfort and clarity, his entire body radiating warmth. Brother Qingshan, do you have any more kidney tonifying pills? I'd like another 100 million. Li Xiantian approached with a shameless smile, constantly rubbing his hands together, clearly betraying his nervousness. He had no choice but to admit the kidney-nourishing pill was truly irresistible. If he had known it would be this effective, he would never have come looking for trouble in the first place. Surrendering outright wasn't such a bad option. What was the point of holding on to dignity? He could almost feel his cultivation base rising, and with just a few more pills he could break through to a higher minor realm. It was not just Li Xiantian, the other disciples watching the battle were equally stunned. If they had not been too afraid to approach Li Qingshan, he would likely already have been swamped by the crowd. Even Li Daoyuan showed a hint of interest, having never encountered a kidney-nourishing pill with such extraordinary effects. Generally, such low-grade pills were only effective on ordinary mortals. Today had completely overturned Li Daoyuan's understanding, making him want a pill for research purposes. However, with so many disciples present, he dared not ask, otherwise he risked being called an old man without decency. Li Qingshan's eyes were filled with refusal. After witnessing the effects, he agonized over giving away even one pill. It was already generous enough that he did not retrieve the one Li Xiantian had swallowed, let alone consider giving a second. You are dreaming. I have already given you this one pill, and if I had known its effects I would not have given it to you at all. I feel like I am the one who lost out, you are the one who gained everything. Li Qingshan shook his head vigorously. Eating it himself was far better. Li Xiantian was left utterly flustered and embarrassed by those words. He had come to cause trouble only to end up unsuccessful in every way. But could you put some clothes on first? Your prized possession is about to be exposed for everyone to see. Li Qingshan spoke slowly after suddenly noticing something. At the same time, his eyes fixed intently on Li Xuantian's lower body, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. It seemed smaller than his own. Oh! Li Xuantian's scream merged with the shrieks of the female disciples present. Just moments ago, everyone's attention had been fixed on Li Qingshan's kidney-nourishing pill, which is why no one had noticed that Li Xuantian's clothes had already been torn apart. After Li Qingshan's reminder, everyone suddenly realized what had happened. The other girls covered their eyes while those from the Xiantian Association stared as wide as they could, clicking their tongues in amazement. Li Xiantian hurriedly covered himself and apologized to Li Qingshan with a guilty expression. Today I was presumptuous and disturbed your cultivation, brother Qingshan. Please do not hold it against me. I will be leaving now. As soon as he finished speaking, he bolted away at full speed, making sure to take Li Che along with him. It was easy to imagine that Li Che would surely be reprimanded upon their return. Watching Li Xiantian leave, Li Qingshan gave a faint smile to those who remained before stepping back inside the hall. Seeing this, the crowd outside gradually dispersed. After this commotion, many came to understand that the supreme Xian Yuan sword remained with Li Qingshan, meaning no one would dare challenge him anymore. Though they would not dare oppose him openly, this was still insufficient to make the other prodigies truly submit, with the exception of Li Xiantian. Inside the palace hall, Li Qingshan tightly guarded the kidney-nourishing pills in his hand, looking at his grandfather with an aggrieved expression. Grandpa, do you really have to scam your own grandson like this? The moment he had entered and was eager to test the pill's effects, his grandfather had snatched it away instantly. He had initially thought it was fine since it was his own grandfather, and giving him one pill would not matter. But when he pulled out the second pill, it was taken again. Li Qingshan was extremely frustrated, yet completely helpless. Clinging to the belief that since his grandfather had already taken two, he would not grab any more, Li Qingshan produced another one. Who knew it would almost be snatched away again? If he had not been quick-witted and somewhat prepared, he might have lost that one too. He only had 5 pills in total. Good things must certainly be offered to grandfather. How can 2 be enough? Quick, hand over another one. Li Daoyuan blew his nose and narrowed his eyes greedily. With a faint inner sigh, Li Qingshan painfully handed over the pill, repeatedly insisting it was his last one, which finally convinced Li Daoyuan to leave. Carefully taking out the final kidney-nourishing pill, Li Qingshan quickly swallowed it. His grandfather might be hiding somewhere watching him, and if he did not act fast, he might not get the last one either. However, upon swallowing it, Li Qingshan felt no change at all. Not a single reaction. Why is there no reaction? Li Qingxin examined his body from every angle, jumping up and down, trying to find any sign of change. But he was still disappointed. There was absolutely no effect whatsoever. He thought for a moment. That did not make sense. He had witnessed such a strong reaction from Li Xuantian, so why was there no response at all when he took it himself? Could it be because of his supreme, chaotic body? Had he wasted his effort for nothing? Puffed this garbage system, giving nothing but worthless trash. Li Qingxin internally condemned the system, completely forgetting that both his supreme chaotic body and the supreme Xian Yuan sword had been granted by it. If it was useless, so be it. Li Qingxin had already accepted this reality and continued sweeping with his small broom. He refused to believe he would not find something valuable. Ding, a new task has been issued. Clean Li Shuro's boudoir. What the? Could this be the system's revenge? There had never been tasks before, and now it seems he must complete them to receive rewards. Li Qingxin felt on the verge of tears. Hadn't he only cursed the system a couple of times? Was this really necessary? And who exactly was this Li Shuro? He had absolutely no idea. Li Qingxin looked around, but found no maids or servants in the palace, so he could not ask anyone. He had no choice but to set down his small broom and head outside the hall, deciding to inquire with other disciples instead. After walking for a while, Li Qingxin finally spotted a disciple. He put on what he considered a friendly smile and asked gently, "Excuse me, do you know?" Before he could finish his sentence, the disciple took off running. He could not help but wonder what was wrong. "Brother, hey, wait. This. That. Damn it." Li Qingxin grew increasingly frustrated. Why did everyone flee the moment they saw him? Was he really that fearsome? With deep suspicion, he searched for a mirror. He examined himself from every angle. No matter how he looked, he was handsome, with an adorable face that made no sense. Why were they running? What Li Qingxin did not know was that everyone he encountered had witnessed his battle with Li Xiantian that day. Now everyone was aware that his sword was always on him. So when Li Qingxin suddenly approached them, they naturally grew wary, afraid of accidentally provoking him and being slashed by his sword. They were not like Li Xuantian, a top talent, whose death would go unnoticed. Unable to do otherwise, Li Qingxin could only detour to seek out his grandfather. Within the Li family's small world, as soon as Li Qingxin stepped through, he immediately sensed an extraordinarily rich concentration of spiritual energy surging uncontrollably toward his body. This was the domain reserved for the Li family's core figures, accessible only to those bearing Li family bloodline and utilizing secret techniques. Yet not every member of the Li clan could enter. Generally, authorization from the ancestral patriarch was required. As for Li Qingxin, or rather the several peerless prodigies, they all possessed the ability to enter. However, only Li Qingxin alone could access the core region. Only in the event of a severe crisis befalling the Li family, one that even risked the annihilation of the entire clan, would all family members be permitted entry. After composing himself on the spot, the spiritual energy surrounding Li Qingxin gradually stilled. Taking a deep breath, he set off toward his grandfather's cave dwelling. Though he had been here many times before, each visit never failed to leave Li Qingxin marveling at how vastly superior the cultivation environment was compared to the outside world. It was in a completely different league altogether, and he could never quite understand why the ancestral patriarch and the others did not open the small world in its entirety. Would that not be far more beneficial for the cultivation of the family's disciples? In truth, it was not only the Li family. Any clan with considerable power possessed their own private small world or ancestral grounds, though none were easily accessible. Without the proper talent, one could not enter at all. Lost in thought, Li Qingxin had already arrived at Li Daoyuan's cave dwelling. Before he could even step inside, a voice resonated outward. "Qingxin, what brings you here? Is there something you need from Grandpa?" Li Qingxin looked up and discovered his grandfather had already appeared before him. He tilted his head, puzzled, and asked, "Grandpa, who is Li Shuro?" Li Daoyuan's expression shifted to astonishment. He had not expected his grandson to seek him out merely to inquire about a young girl. Internally, he mused, could my grandson be showing signs of awakening so early? That seemed unlikely. He himself had only figured out how to amuse girls at the age of 10. Could this lad already surpass him? Noticing his grandfather's strange expression and silence, Li Qingxin immediately sprang onto his back, gripping Li Daoyuan's beard tightly with both small hands, and threatened in an endearing voice, "Grandpa, are you going to tell me or not? If not, I'll pull out all your beard hairs." Li Daoyuan was left utterly at a loss, torn between laughter and exasperation. Even an expert at the quasi-saint realm might struggle to pluck his beard, let alone this tiny-limbed boy of Li Qingxin's stature. All right, I'll tell you. She is the founder of your so-called Qingxin society. Are you truly unaware? Li Daoyuan lifted him down and gazed at him with solemn seriousness. However, you are still quite young. It's fine to chat and keep company, but do not act recklessly in other matters. Sigh. Li Qingxin's face flushed with embarrassment. His well-meaning grandfather had completely misread the situation. He was merely going to complete a system quest, nothing more. Besides, what could he possibly accomplish at 5 years of age? Well, given his unique physique, perhaps it wasn't entirely impossible. Though his mind wandered thus, Li Qingshan obediently replied and made his way outward. After only a few steps, he suddenly realized he still did not know where Li Shuoro resided. He promptly turned his head back and asked, "Grandpa, where does she live?" "Her talent is quite remarkable. She likely resides in the eastern courtyard." "Got it, thank you, Grandpa." Such a restless child, so hurried and impulsive. Li Daoyuan shook his head with a light chuckle. Why was he always so eager? What if he frightened the poor girl? Once Li Qingshan learned Li Shuoro's whereabouts, he speedily exited the small world and headed toward the eastern courtyard. This was the first mission issued by the system, and he was impatient to discover what reward awaited him upon completion. Li Family Eastern Courtyard. This was the residential area for disciples with exceptional talent, each granted their own cave dwelling or small courtyard. Through a series of inquiries along the way, Li Qingshan finally located the courtyard where Li Shuoro resided. However, each time he asked for directions, the respondents would always cast oddly suggestive glances his way, leaving him deeply embarrassed. Having at last reached the exterior of the courtyard, Li Qingshan found himself faced with a new dilemma. He had found the place, but what pretext should he use to enter? This conundrum kept him pacing outside the courtyard. What could he possibly do? He certainly could not simply announce that he had come to help tidy her chambers. Setting aside the fact that she undoubtedly had her own maids and servants to handle such matters, his status far exceeded hers. Uttering such words aloud would almost certainly raise suspicions about his ulterior motives. "Sigh, this is so difficult. Perhaps I should just charge straight in," Li Qingshan muttered under his breath. "Wow. Divine Child Qingshan, what are you doing here? Are you real?" Suddenly a voice echoed from behind Li Qingshan, causing him to jump in surprise. He hastily protested, "I absolutely did not intend to go inside. There was no such intention. If Divine Child does not mind, would you like to come in and rest?" Li Shuoro tilted her head, watching Li Qingshan shake his head frantically, like a rattle drum, a multitude of questions forming in her mind. Li Qingshan was startled and turned around. Before him stood a breathtakingly beautiful young woman. She appeared to be no older than 16 or 17, with snow-white skin and clear, pristine eyes like a tranquil pool of water. She possessed an adorable almond-shaped face and a slender figure, her long hair cascading over her shoulders and gently secured with a pink silk ribbon. Clad in white garments, she radiated an ethereal brilliance when set against the nearby blossoms. Li Shuoro waved her delicate hands in front of Li Qingshan's face. Only then did he snap out of his daze and asked in astonishment, "You must be Li Shuoro, right?" Li Shuoro blinked her eyes and nodded. "On what you said earlier about letting me come in, was that genuine?" "Of course. Come, I'll take you inside." Saying so, Li Shuoro took Li Qingshan's small hand and led him toward the dwelling. Li Qingshan froze for a moment before regaining his composure. Feeling the softness of her palm, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. A girl's hands truly are so soft. Stepping into the room, Li Qingshan found it bore little resemblance to what he had imagined a young lady's chambers would look like. Instead, the space resembled something more suited to a young master. The surroundings were quite simple, devoid of any superfluous decorations. Had it not been for Li Shuoro personally leading him inside, he would never have guessed this was a maiden's residence. Seeming to perceive Li Qingshan's expression, Li Shuoro smiled gently and asked, "Does it feel unlike a girl's dwelling, doesn't it?" Li Qingshan nodded instinctively before realizing his mistake and hurriedly explained, "No, it's not. It's all right. Not only do you feel that way, I myself sometimes think it doesn't seem like a girl's place either. Perhaps it's simply because I prefer simplicity, which is why the interior appears rather plain." "Oh, I see." Li Qingshan nodded slightly. He himself wasn't particularly fond of ornate and gaudy furnishings, though he would make an exception for things that looked dashing. Then the two began to converse, though Li Shuoro was the one initiating most of the topics. For some reason, whenever Li Shuoro brought up matters related to Li Qingshan, she grew exceptionally animated, speaking endlessly without pause. Li Qingshan nearly found himself divulging even the color of his undergarments. At that moment, he finally understood the plight of those celebrities from his past life. The worst part was that Li Shuoro always wanted to pinch his cheeks. Although he had warned her countless times, it proved utterly useless. Then again, what authority could a mere 5-year-old child possibly command? Whatever fierce expression he attempted appeared nothing but adorable and endearing in the eyes of others. So in this brief span of time, even he had lost count of how many times Li Shuoro had squished his face. Li Qingshan even began to wonder if something was wrong with himself, for he could always perceive tiny hearts seemingly twinkling within Li Shuoro's eyes. A shiver ran down his spine instinctively. Experience warned him that he might be in considerable danger. Were it not for the system's mission, Li Qingshan would have fled long ago, feeling that staying here would leave not even bones remaining. May I take a look inside your room?" Li Qingshan gently pushed away the hand Li Shuoro was attempting to place on his face, once more speaking in a soft, sweet voice. Li Shuoro rested a finger against the corner of her lips, seemingly lost in thought. This left Li Qingshan rather anxious. If she refused, he would have no choice but to find an opportunity to sneak in on his own. Though somewhat dishonorable, there was simply no other way. "Of course. By the time Li Qingxin had nearly finished devising his contingency plan, Li Shuero finally gave her affirmative reply. He felt it had taken far too long. Such an eternity would have sufficed for him to finish his bathroom needs several times over. Oh wait, this world didn't seem to require that, did it? In truth, the entire exchange, from Li Qingxin's request to Li Shuero's acceptance, had only spanned a mere 2 or 3 minutes. It was simply that Li Qingxin had overthought the matter, making the time feel considerably longer. Follow me. Li Shuero took Li Qingxin's hand and led him inward. Before Li Qingxin could even react, they had already arrived at her chamber door, and by the time he regained his senses, they were inside the room itself. The room differed little from the outside, still the same austere simplicity. A single table, a single bed, and a few small stools beside the table. The only element that suggested a young lady's quarters was perhaps the pink curtains draped around the bed. But how was he to clean it? If he stated his purpose directly, wouldn't he be mistaken for some peculiar soul with unsavory proclivities? After much deliberation, Li Qingxin concluded there was only one relatively safe approach: briefly send Li Shuero away, then seize the opportunity to clean in her absence. Thinking of this, he could not help but admire his own foresight, having stored a broom in his system space beforehand. There was no time to waste. Completing the task swiftly was the only sensible course. Do you have any green tea here? I find myself craving a cup. Li Qingxin assumed an expression of tea-drinking desire as he gazed at Li Shuero. He could not fathom why he had chosen to mention green tea. Did this world even have such a thing? Li Shuero regarded his expectant gaze, contemplated briefly, then replied, "No, I don't have any. But the clan sister next door might have some. If you'd like some, I could fetch a bit for you." Li Qingxin secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When she had said she didn't have any, he had feared his scheme would fall through. This arrangement was even better. It afforded him ample time. "Thank you." Initially, Li Qingxin had intended to address her as sister, since she was older than him. But on second thought, he was destined to be the future divine son of the Li clan. He could not casually call anyone sister. Otherwise, how could he maintain any authority in the future? Absolutely not. Li Shuero let out a soft laugh, untroubled, and turned to fetch his tea. Before departing, she playfully cautioned him not to sneak peeks at her intimate garments. This left Li Qingxin somewhat mortified. She had read a man's mind with devastating precision. Was he truly that sort of person? He merely harbored the slightest, most minuscule inclination in that direction. But speaking of which, deliberately mentioning her intimate garments in front of a 5-year-old child, was this not deliberately tempting an innocent young boy toward transgression? A child's curiosity knows no bounds. Li Qingxin shook his head to dispel the chaotic thoughts clouding his mind. With a mere intention, he summoned the broom. Time was of the essence. He had to complete his mission without delay. And so Li Qingxin brandished his broom and swept with great vigor. Swish, swish, swish. In a trice the sweeping was done. From somewhere unknown, he produced a handkerchief and set to work once more. In remarkably short order, he had thoroughly cleaned every corner of the room inside and out. "I really am amazing." Li Qingxin assessed his own condition and found not the slightest trace of fatigue. He could not help but marvel at how formidable the physical constitution of those who cultivated immortality truly was. Yet one puzzle remained unsolved. No matter how much he cleaned, he could discern no dirt whatsoever. The white handkerchief remained as white as before. Why had the system issued such a mission? Though questions swirled in his mind, the mere thought of unknown rewards sent a thrill of excitement coursing through Li Qingxin. Ding! Congratulations on completing your mission. At last it had arrived. Li Qingxin listened to the mechanical voice echoing in his mind and rubbed his hands together in eager anticipation. What delightful rewards might await him? Reward 1: garment belonging to Li Shuero. What the hell? System you. Li Qingxin was nearly exploding with rage. Of all the rewards imaginable, it had to be this. That wretched system had squandered his precious time. No, he had to return it at once, or the situation would become unbearably awkward. A flash of light, and the garment materialized in Li Qingxin's hands. He cast a glance at it. A pale pink long skirt, and it carried a faint fragrance. He gave it a gentle touch. The fabric was soft, the texture exquisite. "Divine Son, I'm back." Li Shuero's voice rang out at the most inopportune moment, followed by the sound of footsteps entering the room. This was utterly catastrophic. Cold sweat had already begun beating on Li Qingxin's forehead. He stiffly turned his body while swiftly hurling the long skirt back into his system space. Though Li Qingxin's reflexes had been remarkably swift, Li Shuero had still caught a glimpse of a corner of fabric. Though merely a sliver, it evoked an inexplicable sense of familiarity within her. Thanks. Li Qingxin felt rather guilty. Of all things to receive, it had to be a piece of clothing. What use was that? In his heart, he had already scattered the system's ashes to the winds. Li Shuero had sensed something amiss with Li Qingxin from the start. Now, observing his furtive behavior, she could not help but glance around the room and discovered that one of her long skirts seemed to be missing. Instantly comprehending what must have transpired, she imagined what Li Qingqian might intend to do with her skirt. Her face flushed crimson all the way down to her neck. Meanwhile, Li Qingqian sat clutching his tea, his eyes fixed on his nose, and his nose aligned with his heart, occasionally shifting postures, affecting an air of complete obliviousness. Little did he know that Li Shuero had already discerned the truth. Casually strolling behind Li Qingqian, she leaned down and whispered into his ear, "Divine Son, did you happen to take my garment?" The sip of tea Li Qingqian had just swallowed erupted from his lips the moment those words reached his ears. He leaped up from his seat, at once his face a portrait of pure mortification. Despite having lived through 2 lifetimes, being caught red-handed in such a predicament still proved rather too much for even his seasoned countenance to bear. I have no idea about that." But within moments he composed himself, looking entirely unperturbed, his face unflushed and heart steady. Li Shuero placed her finger against her soft lips, her large eyes staring blankly at Li Qingqian as she asked meekly, "Then Divine Son, why don't you guess whether I'm wearing it right now?" "You probably are." Li Qingqian cast a feigned glance before continuing, "Wait, no, what do you mean by not wearing it?" "I have no idea." "Then would you like to feel it for yourself?" Just give it a try." I'd better not." "Come on." All right. That thing of yours is indeed with me." Li Qingqian finally laid his cards on the table, utterly unable to hold his ground. After all, he was still just a child. "But don't misunderstand, I have no idea how it ended up with me. Perhaps it gained sentience and ran over on its own. It was absolutely not stolen by me." Thus, despite Li Qingqian's relentless and stubborn excuses, he ultimately suffered a crushing defeat, leaving his face covered in numerous bright red lipstick marks. "To think someone actually dared to take advantage of me, the Divine Son," Li Qingqian grumbled as he walked down the path. Although the system had never previously revealed the specific details of the rewards beforehand, he had originally felt that this added a sense of pleasant surprise. But now he felt only sheer terror. No one could predict what the next reward would be, and even if he got swindled, he could only accept it in silence. At this rate, he might end up dead one day, without even knowing why. Li Shuero truly lived up to her status as his #1 loyal fangirl, daring to take any kind of liberty with him. Had it been anyone else, Li Qingqian figured that even if they revered him, they wouldn't have the audacity to make such bold advances. Before long, Li Qingqian returned to his residence. To his surprise, someone was already waiting for him in the grand hall. He focused his gaze and instantly shuddered. Running forward in a hurry, he spoke in a tender, childish voice, "Sixth Ancestor Grandfather, what brings you here?" Caressing his beard with his right hand, the Sixth Ancestor let out a hearty laugh and said, "You little rascal, do you not know that I will be the one guiding your cultivation for the next month?" Upon hearing this, Li Qingqian scratched his head, and after a moment's reflection realized it was indeed the case. "Let us go, Qingqian. We are heading to the back mountain. Today your ancestor grandfather will teach you swordplay." With that, the Sixth Ancestor took the lead and walked out of the door. Li Qingqian hastily followed. Looking at the relaxed, smiling figure of the Sixth Ancestor ahead, he could not help but recall what the Fifth Ancestor had told him, which immediately made a cold shiver run down his spine. Previously, Li Qingqian had always believed that the Sixth Ancestor was a warm and amiable grandfatherly figure, as he always wore a gentle smile in his presence and treated him with utmost kindness. It was only after the Fifth Ancestor shared some of the Sixth Ancestor's past deeds that he learned the truth. The Sixth Ancestor was normally cold as ice and a man of few words, maintaining his warm and genial demeanor solely in front of him. In the outside world, the Sixth Ancestor was even known by the title of God of Slaughter. His swordplay was superb and transcendent, and his strength was unfathomably deep. Furthermore, he was cold, ruthless, and decisive in execution. It was said that 1,000 years ago an elder of the Heavenly Blade Sacred Land had killed a genius disciple of their family. At that time, the Sixth Ancestor happened to have not yet entered secluded hibernation. Upon hearing the news, he immediately marched to the Heavenly Blade Sacred Land, all by himself, slaying dozens of their elders. His rampage eventually forced 2 supreme elders of the Great Saint Realm, whose powers were comparable to his, to intervene. The battle among the 3 shook the heavens and shattered the earth, drawing spectators from countless major sects. In the end, despite fighting 1 against 2, the Sixth Ancestor used his transcendent sword techniques to forcefully slay one and heavily wound the other before departing gracefully. This battle allowed other factions to clearly perceive the terrifying power of the Sixth Ancestor for the first time, spreading the prestigious name of the Li family's Sixth Ancestor across the 3,000 great worlds of the Linlang immortal domain. The deep-seated feud with the Heavenly Blade Sacred Land was also born from this very event. The rushing sound of water broke Li Qingqian's train of thought. Looking up, he realized that the Sixth Ancestor had already brought him to the back mountain. Before him lay a cascading waterfall feeding into a river below, and he was standing right by the riverbank. Although Li Qingqian had been to the back mountain before, this was his first time visiting this particular spot. Suddenly his vision blurred, and in the next instant he and the sixth ancestor landed atop the mountain peak. White clouds drifted across the sky, and the midday sun gleamed through the cloud layers. Combined with the unique landscape, the place resembled a celestial wonderland. Qingchen, what kind of sword technique do you wish to learn? Of course I want to learn the coolest and the most powerful one. Oh, the sixth ancestor was slightly surprised. Shaking his head with a gentle chuckle, he said, "You little rascal, powerful techniques certainly exist, but would you be able to master them?" The sixth ancestor's original plan was to first teach him some basic sword techniques and martial skills suitable for his age and cultivation level. He had not expected Li Qingchen to demand the most powerful one right from the start. This was indeed beyond his expectation. However, on second thought, since Qingchen wanted to learn, he would teach him. Once the boy realized how difficult it was, he would naturally and obediently revert to learning the simpler ones first. Nevertheless, he still had to master the basic sword stances first. Qingchen, it is not impossible to learn the most powerful techniques, but we must first master the fundamentals. There are 13 basic sword techniques, namely tap, thrust, chop, sweep, lead, pull, intercept, smear, raise, strike, hang, and block. The sixth ancestor patiently explained the fundamentals of swordplay to Li Qingchen, who listened attentively. Time passed gradually. As the sixth ancestor finished his explanation, Li Qingchen began practicing the stances one by one beneath the waterfall. Ding! Reward distributed, super comprehension ability. Suddenly Li Qingchen's entire body shuddered. Standing nearby, the sixth ancestor's gaze gradually turned solemn. He watched as the aura around Li Qingchen shifted dramatically. In just a fleeting instant, it felt to him as though the boy had transformed from a green beginner into a venerable swordmaster. Holy crap! Li Qingchen blurted out. This exclamation was indeed a true reflection of his inner shock. He had never expected the system to hand out a reward at this moment, especially since he hadn't completed any active quest. That could only be attributed to the quest of cleaning Li Shuo's boudoir. He had initially thought that the undergarment was the entirety of the reward, never expecting that the true prize was yet to come. However, the latency of this system was simply too high. If this were a real battlefield, wouldn't he be doomed? He would have been ground to dust and scattered to the winds long ago. After grumbling in his heart, for a moment Li Qingchen felt his comprehension ability instantly multiply by more than 100-fold. Holding the wooden sword, he recalled the basic sword stances the sixth ancestor had just taught him and began to swing it once more. Yet the sensation was entirely different from his previous attempts. This time, every single stance carried immense power, already showing the rudimentary form of a true martial technique. As time went on, under Li Qingchen's execution, every basic sword stance began to carry a distinct concept, and streaks of sword light erupted from his blade. He is creating his own martial technique. The sixth ancestor was utterly astounded. Despite having lived for countless years, this was far from the first time he had been shocked by Li Qingchen. Every single time the boy made such a massive commotion. He could not help but wonder if Qingchen was a celestial being sent by the heavens specifically to mock them, constantly shattering the upper limits of their imagination. On the other side, Li Qingchen sheathed his sword and walked toward the riverbank. At the same time, he sighed with admiration in his heart. The system was indeed the system. Its capabilities were truly no joke. It seemed he had just effortlessly created a martial technique on the spot. This was simply too easy. Li Qingchen hurried over to the sixth ancestor, scratched his head awkwardly, and said, "Grandpa sixth ancestor, it took me the entire afternoon just to barely create a martial skill. Is it really that bad?" Grandpa sixth ancestor could surely create a martial skill in less than the time it takes for one stick of incense, right? I guess I'm just too weak after all. The sixth ancestor's lips twitched slightly. Could this really be something a person would say? To have such a knack for grating on people at such a tender age. Still, to preserve his dignified image, he forced a look of mild approval onto his face. He spoke slowly. Not bad. Your performance is somewhat in line with your ancestors' expectations, but it's not enough. You still need to work harder. Hearing this, Li Qingchen sighed inwardly. He had only intended to show modesty, yet ironically the fool turned out to be himself. It seemed he needed to keep a lower profile from now on. Being more reserved would serve him better, allowing for both offense and defense. When he responded again, he had gone completely limp, like a wilted radish, unaware that it was actually the sixth ancestor beside him who had been the one truly dealt the blow. Li Qingchen rubbed his small hands together and asked once more, "Grandpa sixth ancestor, can I now learn the most powerful sword technique?" If the sixth ancestor had previously harbored the intention of making Li Qingchen retreat upon encountering difficulties, then now he truly found himself wanting to see Li Qingchen give it a try. The mere fact that Qingchen could transform basic sword techniques into a martial skill demonstrated without question that his comprehension was top tier, which meant that mastering even more profound sword techniques should not be impossible for him. With this thought in mind, the sixth ancestor grew serious and said to Li Qingchen, "Since Qingchen wishes to learn, then this ancestor will teach you, but whether you can truly grasp it depends on yourself." He then began his explanation. The strongest sword technique martial skill of our Li family is called the Star Sword Technique, created by an emperor of our Li family tens of thousands of years ago. Its rank has already reached the imperial level, and it could be said that the Li family's current status owes much of its success to this sword technique. This sword technique has saved the family countless times. 1,000 years ago, I was able to defeat 1 death and 1 injury against 2 great sage-level experts from the Heavenly Blade Sacred Ground. Experts whose strength was comparable to my own, all because of it. Upon hearing this, Li Qingxin felt a chill within his heart. This sword technique's origins were far more formidable than he had imagined, playing a crucial role in the family's history. Even Grandpa's 6th ancestor's legendary victory 1,000 years ago was achieved through it. This clearly indicated that the sword technique must possess unique and exceptional qualities, otherwise it could not be so powerful. The Star Sword Technique had already piqued Li Qingxin's interest. The 6th ancestor continued, the Star Sword Technique, when employed, causes stars to converge behind the user, drawing upon their power for attacks of tremendous force. However, cultivation is extremely difficult. The power this sword technique can unleash depends entirely on the amount of stellar energy drawn upon. Those with superior comprehension manifest far more star images when wielding it compared to those with lesser aptitude. Then how many stellar phantoms can you manifest, Grandpa's 6th ancestor? Li Qingxin asked, tilting his head curiously. The moment Li Qingxin finished speaking, the 6th ancestor's aura shifted dramatically. A vast array of stellar phantoms materialized behind him, densely packed and counting in the countless millions. Spanning a tremendous expanse, Li Qingxin examined the display and sucked in his breath. There were easily hundreds of millions of stars visible. Even though the 6th ancestor had restrained his aura, Li Qingxin could still sense the terrifying power contained within. At that moment, he finally understood why the 6th ancestor could defeat 2 experts from the Heavenly Blade Sacred Ground. 1 dead and 1 injured, using this sword technique. Did you see clearly? The 6th ancestor withdrew the stellar phantoms behind him and smiled faintly. I saw clearly. Good. This ancestor will now suppress his cultivation to the peak of the true essence realm to demonstrate the sword technique's true power to you. Having spoken, the 6th ancestor held the wooden sword Li Qingxin had just used across his chest, and the dense array of stellar phantoms rose once more behind him. Immediately following, the stellar phantoms behind the 6th ancestor released streams of blue radiance, all converging upon the wooden sword before he slashed forward, sending a massive blue sword phantom hurtling outward. Boom! A thunderous sound erupted, severing a 10,000-meter-tall mountain hundreds of meters away in half, sending up enormous clouds of dust with tremendous momentum. The 5th ancestor within the family instantly detected this surge of energy. This is the Star Sword Technique, exhibiting such momentum at this hour. What is the 6th ancestor doing? He isn't about to teach that brat Qingxin this sword technique, is he? Realizing this, the 5th ancestor was immediately startled. The Star Sword Technique was not something an ordinary person could learn, especially given that Li Qingxin had only just reached the true spirit realm. Without sufficient comprehension, practitioners would suffer backlash. Without robust cultivation as a foundation, it could easily cause severe damage to the body. Though the 5th ancestor knew Li Qingxin possessed a powerful constitution and believed his comprehension might be excellent, he feared the unlikely possibility. Learning the Star Sword Technique required extraordinary talent and insight into the sword path. Li Qingxin represented the Li family's hope of producing an emperor in this generation. There could be no mishap. With this thought, the 5th ancestor immediately hastened toward the rear mountain. At the rear mountain, the 6th ancestor placed a finger on Li Qingxin's forehead, transferring the cultivation methods and essential principles of the Star Sword Technique directly into his mind. Once everything was complete, Li Qingxin sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed, determined to digest the knowledge as quickly as possible and begin his practice. The 6th ancestor watched him intently, and to claim he felt no tension would be a falsehood. At that moment, the 5th ancestor descended softly beside the 6th ancestor. Seeing Li Qingxin with his eyes closed, his expression shifted. Ultimately, he had arrived too late. He considered rousing Li Qingxin, but the 6th ancestor raised a hand to stop him, shaking his head in refusal. The 5th ancestor transmitted his voice inwardly. 6th ancestor, why are you having Qingxin learn the Star Sword Technique right now? He just created a martial skill from the 13 basic sword forms. The 6th ancestor transmitted only these words, leaving the 5th ancestor momentarily speechless and filled with shock. He then kept a close watch on Li Qingxin's condition, just as the 6th ancestor did, prepared to respond immediately if anything went wrong, while also harboring hope within. As time passed, evening had fallen. The 5th and 6th ancestors, who had been closely monitoring Li Qingxin, suddenly detected a change in the energy surrounding him. Suddenly, both breathed a collective sigh of relief. Behind Li Qingxin, a single stellar phantom appeared, indicating he had initially comprehended the Star Sword Technique. Before either could fully relax, Li Qingxin's aura shifted abruptly. One by one stellar phantoms began appearing behind him. 1, 2, 3, until 1,000 when they finally stopped. The fifth and sixth ancestors had completely lost their composure. The fifth ancestor asked tremblingly, "Sixth ancestor, how many stars did you first cultivate with the star sword technique?" 80. The sixth ancestor felt a bitter taste within. This was simply overwhelming. Hiss. The fifth ancestor drew in a sharp breath. Li Qingqian's astonishing achievements made them deeply feel that all these years had been lived in vain. Most importantly, Li Qingqian was only 5 years old. Just then Li Qingqian withdrew his overwhelming aura and slowly opened his eyes. TCH, only 1,000. Pathetic. Li Qingqian was somewhat disappointed. Compared to the hundreds of millions of stars the sixth ancestor possessed, the gap was enormous. Perhaps he simply wasn't suited to cultivate this sword technique. The fifth and sixth ancestors naturally overheard these words. Their expressions at that moment were truly remarkable, and it was evident that their patience had reached its breaking point. The fifth ancestor glanced at the sixth ancestor and transmitted his voice. "Sixth ancestor, can we really tolerate this without giving him a beating?" "We cannot." The two exchanged another glance, seized Li Qingqian simultaneously, and proceeded to administer a thorough beating. They beat Li Qingqian until he wailed incessantly, leaving him completely bewildered. Afterwards, they graciously justified it as being for his better cultivation of sword techniques. They even claimed that cultivating the star sword technique required such tempering, otherwise it would easily leave severe aftermath, seriously affecting one's life in certain aspects. Li Qingqian was utterly dumbfounded and ultimately believed their explanation. But looking at the expressions of the two ancestors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Time slipped away in such circumstances fleetingly. In the blink of an eye, 8 years passed. In this year, Li Qingqian had turned 13. His visage was extraordinarily handsome, like a banished immortal. His frame was slender and tall, yet full of power, his eyes seeming to contain 10,000 years of glacial cold. Yet that was merely a surface impression. Anyone familiar with him would know that he was actually quite an amusing person. Over these many years, Li Qingqian's life had been almost nothing but a routine, cultivation sleep missions. He had learned the sixth ancestor's star sword technique and could already manifest tens of thousands of stellar afterimages. He had also learned the fifth ancestor's demon-suppressing fist, which held immense power and proved particularly effective against evil demons. He had mastered the ninth ancestor's flowing light, phantom moving like a streak of light, in an instant leaving behind indistinguishable afterimages. He had also learned more than half of the eighth ancestor's heaven-piercing art. Although he hadn't yet reached the eighth ancestor's level, he had achieved considerable accomplishment in divining heavenly secrets. As for combat techniques, they were taught by the 12th ancestor. It was said that in his youth the 12th ancestor had been a battle maniac with traces of his fighting found throughout the Linlang immortal domain. Though his thirst for battle had diminished with age, his combat experience was beyond question. The 10th ancestor taught him palm techniques named the Imperial Sovereign Palm. As for cultivation methods and techniques for tempering soul power, Li Qingqian relied on the Chaos Sutra and the Divine Spirit Refinement Art, both rewards from the mission system. The Chaos Sutra paired flawlessly with his supreme Chaos body. Currently, his physical strength alone surpassed his spiritual energy cultivation realm. During this period, he had also awakened one of the innate divine abilities of the supreme Chaos body, the Chaos Divine Eye. With this, there should be nothing in this world that he could not perceive through. As for the remaining ancestors, they taught him whatever they could: music, chess, calligraphy, painting, and much more. Now, within the entire Li clan, neither the disciples nor many of the elders had any idea of just how strong Li Qingqian truly was. Even he himself was unclear about his exact power level. He only knew that his cultivation had reached the peak of the soul transformation realm. Ugh! Li Qingqian stretched lazily, leaping down from the stone beneath his feet, ready to return to his palace. Sleep was paramount, even though in this world going without sleep posed no real problem. But he simply couldn't break the habit. Ding! Mission issued. Clean the Li clan library pavilion. Li Qingqian, who had barely taken a few steps, suddenly heard this voice in his mind, causing his body to shiver with excitement. This was the sound he looked forward to most every day. Unfortunately, like a lover ignoring their beloved, the more he longed for it, the less it appeared. But the moment he stopped thinking about it, it suddenly popped up. Nice! Li Qingqian jumped up excitedly. He hadn't received a mission from the system in a very long time, and it made him incredibly thrilled. System rewards were like opening blind boxes. There was always both anticipation and potential disappointment. But it was far better than having none at all. Turning around, Li Qingqian headed toward the library pavilion. Look, that person is so handsome. Really? Who is he? I've never seen him before. His temperament is extraordinary too. He seems so aloof. Wow, where did someone this handsome come from? How are we ordinary-looking guys supposed to survive? Exactly, isn't he stealing our livelihood? Livelihood? Where do you have a livelihood? That 300-pound beauty ahead of you is your type. Shut up. As Li Qingshun walked along the path crowded with disciples, he was accompanied by women's exclamations of admiration and men's whispers of jealousy all along the way. But he completely ignored it all, continuing on his own path. He wasn't surprised by this situation. Over these 8 years he had kept a low profile. Whenever the ancestors taught him, they took him directly to the back mountain and returned him straight to his palace. Moreover, the places the ancestors chose had no other disciples around. Even the missions issued by the system were merely simple tasks. Now 8 years had passed, and from age 5 to 13 his appearance had changed drastically. Few people within the Li clan could still recognize him as Li Qingshun. Thus, amid a trail of gasps and exclamations, Li Qingshun arrived at the library pavilion. Gazing at the magnificent structure before him, he must admit he was genuinely astonished. After all, he rarely came to places like this. With ancestors personally teaching him, such locations held little use for him. It was only then that Li Qingshun realized. Even though he was a member of the Li clan, he was still unfamiliar with many of its grounds. The places he was most familiar with were his living quarters, the back mountain, and his grandfather's cave abode within the small world. This was his first time visiting the library pavilion. He suddenly thought he should find time to properly understand his own clan. Otherwise, once he went out into the world, and others discovered that the esteemed Li clan godchild didn't even know his own family, it would be a source of ridicule. There are really a lot of people here. Coming back to his senses, Li Qingshun sighed. There indeed were many people, some coming and going, others chatting idly, and numerous pairs of eyes fixed upon him. I'm not even that handsome. I'm only second best in the world. Regaining his composure, Li Qingshun walked toward the interior of the library pavilion. As he prepared to step inside, a hand stopped him. Please present your disciple token. Li Qingshun turned his head and discovered the speaker was an elderly man. The old man half closed his eyes, scrutinizing Li Qingshun with a careful gaze. It was his first time seeing Li Qingshun, so he didn't know who he was. However, the aura emanating from Li Qingshun stirred suspicion within his heart. The old man was the pavilion guardian. All disciples wishing to enter the library pavilion had to present their disciple tokens before being informed of which floors they were permitted to access. Generally speaking, those he had seen before need not show their tokens again unless they had obtained permission to access higher floors. Li Qingshun had heard of this rule before, but his disciple token seemed to have been lost somewhere. On his person, he only had a token given to him by one of the ancestors. So Li Qingshun retrieved it and quickly put it away again. Although the exposure was brief, the old man still recognized it, his heart overwhelmed by immense shock. Within the Li family, apart from the future divine son, Li Qingshun, who else, so young, could possibly possess the ancestor's token? This was also the reason for the old man's shock. At the same time, he could not help but sigh inwardly. After 13 years, the divine son truly was extraordinary in demeanor, standing far above his peers. Moreover, his strength was so profound that even someone at the saint realm like himself could not fathom it. Yet he could feel the magnificent power surging within his body. Li Qingshun noticed the old man's expression and understood he had already deduced his identity. He secretly flashed him a warning glance, hoping the elder would grasp his intent to remain inconspicuous. The old man was momentarily stunned, as though comprehending something, then offered Li Qingshun a subtle smile before saying, "Young master, you may enter any floor of the library." As the old man's voice echoed through the air, every disciple nearby fell utterly silent, their minds consumed by a single incredulous thought. How could this be? Then a tsunami of commotion erupted outside the library. Who was he? How could he freely enter every floor of the library? Even the prodigies can only reach the 6th floor, let alone the highest 8th floor. Has anyone here seen him before? No one. Wait, I remember now. Among the younger generation of disciples, only one person could do this. Do you still remember the divine son? With these words, every disciple suddenly recalled a particular figure. In the next instant, an eerie silence fell over the entire area surrounding the library, as all eyes locked onto Li Qingshun. After a moment, a disciple exclaimed in astonishment, "It really is the divine son." He recognized him. Although Li Qingshun's appearance had changed dramatically compared to before, upon closer inspection, one could still discern faint similarities. It was not just this disciple. Many others who had seen Li Qingshun 8 years ago were also gradually recognizing him. Watching the scene before him, Li Qingshun maintained a cheerful expression on the surface, but inwardly his sarcastic remarks were all directed at the old man. "You almost didn't even say my name directly. You might as well have pointed at my ID card." Oh right, this world does not have ID cards. In short, the old man had been thoroughly roasted in Li Qingshun's mind. With no other choice, he would simply have to enter this way. Gathering his thoughts, Li Qingshun wasted no more time and stepped inside. The crowd that had been waiting outside quickly followed, keeping a respectful distance behind him as they observed. Stepping into the library, Li Qingshun's eyes lit up. It closely resembled the libraries from his past life, filled with rows upon rows of bookshelves, except that every book here was crafted from parchment scrolls. But once the initial novelty wore off, Li Qingshun's expression fell. The reason was simple. The library was enormous. Looking around, he found the first floor unusually crowded, and with those who had followed Li Qingchen inside, the numbers swelled even further. Of course, those inside also noticed Li Qingchen's handsome face, and the large entourage behind him, their expressions filled with confusion as they failed to understand the commotion. Only after someone asked the friends behind them did they finally understand, accompanied by no small amount of astonishment. They then set aside their parchment scrolls and joined in to watch the spectacle unfold. Every move made by a genius commands attention, especially when it belongs to Li Qingchen, the future divine son. But as they watched, their confusion grew. How could the divine son possibly be pulling out a broom? Was he intending to sweep? The divine son sweeping floors? The absurdity of it all left them utterly bewildered. Li Qingchen paid them no mind. To secure the system's reward, he would have undertaken any task without hesitation, even carrying waste if necessary. Sweeping was nothing compared to what he had done countless times in his previous life. So, disregarding the strange stares from onlookers, he sprang into action with incredible speed, leaving no surface untouched, bookshelves, walls, and even the ceiling. Before long, he had finished the entire first floor and vanished in a flash to the second floor, leaving the crowd behind gazing at each other in utter bewilderment. By the time everyone regained their composure and made their way to the second floor, Li Qingchen was nowhere to be seen. Only two groups of people staring at each other in confusion. The crowd then hurried toward the third floor. Though some could not enter, their numbers surprisingly did not dwindle. In fact, they grew. Yet they still arrived too late. On the fourth floor, Li Qingchen remained unseen, but the crowd continued to swell. By the fifth floor, they finally caught sight of him, but something seemed amiss. Li Qingchen stood face to face with a man clad in black robes. A burly figure with an ordinary face, yet his eyes radiated an unmistakable darkness. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge of frustrated fury. "Where do you come from? You stepped on me and dirted my trousers. Do you have any idea?" The crowd turned to the man and immediately recognized him. Li Yin, one of the 12 great geniuses of the Li family, ranking just below the 9 heavenly prodigies. Surrounding them was a cluster of onlookers, all watching Li Qingchen with amused expressions. This puzzled the newcomers, who, though unsure of what the divine son was doing, had no doubt that Li Yin stood no chance. Some had even been sneaking glances at Li Yin, urging him on, but he ignored them completely. As one of the 12 great geniuses of the Li family, he had never feared anyone among his peers save for those 9 prodigies. The person before him was clearly a stranger, so there was no reason to fear. Though he found it strange that someone had actually managed to step on him, he simply attributed it to his own carelessness. Li Qingchen could not be bothered with someone like him. With his task unfinished, he had no time for distractions, so he coldly dismissed him with a simple move, then gave him a casual push that sent Li Yin crashing to the ground. To those on the 5th floor, the sight was nothing short of unbelievable. They rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Meanwhile, the crowd that had followed Li Qingchen all along exchanged knowing looks, as if they had anticipated exactly this outcome. "Brother, who is that man?" one person whispered to another who had just arrived. The man glanced at him, a smug expression crossing his face. "Him? He's the divine son." A sharp intake of breath escaped him. Shocked, he hurried back to share the news with the others. In an instant, everyone's gaze toward Li Qingchen shifted completely. Meanwhile, Li Yin, furious and humiliated, rose to his feet and charged straight at Li Qingchen. "Don't get cocky, boy," he shouted, launching a devastating punch with tremendous force. Li Qingchen merely twisted his right hand and held his broom up as a shield. A loud crash echoed through the air. Li Yan's formidable punch was effortlessly blocked by Li Qingchen, and with a change of expression, Li Yin realized he had finally encountered a worthy opponent. Just as he was about to back down, a sharp cracking sound reverberated through the room, and everyone present felt their expressions shift. A colossal pressure suddenly descended upon them, drawing gasps from the crowd. Li Qingchen was enraged. His beloved broom had been broken, something he had initially been willing to overlook. Yet now that his cherished broom was shattered, he could not simply let it pass. Still, he considered himself a reasonable person. At least that was how he saw it. An incense stick's worth of time passed, and some covered their mouths, while others clutched their stomachs, leaning against the walls for support. Li Qingchen had not harmed anyone. Rather, the wretched state of his broom in his hands had driven everyone to struggle desperately against their laughter. In truth, he had used Li Yan's head as a makeshift broom, the man's long hair perfectly suited for the task. Li Yan dared not resist in the slightest, for after being thoroughly dealt with by Li Qingchen, he had only just learned the truth, that this was the divine son himself. He became completely submissive, allowing Li Qingchen to do as he pleased. One could almost imagine that even if Li Qingchen demanded something far more absurd, Li Yin would not dare oppose him. In fact, he might offer it willingly. After bustling about for the better part of a day, Li Qingchen finally finished cleaning the library pavilion. Though few people occupied the 6th floor, his act of using Li Yin as a broom sent ripples of speculation through everyone present. As for the 7th and 8th floors above, Li Qingchen noticed no one there either. Thanks to him, Li Yin was also granted access to those upper levels. He could only look around, but that was still material enough for bragging, though he might well become the butt of everyone's teasing. With his task finished, Li Qingqian dragged Li Yin down to the 5th floor and casually tossed him onto the ground. Li Yin scrambled up from the floor and brushed at his hair. Fortunately, the library pavilion was clean. Only his hair had become somewhat disheveled. He then looked toward Li Qingqian ahead of him and asked timidly, Divine Son, may I leave now? Li Qingqian responded indifferently. He had no mind for such things now. His attention was fixed on awaiting the system's quest reward. An entire incense stick's worth of time passed, yet not the slightest response came. The disciples who had yet to depart regarded him with curiosity, watching him stand motionless with closed eyes. Meanwhile, Li Qingqian was already cursing inwardly. Surely this wretched system wasn't toying with him again. Or perhaps the reward had been delayed once more. Against the system's shameless ways, Li Qingqian was utterly powerless. With no recourse, he could only head back for now. As Li Qingqian stepped out of the library pavilion, he distinctly noticed the crowd around him growing denser. Among them, he even caught sight of the banner of his fan club, the Qingqian Society. How utterly conspicuous. And would they please stop calling his name? How mortifying. There were even male fans shouting husband. Li Qingqian's heart was a tumultuous swirl of emotions. Qingqian Gij. At that moment a sweet voice rang through the air. Immediately after, a girl of about 12 or 13 years old came bouncing toward Li Qingqian. She was petite and light on her feet, every flutter of her brow and curve of her lips drawing the gaze of all who looked upon her. Her dark hair was bound into twin ponytails that danced as she skipped along. Mischief glimmered in her eyes, a faint blush colored her cheeks, and her lashes were long and delicate. The moment she caught sight of Li Qingqian, her lips curved into a crescent smile, utterly captivating and impossible to dislike. It's her, the heavens' favored lady Li Ling. So beautiful. But how does she know the Divine Son? Right? From the way she addresses him, they seem quite familiar. The sounds of gossip rose once more from all directions. Li Qingqian felt rather helpless. This little girl appeared harmless, but in truth she was bursting with tricks. She gave him quite the headache. As for how they had met, it was on a clear starlit night 7 years ago. Does this hurt? I'm fine. Just bear with it, and it'll pass. I'm not even afraid, so what are you afraid of? Really? Really? Then I'm going in. Go ahead, hurry up. The sooner we finish, the sooner we get back. At the time, Li Qingqian had been idly wandering about the family estate when he suddenly overheard this exchange, and a knowing smile, the kind every man understands, spread across his face. He had thought to himself then how bold these two were, engaging in such indecent behavior under the cover of a fine evening. Truly unfit for the years. Just as he was about to take his leave, a sudden pierced the air, followed by complete silence from that direction. Li Qingqian's expression grew strange. Surely they hadn't been too rough and perished from the exertion. There was no time to waste. Saving lives came first. Guided by the principle that to spare a life was more virtuous than building a 7-storied pagoda, Li Qingqian rushed in without a moment's hesitation. And then embarrassment struck. It turned out to be a place within the estate where bodies were tempered through cultivation, nothing at all like what he had imagined. Fortunately, no one had noticed anything amiss, and he slinked away in disgrace. He had not walked far before he noticed a little shadow trailing behind him. He had intended to chase her away, but the very first words the little girl spoke left him utterly speechless. You were thinking dirty thoughts just now, weren't you? Those words alone filled Li Qingqian with excruciating embarrassment. The worst part was that the little girl wore the most mischievous expression as she said it. Without a word, Li Qingqian gave her a thorough thrashing. And so it was that the girl, Li Linger, clung to him from that day forth. Every time Li Qingqian recalled this incident, he was consumed by regret. His peace and quiet had vanished without a trace. Snapping back to the present, Li Linger had already reached his side, and with practiced ease looped her arm through his. Li Qingqian appeared entirely accustomed to this, and together they made their way toward his residence. Meanwhile, his fan club had erupted into utter chaos. Where did this little vixen come from? Sister Qing, I'm done. Get that vixen. Along the way, Li Linger clung to Li Qingqian's arm. Gij, if you're this close to me, your fans won't get mad, right? Gij, come hold my hand. Ah, Gij, if your fans knew you were the one holding my hand, they wouldn't get jealous, would they? Your fans wouldn't hit me if they saw right. Your fans sound so scary, not like me. I'd only feel sorry for my dear Gij. 10,000 wild horses stampeded through Li Qingqian's mind. Were girls this kind of adorable creature the same, no matter where one went in the world? He raised his hand and rapped her forehead without hesitation. Li Linger dropped into a crouch as though struck, both hands clutching her forehead, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Though Li Qingqian's strike appeared featherlight, the truth was that an ordinary person would have been hard-pressed to endure it. Li Linger puffed out her cheeks in a sulk. Throughout the entire Li family, who did not treat her like a precious treasure to be spoiled. Yet Li Qingqian alone was different. Not only did he refuse to indulge her, he struck her at the slightest provocation. She was the newest prodigy of the Li family and the youngest among the great prodigies. born merely a month after Li Qingchen himself. However, the thunderous reputation Li Qingchen had forged was so overwhelming that few had paid her much heed. It was only a few years prior when the elders made their announcement that people discovered she possessed the exquisite sacred body. From then on, the Li family's roster of prodigies numbered 10. But Li Qingchen cared nothing for such distinctions. Prodigy or not, anyone who provoked him would get exactly what they deserved. Even Li Suifeng, currently ranked first among them, was not necessarily his match. Enough, stop the act. Let's go. Li Qingchen had long since grown immune to her little performances. She let out a giggle, then once again bounced up to hook her arm through his. Meanwhile, outside the palace where Li Qingchen resided, Li Xiantian was pacing back and forth in obvious agitation. Just moments ago, Li Xingyun, the second-ranked prodigy, had declared his intention to challenge the Divine Sun in 3 days' time. Upon hearing the news, he had rushed over immediately. The opponent was none other than the second-ranked prodigy, a figure far beyond someone like himself, who stood at sixth. Though he had faith in Li Qingchen, a thread of worry still tugged at his heart. Suddenly his eyes lit up, and he strode forward quickly. Big brother, Li Xingyun made an announcement today. He says he'll challenge you in 3 days. Ever since being defeated by Li Qingchen 8 years prior, Li Xiantian had addressed him as Big Brother. Li Qingchen had tried to put a stop to it, but to no avail, and so he had simply let it be. Li Qingchen yawned. All right, I understand. The lazy tone and dismissive words made it abundantly clear that he regarded his opponent as beneath notice. Li Xiantian breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Such an attitude had already foretold the outcome. After the tension faded, Li Xiantian finally lingered behind Li Qingchen, who was staring at him with a beaming smile. A shiver ran down his spine. He knew of the little which, having fallen prey to her tricks a few times under her hand. In the family, only his elder brother could keep her in check. Qingchen Gij, Li Xingyun is ranked second among the Tianjiao. Are you sure you're okay? Li Linger pulled Li Qingchen's sleeve, a rare look of concern on her face. Li Qingchen smiled faintly, ruffled her hair, and said lightly, relax, I'm not the one who will be toppled. All right, you two go back quickly. Well, then I'll go back first. The two answered in unison and left. Li Ling hadn't wanted to go, but he drove her away. It's more comfortable on the bed. Returning to his room, Li Qingchen lay down and slept. Nothing felt as comfortable as a proper rest. Meanwhile, the Li family learned that Li Xingyun would challenge Li Qingchen, and many disciples were buzzing with excitement. It's been a long time since the family had something so entertaining. Among all the disciples, they stood at the pinnacle of the pyramid. Naturally, such an important occasion drew the attention of many. Did you hear? Li Xingyun will challenge Li Qingchen. The match is in 3 days. Yes, the entire Li family has gone mad over it. Who do you think will win, eh? Similar scenes kept playing out across the Li family. In the Li family's north courtyard, Li Hao the fourth Tianjiao halted his needlework, a hint of interest in his eyes, muttering, this is right up my alley. It's good to have someone test his strength. If Li Xingyun loses, I won't have to go to great trouble. From the lake in the back hills, Li Muxua sprang out, her flawless jade body bare to the air. With long strides, she paid no heed to whether her naked body would be ogled. A maid nearby, seeing this, handed over the already prepared green martial robes. In a moment, that perfect jade body had vanished. Li Muxua glanced at the maid still standing there and spoke softly, is there anything else? The maid trembled, replying, Miss Li Xingyun will fight Li Qingchen in 3 days. Li Muxua's eyebrow rose, a rare gleam of interest in her eyes. So this is happening. That's rather interesting. And so on. Such scenes continued to unfold among the other Tianjiao as well. Only Li Suifeng, the first Tianjiao, trained off-site and did not know of this. Even if he knew, he would not care. Moreover, many elders were also very interested. 3 days slipped by. The Li family martial arena was already crowded with people, and the challenger was waiting there. Of course, such a moment attracted the entourages of the two protagonists. Before the fight began, the two sides were already exchanging words. Li Xingyun sat in the arena's center with his eyes closed, as if victory was in his grasp. On the other side, Li Qingchen had just stepped out, yawning as he walked toward the arena. For him, this was no challenge at all. As time wore on, Li Qingchen still hadn't appeared, and many began to doubt whether he would dare show up. Isn't the future divine child afraid? I don't think so. If he really doesn't come, it would be very disappointing. Li Xingyun naturally heard the whispers. He slowly opened his eyes, swept the area, and indeed did not see Li Qingchen. This disappointed him. He forced a wry smile. Did I overestimate him after all? The voice was soft, but clearly heard by those around. Li Linger and Li Xiantian were anxious too, their eyes sweeping around, searching for Li Qingchen's figure. Is it still too early to say that now? At that moment, a clear voice rang through the arena. Li Xingyun's gaze sharpened, and he fixed his eyes on the east-facing direction of the arena. The others followed suit. Under everyone's gaze, a white figure slowly appeared. Though still sleepy, his bearing was not diminished. Seeing Li Qingchen's looks, everyone's breath paused for a moment. The youth stood tall, wearing a snow-white robe with black hair flowing behind him in the wind. His features were handsome, skin fair, and that languid demeanor only added to his charm, giving him an aura as if a celestial being descended to the mortal world. At this moment the crowd looked at Li Qingchen in awe. Even the other Tianjiao had to admit Li Qingchen's temperament and looks were utterly invincible. Strictly speaking, among the disciples present except Li Linger and Li Xiantian, and those who had once frequented the library, the others had not seen Li Qingchen in 8 years. Today was their first time seeing Li Qingchen in person. The shock was inevitable. Many men and women had already become fans. So handsome. Li Muxue whispered, her eyes never leaving Li Qingchen from the moment he appeared. Divine child. Divine child. Divine child. The followers of Li Qingchen cried out with excitement. Li Qingchen slowly stepped onto the arena, still half asleep, while Li Xingyun also regained his focus, studying his opponent's appearance. He couldn't deny that he was a little jealous, but handsome as he was, it would not help. Soon he would drag him from the throne himself. Are you Li Qingchen, the divine child preordained by the ancestor? Yes. Begin. Actually, I think there is no need for a real fight. Li Qingchen met his gaze calmly and continued, because you are not my opponent at all. Arrogant. Li Xingyun suddenly unleashed a ferocious punch toward Li Qingchen. To everyone's surprise, Li Qingchen merely shook his head and did not intend to dodge. Li Xingyun's fist was within reach, while Li Qingchen's figure seemed petrified, unmoving. The punch would have pierced Li Qingchen's body, yet no sound was heard. Just when everyone thought it was over, Li Qingchen's figure gradually faded. It turned out to be an afterimage. Suddenly Li Xingyun seemed to sense something and quickly turned around. Li Qingchen floated in midair. Behind him emerged a huge golden silhouette, and the giant hand of the silhouette slammed downward. A colossal palm pressed down with formidable might, slamming onto Li Xingyun and sending dust into the air. As the crowd sight cleared, Li Xingyun crouched on the ground, panting. It was clear he had expended great effort to withstand that move. This, could it be? The onlooking disciples stiffened as a group, not knowing how to describe their feelings. They had thought that even if Li Xingyun lost, the gap with Li Qingchen wouldn't be that large. But the truth showed them the gap was truly extraordinary. Even defending against Li Qingchen's single move had consumed almost all of Li Xingyun's strength. The fight was already a foregone conclusion. Li Xingyun's countenance showed astonishment as he slowly stood, wiping a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. After this clash, he knew he had greatly underestimated Li Qingchen's power. But that did not mean he would concede defeat. He stood up slowly. Is he going to use that move? Below the arena, Li Muxue's face grew grave. The other Tianjiao, likewise, wore solemn expressions. Li Qingchen displayed an intrigued expression in the air. It seemed Li Xingyun had no intention of yielding. Very well then, let us see what other tricks he had concealed. Regardless of what it was, he possessed absolute confidence in crushing it. If it failed to leave even the slightest impression upon him, that would be terribly disappointing. Sister Muxue, what is that move you were speaking of? Outside the arena, Li Linger noticed their grave expressions and could not help but feel curious. Li Muxue's gaze remained fixed on the arena, more precisely on Li Qingchen. Upon hearing Li Linger's question, she finally turned her head and explained, most within the family only know that Li Xingyun ranks second among the geniuses, but they do not understand why. In truth, measured by talent alone, he could only place in the upper middle tier among the geniuses. His cultivation is also merely upper middle. Yet he still ranks second and has not changed for many years. Do you know why? Li Linger shook her head. She had only just learned that Li Xingyun's talent and cultivation were merely of an upper middle degree, yet he still managed to secure the second position. Previously, she had always believed that Li Xingyun's talent and cultivation should have been extraordinary. Had it not been for Li Muxue's explanation just now, she would never have known there was a secret behind it all. Seeing Li Linger shake her head, Li Muxue showed no surprise. She continued to gaze toward the arena while adding, the reason for this situation is precisely the move he is about to use. This technique is called Starlight Sword Art, which I believe you have also heard of. Li Linger shivered slightly. Of course she had heard of Starlight Sword Art. It was regarded as one of the 5 supreme sword arts of the Linlang immortal domain, and its devastating power was beyond question. However, she also knew that the cultivation of this sword art was extraordinarily difficult. Talent alone was insufficient. Some people could comprehend it, but only at a superficial level. Without the ability to make further progress after comprehension, this sword art was virtually useless. Did they not see that among the great ancestors, only Grandfather Lu had cultivated Starlight Sword Art to a remarkable degree? Grandfather Lu's tremendous prestige across the Linlang immortal domain was to no small extent attributed to the deterrent power of this sword art. Could it be that his attainment in Starlight Sword Art is exceptionally high? Among the younger generation, yes. It is said that a few years ago he could already condense 1,000 star shadows, and now perhaps even more. This. Li Linger's mouth hung open in astonishment. She had never expected Li Xingyun to have reached such a degree, and suddenly, she felt a touch of worry for Li Qingchen. She glanced over only to discover he showed not the slightest trace of gravity. On the contrary, he appeared to be watching a show. Yes, precisely that. an audience member's casual demeanor. This sight caused Li Linger's worry to vanish completely. If he himself was not concerned, then her worrying would be futile. On the arena, after a brief period of recuperation, Li Xingyun drew a long sword. The blade was 3 feet 6 inches in length, gleaming with cold light and radiating an astonishing aura. This was an imperial-grade artifact. Seeing this sword, numerous eyes in the crowd filled with envy. Within the Li family, only the top geniuses were granted imperial-grade artifacts by the clan. As for the talents below them, they could only obtain royal-grade weapons. Ordinary disciples could only acquire weapons below the royal grade. But even so, only superpowers could afford to maintain such armories. Regular factions would consider it fortunate to possess a few treasure-grade artifacts. As for royal grade and the even higher imperial grade, they need not even entertain the thought. Wait, doesn't the Divine Son also have a sword? Suddenly a disciple recalled something and cried out in surprise. The moment these words were spoken, everyone snapped out of their daze. Right? And didn't the Divine Son's sword happen to be a sacred artifact? The prominent genius's expressions suddenly changed. They had overlooked the fact that Li Qingchen also possessed a sacred artifact. The blame lay in Li Qingchen having gone too long without wielding his sword, causing everyone to forget. I admit I underestimated you, but that does not mean you can necessarily defeat me. Li Xingyun slowly raised his sword, and his aura underwent a sudden transformation. Behind him, star shadows gradually began to appear one after another. Here it comes. Li Mushue's eyes locked tightly onto the arena. At the same time, a flicker of astonishment passed through Li Qingchen's eyes. He had not expected Li Xingyun's trump card to be the Starlight Sword art. It was somewhat impressive. However, this sword art was far from perfected. Only 2,000 star shadows. I had already reached that milestone 8 years ago. Indeed, within a mere instant, over 2,000 star shadows had condensed behind Li Xingyun, still slowly increasing until they stabilized at more than 2,300. I did not expect it to reach over 2,000. Li Xiantian murmured to himself, yet he trusted Li Qingchen. With a sacred artifact in hand, the situation should be manageable. This seems to be the Starlight Sword art. It appears so. Good heavens. Geniuses truly are geniuses. Their comprehension is something we ordinary people cannot hope to match. Although many disciples did not have the qualifications to cultivate this sword art, most had heard of its formidable reputation. After all, one of its defining characteristics was the star shadows. Thus they were mostly able to recognize it. Despite their shock, judging from the earlier exchanges, Li Xingyun might still struggle. Furthermore, the Divine Son still possessed a sacred artifact. Consequently, all gazes turned toward Li Qingchen, eager to observe his reaction. As expected, under the weight of everyone's attention, Li Qingchen slowly withdrew a sword. The blade shimmered with radiance, exceedingly dazzling. It was unmistakably a treasure-grade artifact. Darn it! This was everyone's unanimous thought. How could he possibly fight with a treasure-grade artifact against a sacred artifact? Many even felt he was far too arrogant, continuing to put on a brave face under such circumstances. When he lost, how would he ever save face? Li Mushue's eyes also revealed a trace of disappointment. Pushing himself in a situation like this, she truly had overestimated him. Li Qingchen smiled faintly. It was not that he did not wish to draw his sacred artifact, but rather that he feared accidentally obliterating Li Xingyun, which would be utterly disastrous. After all, Li Xingyun was a family genius. In the future, he was supposed to contribute to the clan. How could he be annihilated by his own kin? Immediately afterwards, star shadows also began to appear behind him, their numbers far surpassing Li Xingyun's 2,000 plus, fully 10 times as many. Starlight Sword art. Sorry, I know it as well. The moment his voice spread through the surroundings, everyone lost their composure. Rumble. Within moments, a sound like a tidal wave erupted around them. Good heavens, so the Divine Sun Master also knows it. The Divine Sun Master is forever invincible. Divine Sun Master, I want to serve as your monkey. Wait, spit, I mean give birth to your children. Hearing these words, Li Qingchen nearly tumbled down from the sky. Serve as your monkey. Is that even something a person would say? Thank goodness he misspoke. Meanwhile, the genius disciples, different from the ordinary ones along with the prodigy tier disciples, were already thoroughly stunned. Among them, Li Xingyun, standing on the arena, felt it the most acutely. When he clearly saw the tens of thousands of star shadows behind Li Qingchen, he could only feel as though the entire world was playing a joke on him. 20,000. What kind of concept was that? Slaying him would be as easy as slaughtering a dog. How could he possibly fight? With what, for heaven's sake? Even if he were stubborn to the point of recklessness, he would never do such a suicidal thing. In an instant, Li Xingyun surrendered. The star shadows behind him dispersed, and he sheathed his sword, bowing his head bitterly. I yield. Upon seeing this, Li Qingchen also retracted the star shadows behind him. If he could avoid fighting altogether, all the better. He himself found the whole matter troublesome anyway. As Li Qingchen descended from the skies, waves of exclamations erupted from the surrounding disciples. Li Mushue gazed at the radiant young man ahead, her eyes alight with admiration. She was thoroughly pleased with the one she had set her sights upon, having entirely forgotten that just moments ago she had believed she had misjudged him. Li Qingqian had barely stood upon the arena for 2 minutes when his countenance suddenly shifted. Casting aside all other matters, he hurried frantically back toward his residence. He didn't even notice when Li Xiantian and Li Linger greeted him. This left the two utterly baffled, and they could only assume he had some urgent matter to attend to. As for the other prodigies, none of them harbored any thought of challenging Li Qingqian any longer. After all, the fate of the previous challenger stood as a stark testament. Any further challenge would be nothing short of inviting humiliation upon themselves. In their hearts, they had already acquiesced to Li Qingqian's status as the Divine Son. Yet their recognition alone would not suffice. To claim that title, he would also need the acknowledgement of another, the one who reigned supreme as the foremost prodigy of the Li clan. Though the ancestors had internally designated him as the Li clan's divine son, his true strength would ultimately be the deciding factor. Thus a confrontation between Li Qingqian and Li Suifeng was inevitable. The ancestors eagerly anticipated his triumph over Li Suifeng. At this thought they exchanged knowing glances in unison, a peculiar gleam shimmering within their eyes. Upon a cloud suspended above the arena, the fifth ancestor stroked his beard and teased the sixth ancestor beside him. Sixth brother, the pace at which Qingqian cultivates the stellar sword art grows ever swifter. Naturally, but of course, have you forgotten who it was that instructed him? The sixth ancestor was visibly rather pleased with himself. The fifth ancestor's expression darkened somewhat. His implication had been that Qingqian's progress with the stellar sword art far surpassed that of the sixth ancestor in his own time. He never expected the sixth ancestor to take pride in it, as though he alone had taught the boy while the rest of them had contributed nothing at all. I was the very first to instruct Qingqian, yet I never boasted as you do. When we play chess later, I shall strip you bare of every last wager. I shall not let your smugness stand. Sixth brother, come. Let us play chess. We have an agreement, mind you. The loser shall not welch on his debt. Upon a cloud above the Li clan's eastern court, Li Qingqian sat cross-legged upon the bed, within his palace, his countenance alight with barely contained excitement as his palms rubbed together ceaselessly. The reason was none other than that the system's reward was finally about to be delivered. The moment his battle concluded, those words, "Mission complete," had echoed through his mind. This had thrilled him immensely, and he had rushed back post-haste. Treasures such as these ought to be savored in secret. Yet within his heart fluttered a certain anxiety. Should the reward once more prove to be some nonsensical trinket, he would truly be cursing his luck through gritted teeth. Li Qingqian drew a deep breath. Come then, I am prepared. Hurl your rewards upon me with all your might. Just let them not be some intimate undergarment, or the like, I beseech you. Ding. Reward obtained, soul captivation art. It has arrived. Not an undergarment, nor any other nonsensical item. He exhaled in relief. Soul captivation art. It seems to be a martial technique akin to hypnosis. Though I wonder what grade it might be. If it can only hypnotize practitioners at the true Yuan realm, then it would be far too pedestrian. The instant Li Qingqian finished speaking, an overwhelming surge of information flooded into his mind, leaving him momentarily dazed. After half an instant's time, he had fully mastered the soul captivation art. To his astonishment, the grade of this martial technique was likewise imperial. In his imagination, truly formidable martial arts ought to bear names that were brash, dazzling, and imposing. The soul captivation art at first glance lacked any such grandeur. Yet, contrary to expectations, despite its unassuming name, it was indeed an imperial-grade martial technique, on equal footing with the stellar sword art. This technique could not only lull its victims into slumber, but could also enslave them. Even the alteration of memories could be accomplished with the utmost ease. Moreover, only he himself could undo its effects. With his current cultivation, he could even use this technique to control those at the peak of the Heavenly King realm, a full major realm above him. Truly worthy of an imperial-grade martial technique. Having thoroughly acquainted himself with the soul captivation art, he suddenly wished to find someone upon whom to experiment, primarily out of fear that the system had deceived him. Should he foolishly approach someone one day and employ this technique only to find it utterly ineffective, how utterly mortifying that would be. He would have no choice but to pay them a visit for tea before making his retreat. The problem, however, was that there was no one available to serve as his test subject at present. I've got it. He resolved to seek out Li Xuantian, silently offering his apologies within his heart. Knock, knock, knock. Before he had taken more than 2 steps, the sound of knocking echoed through the door, filling him with delight. As expected, Li Xuantian understood him well. He knew precisely when he was needed, and had come forth of his own accord. At this realization, Li Qingqian didn't even bother to look through, opened the door, and bestowed upon the visitor a grand embrace. One who was so considerate surely deserved a hug, did he not? Yet the moment the door swung open, a fragrant aroma rushed forth to greet him. Li Qingqian gazed outward to find a woman standing there. He hastily arrested his advance. By the narrowest of margins, his head would have buried itself within those soft contours. Li Qingqian surreptitiously wiped away his sweat, secretly exclaiming at the narrow escape. Yet this very action caused Li Mushue's gaze to sharpen as she remarked, "Does the Divine Sun find me displeasing?" "No, not at all. But miss, to what do I owe this visit?" "The Divine Sun does not welcome me." "Not at all. I merely do not know who miss might be." Li Qingqian peered at her with a pair of innocent wide eyes, his expression one of pure bewilderment. This display instantly roused Li Mushue to fury. Not only did he fail to know her name, but he had called her miss. Did she truly appear that old? Li Mushue had already been nursing her grievances, and now seeing Li Qingqian's gaze roving over her chest, her indignation only deepened. "So this is the sort of person you are, Divine Sun. How profoundly disappointing." Li Qingqian found this rather peculiar. "Disappointing you? I don't even know you. And besides, weren't you the one who sought me out?" Yet upon further reflection, wasn't she a test subject delivered right to his doorstep? At once 2 beams of emerald light radiated from his eyes. Li Mushue stiffened, her eyes gradually losing their luster. Upon witnessing this, Li Qingqian immediately began his interrogation. "Who are you?" "The third-rank prodigy of the Li clan, Li Mushue." Li Mushue answered in a wooden hollow voice. Li Qingqian stroked his chin. "So it was her. What brings you here?" "I hold great interest in the Divine Sun, and wish to make his acquaintance." Indeed, this young master's charm knows no equal. Thereafter, emerald light flickered once more in his eyes. Li Mushue returned to her former state. "You silence." Li Mushue was stunned. She found herself utterly unable to speak, as though she could not defy his command. "Come here, give me a performance of dance." Li Mushue's body immediately began to writhe, though her movements were crooked and graceless, leaving Li Qingqian utterly speechless. Li Mushue was profoundly shaken, astonished that she could offer no resistance whatsoever to Li Qingqian's command. Truly magnificent. What the system produces must surely be of the finest quality. Now came the alteration of memory. For the third time, emerald light flickered within Li Qingqian's eyes. Half an incense stick's time later, Li Mushue gazed about her in utter bewilderment. She recalled that she had come seeking Li Qingqian, but beyond that her memory was a void. Then how did I even end up here? Why can't I remember anything? Li studied her expression for a moment, and only after confirming that her memories had indeed been erased did he smile. Now he could carry out some unspeakable deeds, but he swore to himself that he would pursue only proper matters. Li Mushue shook her somewhat dazed head, then looked at the man before her, and smiled. "Divine Prodigy, nice to meet you. I am Li Mushue. Oh, I see you're Tianjiao now. Free right." Li Qingqian rubbed his chin, feigning contemplation. "What does Miss Mushue seek from me?" Li Mushue's eyes flashed with a hint of astonishment as she exclaimed, "Divine Prodigy, today's combat was truly brilliant. This elder sister's heart is stirred. And what, Divine Prodigy, aren't you going to invite this elder sister to sit for a moment?" "Of course, how could I let such a beauty stand?" Li Qingqian made a pleased gesture. Speaking of which, although this was his first time meeting her, he had heard plenty of rumors about her. Li Mushue, though her name contains snow, possesses a fiery physique and her strength is formidable. Otherwise, she wouldn't rank as the no. Free Tianjiao. And because of her physique, her temperament is bold and unrestrained. But if you think you can tease her, you'll definitely bite off more than you can chew. It is said that a man from another faction attempted to flirt with her and ended up crippled on one side. Not long ago, he heard the rumor and marveled that within the family there could be such a temperamental woman. But after meeting her in person, he didn't feel she was that fiery. Could it be because she's interested in him? The two talked happily, from battles to daily life, from daily life to gossip, until Li Qingqian ended the topic, claiming he needed to cultivate. Inevitably, they talked so much that they forgot what they were doing. At night, Li Qingqian lay on his bed, no, on the large bed above, feeling as if his body had been drained. He just wanted a quiet rest, but after Li Mushue left, Li Linger came. After Li Linger left, Li Xiantian came. And every time they showed up, just as his pants were halfway down, there were moments he longed to send these two off to fetch scriptures from the West. Thinking it over, he had lived in this world 13 years, only left the family once, and he wanted to go out and play. Traveling the world, wouldn't that be wonderful? After such a hard one crossing, staying in the clan every day felt pointless. But the old ancestor always claimed he was still young, and that there were too many threats outside, so he wouldn't let him go out. This left Li Qingqian deeply frustrated. At this moment, a mission arrived. Usually he'd be thrilled beyond measure, but this time, "System, are you sure there's no glitch? Clean the pigsties. Or all pigsties within a country. Is this something a human would do? System, are you a dog? And furthermore, where is Qingli Kingdom, anyway? I don't know. Well, swearing aside, the mission still has to be done. I'm contributing to the world. If everyone lends a little love, the world will become a better place. But how could I go out?" Suddenly, Li Qingqian recalled the problem. Blood rebirth, what a tempting phrase. Tears couldn't help but leak from the corners of his mouth. "Fine, I won't think about it anymore. Sleep." Li Qingqian lay down and slept that anything else could wait until tomorrow. A quarter of an hour later, Li Qingqian suddenly leapt up from the bed. "System, are you asleep?" "I can't sleep from longing." No, I must think of a way to go out. With all sleepiness gone, Li Qingchen decided to ask someone for a way to leave the family. After dressing quickly, he left the great hall. The first place he went was Li Xuantian's residence. Since he could go out freely, his information sources were broad, and that is why Li Qingchen went to him first. Li Qingchen envied him greatly. Li Xiantian seldom, when out, a well-fed man cannot know the hunger of others. Inside the hall, Li Xiantian sat in a chair deep in thought. Li Qingchen stood beside him, eyes fixed, expression grave. What now? This path won't work. What do you mean? Lie down on the bed, and your troubles will vanish. I'll give you another chance. Difficulties are only temporary. Tomorrow will be brighter. Come on. Ollie guy. Li Qingchen struck it with a single blow, then delivered a few more kicks. I taught you Ollie guy, and you go and overuse it after learning just a couple of words. He was burning with urgency, yet they teased him. Bite a low. Bite a low. Amid the beating, Li Xuantian's muffled voice could be heard. Li Qingchen faintly caught the last words he uttered. I thought of it. Only then did he lay the hammer down. Oh, but where did that hammer come from? It felt quite handy to use. He sat back on his small bench, clapped his hands, and asked again, any idea yet? Li Xiantian rubbed his face, correcting his pronunciation. A couple of days ago, it seems a country reported a raid by a powerful beast herd and begged the clan for aid. The family seems to be sending people over tomorrow to handle it. That country was called Qingli Kingdom, I think. Li Qingchen's eyes lit up on hearing Qingli Kingdom. Isn't that the location of the system's mission? To confirm Li Xiantian hadn't spoken wrong, he asked again, which country was it again? Qingli Kingdom. With that settled, he would go to the old ancestor to plead his case immediately. Phantom light and shadows swirled around. Brother, why are you not speaking? Brother, are you dead? You died so tragically. Damn, that was fake. Seeing the silhouette vanish, Li Xiantian exclaimed, brother really comes and goes with no trace. And at this moment Li Qingchen had reached the fifth ancestor's side, clinging to his leg with a look of pleading. Fifth ancestor, please let me go. The fifth ancestor's face turned cold. No. Of course not. Li Qingchen is the clan's hope for this generation's path to supremacy, but he's the family's precious treasure. Outside is dangerous. What if something goes wrong? Then he might be dragged out and beaten by the other elders. Seeing that this tactic wouldn't work, Li Qingchen decided to cite historical records to argue his case. Fifth ancestor Li Daolin, the emperor lord from 30,000 years ago, also went out to train at 10, and not only was he fine, he even broke through to the great emperor realm. Li Linfeng, the emperor lord from 60,000 years ago, also left to train at 14 and eventually became an emperor. And from 100,000 years ago, 1,400,000 years ago. For a moment the fifth ancestor had nothing to say. No. He was about to say no, but suddenly paused, a strange expression on his face. The eighth ancestor had just transmitted to him to agree to Li Qingchen's request. Very well, in this you outrank us, you call the shots. Fine, but within the clan an elder will be arranged to guard your safety. You should go back and rest. Li Qingchen was instantly thrilled, exclaiming, thank you, fifth ancestor. Then he hopped away. To be honest, when he heard the word no, he thought it was over, yet the turn of events surprised him. Indeed, the charm of this divine prodigy is immense. Qingli Kingdom welcomed the arrival of this divine prodigy. The fifth ancestor looked at Li Qingchen's bouncing figure and shook his head with a smile. Already on the verge of becoming the divine prodigy, yet still so impatient. The next morning, an elderly man arrived outside Li Qingchen's palace and waited silently. As soon as Li Qingchen stepped out of the main hall, the old man approached him with hands clasped and said, Your Holiness, I am an elder sent by the Li family to protect your safety. Please follow me. Li Qingchen gave a slight nod and followed along. Today was to be the day of departure, and he traveled alongside the others toward the Huangling Great World, constantly posing various questions to this elder along the way. The elder answered each one patiently. Through their conversation, Li Qingchen learned that his name was Li Yuan, one of the family elders whose cultivation had reached the peak of the Saint Realm. Li Qingchen stroked his chin, realizing the family had invested considerable effort into his safety. The Huangling Great World possessed no super factions, instead being controlled by superpowers from other great worlds. Qingli Kingdom was one of the 4 great nations within the Huangling Great World, and also a vassal force of the Li family. Recently, a group of extremely powerful demonic beasts had appeared within its territory, causing enormous damage to Qingli Kingdom. Its ruler Qing Huiya had no choice but to send a desperate plea for aid to the Li family. The 4 great nations of the Huangling Great World were roughly equal in size, yet belonged to different factions, with Qingli Kingdom occupying the southern region. Dongwu Kingdom lay to the east. The 4 nations had originally been of equal strength, but this time, aside from Dongwu Kingdom, the other 3 had all been affected to varying degrees by the demonic beasts. Qingli Kingdom suffered the most severe losses. Meanwhile, in Dongwu Kingdom, one of the 4 great nations of the Huangling Great World. At that moment, within the Dongwu Kingdom palace, a young man clad in a long robe embroidered with dragons stood with hands clasped, bowing respectfully as he waited for the middle-aged man upon the imperial throne to speak. The youth appeared to be around 15 or 16 years of age with a handsome face. His cultivation had reached the true Yuan realm. Though he had broken through only recently, it was already considered remarkable for someone of his age. However, compared to disciples of ancient prestigious families, he still fell considerably short. He was the second prince of Dongwu Kingdom, Wu Lu. At this moment, a wave of excitement washed over Wu Lu's face. He had long coveted Qingli Kingdom's eldest princess Qingyu. He had attempted to arrange a marriage alliance with Qingli Kingdom several times, but each effort had come to naught. The primary reasons were Qingyu's lack of interest in him and the staunch attitude of Qingli Kingdom's ruler. After all, the two nations were already in a state of hostility. A success would have been the true miracle. But now the sudden demonic beast onslaught had crippled Qingli Kingdom's strength, leaving them barely able to hold out. This was precisely the perfect opportunity. Father, Wu Lu declared eagerly, this is the perfect moment. They are completely isolated. Although Qingli Kingdom has sent a distress call to the Li family, so much time has passed with no response from them, which speaks volumes. Even if the Li family does send someone, it will not happen quickly. Upon the imperial throne sat Wu Xiao, his expression dignified and authoritative, with surging energy radiating from his figure. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the armrest of the throne, lost in thought, as he weighed the feasibility of this scheme. After a while he spoke in a measured tone. The Li family is an ancient lineage with tremendous strength. It will not be easy to handle. Seeing his father had not yet made up his mind, Wu Lu pressed on. Even if the Li family is powerful, we need only pressure Qingli Kingdom into signing a treaty before they send reinforcements. What then if the Li family does arrive? We too have super factions backing us. By then it becomes their game to play. With our super factions' support and a binding treaty in hand, it would be absolutely foolproof. A flicker of interest crossed Wu Zhao's eyes. The reasoning was indeed sound. Qingli Kingdom had the Li family behind them, but Dongwu Kingdom had its own super faction backing as well. There was no reason to worry at all. Looking at the son before him, Wu Zhao's eyes filled with deep satisfaction. Among all his children, this son was undoubtedly the one he valued most. Entrusting the throne to him meant his reign would continue without interruption, ensuring no heirless succession. Very well, Lure. Prepare the armies immediately. We depart at once. This son obeys your decree, Wu Lu replied with a smile, before slowly retreating from the hall, promptly organizing his troops. Qingli Kingdom, within the imperial palace hall, Qing Wuya sat upon the throne, his expression deeply troubled. The other ministers shared the same somber demeanor, each draped in gloom, the entire hall shrouded in oppressive heaviness. The demonic beast horde was simply too vast, and their strength too formidable. Within the nation, countless soldiers had already been lost. Large swathes of territory had fallen to the beasts, and the civilian population suffered staggering casualties. Days had passed since their plea for aid reached the Li family, yet not a single response had arrived. This was precisely why the ministers in the hall wore such despairing expressions, the atmosphere thick with suffocation. Qing Yu watched this scene with unbearable sorrow, stepping forward toward Qing Wuya. Father, why don't we seek aid from Dongwu Kingdom? Impossible. You know exactly what Dongwu Kingdom schemed. Qing Wuya flatly refused. That's right, Your Majesty. Dongwu Kingdom harbors dire ambitions. Correct. We would rather perish than beg Dongwu Kingdom for help. We fought them for so many years. How could we surrender now just because of this? The ministers erupted into heated discussion. Seeking aid from Dongwu Kingdom was absolutely out of the question. At that moment, a soldier rushed desperately into the hall, his voice urgent and breathless. Report. The demonic beasts have erupted again, and this time the scale is massive. All 5 cities in the southern region have fallen. General Lin Mang has sacrificed his life. What? Hearing this, every face in the hall changed color simultaneously. Qing Wuya even shot upright from his seat. The demonic beasts had attacked once more, and General Lin Mang had perished. Lin Mang was a powerhouse at the peak of the Demon King realm. He was among the very few Demon King realm experts in all of Qingli Kingdom, representing the pinnacle of the nation's combat strength. If even he had fallen, then Qingli Kingdom might truly be unable to escape this calamity. Report. Someone is approaching from the front. Another voice rang out, and this time it made everyone stir with sudden hope. Your Majesty, could it be? One minister began, his face alight with anticipation. Perhaps the Li family has finally sent someone. A smile spread across Qing Wuya's face. Beside him, Qing Yu also breathed a sigh of relief. Now Qingli Kingdom was saved. Once the Li family acted, the current crisis would be resolved in moments. As she felt this wave of gratitude, a trace of curiosity stirred within her regarding the Li family. Their true strength was something she had only ever heard described by her father. She had never seen them with her own eyes, and had always yearned to witness it firsthand. Let us go out and receive them together. Qing Wuya waved his right hand and strode out of the hall first, with the others quickly following in his wake. Outside the hall, everyone gazed eagerly into the distance, and indeed figures gradually appeared on the horizon. This sight only intensified their excitement. Qing Wuya, what's the meaning of this? Did you know we were coming and come out specifically to welcome us? Ha ha ha. Whoosh. The moment they heard that voice, every single face collapsed instantly. They naturally recognized whose voice it was. After fighting against this nation for so long, the enemy ruler's voice was something they knew better than their own. Wu Xiao, what are you doing here? Qingli Kingdom does not welcome you. Qing Wuya struggled to suppress his anger. He knew exactly what Wu Xiao's intentions were, simply taking advantage of the crisis. The others were equally aware and thus showed them no courtesy. Wu Xiao sneered, hands clasped behind his back, and said calmly, Qing Wuya, if you don't mind my saying so, the fire is about to reach your doorstep. At this moment you should be rushing to extinguish the fire rather than dwelling on such matters. Clearly there is someone right before you who can help resolve this crisis. If I were you, I would have sought their aid long ago. Roar. A sudden beast's roar caused everyone from Qingli Kingdom to shift their expressions once more. But there is little time remaining, Wu Xiao reminded once again. Qing Wuya clenched his fists tightly, facing an agonizing choice within. All others' gazes converged upon him. As time ticked by, the beast roars multiplied and grew ever more frequent. After a long while, Qing Wuya released his clenched hands, his face etched with utter desolation. He sighed deeply and spoke, state your terms. The moment the words left his lips, he seemed to age decades in an instant. Qing Yu's face was filled with heartache and helplessness. She understood this was the only option left and lifted her gaze toward the sky, harboring a sliver of hope. Could the Li family come? The ministers of Qingli Kingdom opened their mouths, but could find no words, only managing a collective sigh. Wu Xiao and Wu Lu behind him flashed triumphant smiles. The terms are simple. Hand over Princess Qingwei in marriage to my son Wu Lu and cede half of your territory to our Dongwu Kingdom, and we shall dispatch troops to support you. In truth, Wu Xiao had hoped Qingli Kingdom would submit entirely to Dongwu Kingdom, but the Li family was not someone to provoke lightly. Even with powerful backing behind them, pushing too far would complicate matters. That was why he settled on demanding only half the territory. Not a chance. Qing Wuya roared. Were the demand merely a marriage alliance, he might have agreed for the sake of his people. But surrendering half the territory was absolutely unthinkable. This bastard certainly knows how to make demands. If not for the domestic weakness caused by the beast tides, he would have already attacked this villain. Your Dongwu Kingdom has gone too far. Qingli Kingdom will never accept such a humiliating demand. Indeed, we would rather perish in battle than survive in disgrace. The Qingli Kingdom ministers were all enraged. One could say that Wu Xiao's demand had already crossed their bottom line. Qing Yu had been prepared to sacrifice herself, but now it was clear. Even if she persuaded her father to agree to the marriage, he would never concede territory. Now she had less to lose. If they were to die, she would die alongside them. Wu Xiao's rage twisted into a sneer, while Wu Lu's expression darkened. The people of Qingli Kingdom were stubborn indeed. He had expected this trip to go smoothly, never imagining such an outcome. Without a proper pretext, attacking them would risk drawing the Li family's retaliation. If that was the case, then they could only watch them slowly perish. Excellent. Simply excellent. Then today let us witness how Qingli Kingdom falls. I do not know whether Qingli Kingdom will perish, but your Dongwu Kingdom certainly will. Who dares? A sudden voice filled the air, stirring Wu Xiao's fury. Someone had the audacity to claim his Dongwu Kingdom would be destroyed. Oh, I am merely an ordinary commoner. As the voice echoed again, a massive beast descended from the sky, radiating overwhelming power. It is a golden quill crimson-headed vulture. Someone cried out in shock. The crowd confirmed it was indeed a golden quill crimson-headed vulture, their astonishment palpable. As everyone knew, beasts were classified from 1st to 9th tier. The higher the tier, the more formidable. The golden quill crimson-headed vulture was a 9th tier beast. In terms of cultivator realms, this corresponded to the Demon King stage. Beyond that, those of even higher cultivation were no longer called demonic beasts. They were simply known as ancient demons. Ancient demons existed within the Li family as well, though few in number, and were rarely deployed. Those that could be tamed were exceedingly rare, making each one deeply cherished. As the golden quill crimson-headed vulture settled above them, they finally noticed a young man and an elderly figure seated upon it. The speaker was indeed the young man, Li Qingchen. Li Qingchen stepped down from the vulture with measured grace, hands clasped behind his back, while elderly Yuan trailed silently behind him. Wu Xiao frowned, an ominous feeling stirring within. He asked, just who are you? Li Qingchen offered no reply to Wu Xiao, instead approaching Qing Wuya and saying, I am already aware of the situation. Do not worry. Qing Wuya's body trembled, and he suppressed his inner excitement, bowing respectfully. Yes. He had already guessed it was someone from the Li family. He had expected merely an ordinary envoy, never imagining it would be a divine son. A divine son, what a concept. They were nearly the strongest among the younger generation. How could he remain unshaken? Beside him, Qing Yu's eyes shimmered as she gazed at Li Qingchen. His bearing and countenance were incomparable to that of Wu Lu. As for Wu Xiao and his companions, even the dullest among them had already deduced that Li Qingchun was sent by the Li family. Wu Lu naturally noticed Qing Yu's luminous gaze toward Li Qingchun, and fury burned within him. How dare she look at another man this way after knowing him for so long? Was it because he had power? Or because he was handsome? Though enraged, he had not lost his rationality, and was already preparing to depart. But the moment he turned, he was discovered. Where do you think you are going? Li Qingchun regarded them with a faint smile. It had been a long time since he had enjoyed a proper fight. A peak Demon King realm cultivator, 2 full stages above himself, should provide adequate sport. He gestured to Li Yuan. Li Yuan understood. The Divine Sun was signaling him not to intervene. It seemed he wished to test his own strength. Just as well. He himself was quite curious about the extent of the Divine Sun's prowess. Wu Xiao, who had paused, saw his expression shift. With a ruthless decision, he thought, then there is no other choice. I will fight to the death. He still did not believe this young man's strength could surpass the Demon King realm. He slowly turned around, and the aura of the Demon King realm instantly exploded outward. Li Qingchun naturally discerned his intentions and wasted no words. The supreme Xianyuan sword materialized from thin air, gently grasped in his hand. Li Yuan's eyes narrowed. He had not expected the Divine Sun to draw this blade from the start. The outcome of this battle was already sealed. Immediately after, phantom images of stars began appearing behind Li Qingchun. This made Li Yuan's eyebrows twitch once more. Was this not outright bullying? How was his opponent supposed to fight? From the moment the sword appeared, Wu Xiao had sensed danger, and as time passed, that sense of peril only intensified. He knew he could no longer delay. He was fast, but Li Qingchun's sword was faster. All present witnessed a dazzling arc of sword energy sweep across the battlefield. In an instant, Wu Xiao fell where he stood, never even having the chance to strike back. The sword's momentum carried on unabated, obliterating a horde of demonic beasts hundreds of miles away. The sword aura struck the ground with a thunderous explosion, sending a cloud of dust billowing into the air. Even from a great distance, the massive crater was plainly visible. He annihilated Wu Xiao with a single sword strike. Am I dreaming? Just now, even the void itself cracked. That is simply beyond comprehension. Everyone stood utterly transfixed, their mouths agape, as if they could swallow an egg whole. Even elderly Yuan's eyes were filled with shock. He had always believed the Divine Sun's strength should have reached the Heavenly King realm, but from the aura he had just displayed, the Divine Sun's cultivation only peaked at the spirit transformation stage. To annihilate someone at the peak of the Demon King realm with mere spirit transformation cultivation was absurd. And considering the Divine Sun was only 13 years old, with such cultivation at that age, just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. Only Li Qingchun himself shook his head with a light sigh, saying, I never expected one to escape. In that fleeting instant when his sword aura had slashed through, he had clearly glimpsed a faint flicker of light. That prince of the Dongwu kingdom had fled. Li Qingchun surmised it must be some life-preserving treasure bestowed by the superpower backing them. Otherwise escape would have been impossible. Yet his escape posed no real concern. He could simply kill him next time. While others might view this as a threat, Li Qingchun felt entirely unthreatened. Roar! The beast's roar shattered Li Qingchun's contemplation. Looking up, he could already see countless demonic beasts converging from afar. They varied in species and swarmed in such numbers that he couldn't help but wonder if something had gone awry. Why would these demonic beasts suddenly go rabid? But the pressing matter was to eliminate them first. His flowing light phantom technique activated instantly, and in a split second, he arrived among the demonic beasts. Li Qingchun's aura condensed, and a colossal golden spectral figure emerged behind him, radiating immense energy. This was the martial art he had used during his family's battle against Li Xingyun, the Emperor's ultimate palm, a saint-level technique he had learned from the 10th ancestor. The golden phantom's massive hand descended in an instant, crushing countless demonic beasts into nothingness. A vacuum zone instantly formed across 10,000 li. Immediately afterward, the golden phantom dissipated, and a brilliant holy light erupted from Li Qingchun's right hand as he smashed it fiercely downward. Holy light spread in all directions, and wherever it passed, demonic beasts vanished entirely. Look at that. A minister noticed the anomaly in the distance and exclaimed. When that golden phantom and white light appeared, vast numbers of beasts perished instantly. Hearing this, everyone turned their gaze toward the distance. In the distance, golden phantoms alternated with flashing white light and sharp sword auras. Every strike was accompanied by the annihilation of countless demonic beasts. Qing Wuya stared blankly ahead, his mind reeling. Could the Li family have sent someone else? But he had not seen anyone on the golden feathered red-crested griffin. Qing Yu also wore a puzzled expression. She subtly nudged her father with her elbow and turned questioning eyes toward him. She wanted to ask whether her father had sought additional reinforcements. Qing Wuya naturally understood her meaning, gently turning his head, closing his eyes, and shaking it. Li Yuan glanced at them and explained, this is the Divine Sun's martial art. Everyone froze, then turned to look at the figure standing ahead. Their minds were filled with confusion. Then this. That is merely the Divine Son's phantom. As for himself, he has long since been far away. They gasped. This was only a phantom. They had no idea when the Divine Son had departed. There was not even a ripple of aura. A minister's somewhat disbelief gently stepped forward and touched it. As expected, the phantom instantly vanished without a trace. The next moment, the minister collapsed onto the ground, his face flushing crimson and slightly contorted, as if enduring excruciating pain. The others also changed expression, while Qing Wuya cursed inwardly. That is the Divine Son of an ancient clan. How dare you make such a gesture? You are literally walking into a toilet with a lantern seeking death. Next time you act so presumptuously, go meet your maker. Hardly had he finished speaking when the minister's body suddenly relaxed as though a beached fish had returned to water. Lying on the ground, he gasped for breath in great lungfuls. He then crawled back to his knees and knelt trembling. Thank you, my lord, for sparing my life. Li Yuan merely snorted and turned his gaze to the demon-beast battlefield ahead. With each sweep, Li Qingchen sent vast numbers of demonic beasts to their deaths, but soon he lost interest in fighting. There were too damn many. He had not come here to battle demonic beasts, but to clean out a pigsty? Such matters could easily be handled by elder Li Yuan. Thinking this, Li Qingchen clapped his hands to dismiss the task, and immediately appeared outside the Imperial Palace Hall. The crowd bowed with clasped hands. Divine Son. He gave a slight nod and turned to Li Yuan, saying, Elder, I leave the rest to you. I am somewhat fatigued. Elder Li Yuan could only laugh bitterly. The Divine Son had claimed to seek cultivation experience, yet had only come to play. Though thinking this, he still replied, As you command, before vanishing entirely. Qing Yue, quite curious about this, gracefully approached Li Qingchen and stopped beside him, slightly curtsying. Divine Son, may this humble, may to ask about Elder Yuan's cultivation realm. Watching this scene, Qing Wuya's eyelid twitched. The events of just moments ago were still vivid in his mind. His daughter suddenly approaching the Divine Son to ask questions. What was she thinking? All such troublesome matters. After speaking, Qing Yu's heart raced with trepidation. What if this Divine Son had a bad temper? What if he wanted to do something to her? Should she comply or resist? Lost in thought, her gaze toward Li Qingchen grew strange, her eyes full of implications about being ravished. Li Qingchen turned his head and witnessed her expression shift from anxiety to delight and finally to lust. Has this young master's charm reached such a level? It made the man who had been single since birth in his past life feel a twinge of excitement. Though secretly pleased within, he maintained a serious expression and casually replied, Peak Saint Realm. Qing Wuya muttered to himself, Saint. Peak Saint Realm, feeling relieved, yet overwhelmingly astonished. Peak Saint Realm, that was an existence beyond their reach. He was merely at the Demon King realm now, and knew all too well how difficult it was to attain the Saint Realm. Besides, there was the Quasi-Saint Realm between them. Without even reaching the Quasi-Saint Realm, how could one speak of the Saint Realm? As for the minister from just now, his expression had gone completely numb, and only now did he realize how much fortune it had taken to survive. Li Qingchen felt no surprise at their reactions. What truly astonished him was that the woman before him showed absolutely no hint of shock whatsoever. This puzzled him. He waved his hand in front of her, but she remained completely unresponsive. Li Qingchen's lip twitched. This girl was lost in fantasy, unable to extricate herself. However, he had absolutely no interest in this woman. Far away, Li Yuan casually swept his hand, causing countless demon beasts to vanish into thin air. Within moments, the beasts grew terrified and began fleeing in panic. Though they were demon beasts, it did not mean they lacked intelligence. The instinct to seek advantage and avoid harm was deeply ingrained in their genes. With that, the crisis facing Qingli country had been averted. Qing Wuya and the assembled ministers immediately hurried forward, bowing with folded hands toward Li Qingchen and Li Yuan, who had just returned. Thank you, honored sir, for your assistance. Li Qingchen waved his hand and glanced at Qing Yue, who remained lost in her own thoughts, finding it strangely amusing. Divine Son, it is time we return. Li Yuan's voice came from behind him. Li Qingchen raised an eyebrow. Return. He had only just managed to get out. How could he go back so quickly? Besides, his mission was not even complete yet. If I go back, will you help me clean the pigsty? Even if you do, it won't help. Realizing this, he quickly shook his head and said, We've only just arrived. Why go back already? Hearing this, Li Yuan did not know what to say. Didn't he understand his position within the Li family? The longer he stayed outside, the greater the danger. If something truly went wrong, Li Yuan would be the one paying with his life. Meanwhile, Qing Wuya beside them showed a pleased expression. The Divine Son showing no intention to leave meant they still had time to draw closer to him. This was undoubtedly a major opportunity for himself. I still have some matters to attend to. You need not follow. After saying this, Li Qingchen activated the streaming light phantom technique and disappeared. How could he let someone accompany him for something like cleaning the pigsty? If others found out that the illustrious Divine Son of the Li family was actually cleaning pigpens, he did not know what others would think. His teeth might literally laugh themselves out. Putting himself in their place, if he heard about some family's divine son going to clean pigpens, he would laugh himself to death. It was incredibly embarrassing, pure social death. Before long, Li Qingshan arrived at a mortal village, and without anyone noticing instantly finished cleaning the pigsty. He also put those old sows into a deep sleep, otherwise if they defecated right after he had finished cleaning everywhere else it would be disastrous. He might not have been able to resist tasting pork, and truthfully he had not had regular pork in ages. As for how he located the pigsties so precisely, he owed that to the heaven-seeking art he had learned from the 8th ancestor. The technique was undeniably effective, but it cost lifespan, and even the 8th ancestor would not use it lightly. Naturally, Li Qingshan was just as cautious about it since his own life mattered most. Damn it, why are there hundreds of thousands of pigsties? And this is only the mortal villages. If some cultivators keep demon beast pigs or similar creatures, wouldn't that number reach millions? Curses, Li Qingshan muttered under his breath. He had overlooked one crucial detail: this vast world was incomparably larger than the blue star of his past life, with far more land area, and naturally a much larger population. Fortunately, with the streaming light phantom technique and his cultivation base, the cleaning went surprisingly fast. After nearly a few days of busy work, Li Qingshan finally finished cleaning all the pigsties throughout Qingli country. It exhausted him completely, and he decided that upon returning, he must issue an edict requiring his family and its affiliated forces to maintain better hygiene. Together they would build a beautiful homeland. And this was absolutely not because he wanted things to be easier when the system's next task arrived. System, hurry up. The task is complete, Li Qingshan urged anxiously, estimating that the old sows were about to wake up soon. If they defecated again right now, it would be unbearable. Ding, task complete. Fortunately, the task had been completed on time this time around, making Li Qingshan internally praise the system for being reasonable. Now came the reward. This was the first time the reward had been specified before the task was even completed, and it was also the reward Li Qingshan was most interested in. Blood regeneration. Just thinking about it made him feel invincible. Ding, reward obtained, blood regeneration. It arrived. A massive surge of information rushed into his mind, leaving his head somewhat dizzy, yet his heart was filled with excitement. Half an incense stick later, Li Qingshan finally understood. The difference between divine abilities and martial techniques was that martial techniques had usage restrictions. Some consumed spiritual energy, while others required reaching a certain cultivation level before they could be learned. Divine abilities were different. They had no such restrictions and did not consume spiritual energy. Divine abilities were also divided into active and passive types. The blood regeneration he had just obtained was a passive divine ability. When the hosts suffered devastating damage, as long as even a single drop of blood remained, they could regenerate, and their cultivation level would be preserved. However, the drawback was equally obvious. If destroyed instantaneously without leaving a single drop of blood, it would be useless. But Li Qingshan did not care about that at all. Just store a drop of blood at the family estate beforehand. Wait, no, I should store more. With the task complete, he decided to return to Qingli country's imperial palace first. Divine Son, why were you cleaning pigsties? Li Yuan materialized from the void, a puzzled expression on his face. Also, what exactly is this system? Li Qingshan froze completely. Was this social death? Should he silence him? Kill or not kill? Just kill him. He slowly turned his head. Oh, it was Elder Li Yuan after all. Damn, he could not win against him. Could he just commit suicide? You should end your own life. What? Li Yuan doubted his own ears. Divine Son, did you just say? Li Qingshan wore a bewildered expression and asked, what did I just say? I was talking about seaweed. Seaweed? That's right, seaweed, a type of ingredient. I see. Li Yuan remained skeptical, but had no other explanation, so he assumed he had simply misunderstood. As for cleaning pigsties, it is because this divine son has mysophobia and cannot stand such filthy places existing. Li Qingshan said this with a straight face. What was even more unbelievable was that Li Yuan actually believed him. In truth, for Li Yuan, this was not hard to accept. He had seen many prodigies with all sorts of strange quirks. Compared to Li Qingshan's mysophobia, this was nothing serious. That system is actually a dog I kept before. Yes, a dog. A dog. When had the divine son kept a dog? This was probably no ordinary dog. Was it a heavenly sealing hound? Or a hellish three-headed hound? Or perhaps an abyssal demon wolf? But such creatures did not exist within the family either. If Li Qingshan had known that Li Yuan's mind had instantly conjured up all these possibilities, he would have given him a big thumbs up. Impressive, truly impressive, for him to come up with all this. Knowing he had successfully dodged this crisis, Li Qingshan secretly exhaled in relief. With everything resolved, the two then returned to Qingli country's imperial palace. Beyond the four great nations, the vast world of Huangling harbored numerous sects and other powers. In terms of strength, these forces were in no way inferior to the four great nations themselves. Meanwhile, outside the imperial palace of the Qingli kingdom, Countless flying vessels and warships hovered around the palace grounds, dense, imposing, and overwhelming in their presence. The Sacred Pill Pavilion, the 10,000 Swords Sect, the 100 Poison Gate, the Divine Concealment Sect. Nearly every faction of renown within the Huangling Great World had gathered here. The reason for their arrival was but a single rumor. An important figure from an ancient family was soon to grace these lands. Outside the Great Hall, a burly middle-aged man with a grizzled beard descended from the distant skies, his aura surging as he approached. Before his figure had even arrived, his voice boomed throughout the hall. Qing Wuyan, an esteemed personage from an ancient family, is visiting, and you failed to so much as whisper a word of it. This hardly seems righteous of you. Had we not dispatched our own scouts, we would have remained utterly oblivious. At these words, countless gazes turned toward Qing Wuyan within the hall, as though awaiting his explanation. After all, the powers gathered here had each relied upon their own intelligence networks to learn of this great one's arrival. Otherwise, they would have missed this precious opportunity to forge connections with an ancient family. Upon his throne, Qing Wuyan's expression darkened considerably. Deep within his heart, he had never wished for these people to learn of this matter. Yet such a secret could simply not be concealed. When the Qingli kingdom had faced its own calamity, not a single one of them had stirred. They had vanished as though swallowed by the earth, offering not even a word of consolation. But now, how convenient. The moment they learned a great one was coming, they grew sharp as foxes and hastened here without pause. Faster than reincarnation itself, and yet they dared speak of righteousness. The more Qing Wuyan pondered, the greater his fury swelled. He thundered, "When the Qingli kingdom was assailed by demonic beasts, did any of you lift so much as a single finger to help? When my kingdom cried out for aid, did any of you offer even the faintest response? Since you have acted without honor, why should I grant you any courtesy in return? Were it not for their sheer numbers, he would have cast them out long ago." The burly man was rendered utterly speechless. Upon reflection, the accusations rang undeniably true. Nor was he alone. The rest, who had moments before been preparing to watch the spectacle unfold, now bowed their heads, or wore expressions of deep discomfort. Their conduct had indeed been unjust, and any sovereign would have taken offense. For a long while thereafter no one spoke. They waited in solemn silence within the hall. Yet the barely concealed excitement upon their faces betrayed the true tempest raging within their hearts. Qing Wuyan observed all of this with quiet disdain. Even their own faction, a subordinate force of the Li family, could scarcely hope to forge meaningful ties with the Divine Sun. As for the rest of you, it is nothing but wishful delusion. Suddenly, two streaks of light surged into the hall from without. The assembly stiffened at once, each figure snapped to rigid attention. Though they had not yet discerned the arrivals, they knew with certainty that envoys from the ancient family had come. Beneath the collective gaze, the figures ahead gradually came into focus, an elder and a young man. Though he emanated no discernible presence whatsoever, every heart trembled instinctively, as though the elder could extinguish them all with but a single finger. As for the young man, he was clad in white robes fairer than freshly fallen snow, with raven locks streaming in the wind and brows as sharp as blades. Upon his incomparably handsome countenance rested a faint serene smile. The ineffable nobility that radiated from his very being drew involuntary sighs of admiration. Truly worthy of an ancient family, flawless in every conceivable aspect. These two were of course Li Qingchen and elder Li Yuan, newly returned. Li Qingchen cast a casual glance over the unfamiliar faces about him. The intentions churning within their hearts had long since been laid bare to his perception. Qing Wuyan hastened to approach, bowing with hands clasped, "For the Divine Sun to grace us with 2 additional days of his presence. This is truly the fortune of the Qingli kingdom." Li Qingchen offered neither acceptance nor denial. That he should linger here a few extra days was naturally their great honor. Of course, the moment the words "Divine Sun" left Qing Wuyan's lips, the representatives of the other forces were seized by near madness within. Their breathing grew ragged. They gazed upon Li Qingchen as though he were a treasure beyond price. The weight of those 2 words, the Divine Sun, was not lost upon them. It signified the most gifted youth and the one vested with the greatest authority among the younger generation of the ancient family. He was in essence the heir presumptive to the family head. The benefits that might accrue from forging ties with such a figure were simply beyond imagination. The assembly could barely contain themselves. Without warning, a representative from the Sacred Pill Sect stepped forward and bowed. "Divine Sun, upon learning of your coming, our Sacred Pill Sect hastened to present a vial of spirit-gathering divine marrow as a token of our reverence." His countenance radiated profound deference. A sharp intake of breath echoed throughout the hall. Spirit-gathering divine marrow. Surely that could not be. It was a divine elixir capable of condensing a true spirit. As all cultivators knew, when a cultivator advanced from the quasi-saint realm to the saint realm, those blessed with exceptional talent could condense a true spirit within themselves. The disparity in combat prowess between a saint realm cultivator who had condensed a true spirit and one who had not was staggering in its magnitude. There was scarcely a single cultivator on the verge of breaking through to the saint realm who did not yearn to condense such a true spirit. The true spirit also bestowed upon its bearer certain innate abilities. Some cultivators' true spirits took the form of the primordial fearsome beast Tautya, granting them the power of devouring. Others by extraordinary fortune awakened true spirits that were the lingering spirits of ancient departed sovereigns, granting them incomparably formidable techniques with true spirits of overwhelming might. Of course, though the true spirit was undeniably powerful, it was by no means easily attained. Throughout the entirety of the Linlang immortal domain, the number of cultivators who had successfully condensed a true spirit numbered no more than 50. And this spirit-gathering divine marrow was precisely a sacred treasure capable of vastly enhancing the probability of such condensation. Were it not for the presence of the ancient family's representatives, the surrounding cultivators would likely have already begun fighting over it. Li Qingshan himself revealed a flicker of surprise. Such a treasure offered so casually spoke to no small measure of sincerity. Even within his own clan, such an item was exceedingly rare, a treasure of true scarcity. On further reflection, this was hardly surprising. Although the Huangling Great World boasted no supreme powers, it remained a great world in its own right. Setting aside the resources that had been plundered by powers from other great worlds, it was hardly remarkable for this realm to birth other treasures of comparable rarity. And this did not even account for the lands that remained undiscovered. While Li Qingshan deliberated, elderly Yuan had already placed the spirit-gathering divine marrow into his hands. With but a faint pause of surprise, Li Qingshan stowed it away within his system space. Such a treasure was of course most assuredly to be kept. Li Qingshan casually tossed a token to the elder of the Sacred Pill Sect, saying, "In the future, should you find yourselves in need, present this token. I dare say few would refuse to grant the Li family such a small measure of face." The elder was struck as though by lightning. Before their arrival, none of them had known precisely which power these envoys represented, yet now the Li family. The renown of the Li family throughout the entirety of the Linlang immortal domain was known to one and all. How fortunate that he had prevailed against all opposition to present the incomparably precious spirit-gathering divine marrow. Otherwise this opportunity would have slipped through their fingers forever. Now the token in his hand shone in his eyes as more precious than even the spirit-gathering divine marrow itself. Excitement radiated from every member of the Sacred Pill Sect, while those nearby watched with reddening eyes. A token of the Li family. Some among the assembly had already surreptitiously retracted the gifts they had prepared secretly, instructing their elders to return to their sects and retrieve treasures of even greater worth. Li Qingshan and elder Li Yuan observed this scene in its entirety. Within their hearts they mused, there was no pressing need to return to the family just yet. Should rare treasures present themselves, that would hardly be unwelcome. In truth, the primary catalyst had been the spirit-gathering divine marrow itself, which had so piqued their interest. Li Qingshan made himself right at home, claiming the imperial throne of Qing Wuyan without the slightest hesitation. The moment he settled upon it, an aura of supreme authority radiated from his bearing. Meanwhile, Li Yuan stood quietly at his side. As for Qing Wuyan, he found a seat for himself without the faintest objection, his heart swelling with joy. For this was a throne upon which the divine sun had sat. Yet once seated, a new dilemma presented itself. Though the Qingli kingdom had already become a vassal force under the Li family, this did nothing to diminish his fervent desire to cultivate ties with the divine sun. But just as Qing Wuyan was contemplating how best to befriend Li Qingshan, there were others who busied themselves with thoughts of how to curry favor with the Qingli kingdom. As the old saying goes, while you gaze at the scenery from the bridge, those below the bridge gaze at you. They had discerned at last that the Qingli kingdom shared a profound connection with the Li family. The Li family was quite plainly the kingdom's patron. It seemed but yesterday when whispers first began to spread throughout the entire Huangling Grand World that the Qingli kingdom, the sole nation without a patron, had finally found one. And not merely any patron, but a superpower at that. At the time, no one beyond the three other great nations could bring themselves to believe it. Those three nations knew the Li family stood behind the Qingli kingdom only because superpowers of their own had revealed it. Otherwise, the Qingli kingdom would have been annihilated long ago, unable to have survived until now. The forces behind the three great nations had shown themselves to varying degrees, and thus all knew they were verily backed by superpowers. The Qingli kingdom, however, was a different matter. Though it was rumored to harbor great powers behind it, none had ever been seen. When the Qingli kingdom suffered the recent demonic beast horde assault, the absence of aid from other forces also carried with it an undercurrent of probing intent. If the Qingli kingdom truly possessed a superpower, as its patron, they would seek to befriend it. If not, then its destruction would simply be its fate. Yet who could have imagined that it not only had such a patron, but that patron was none other than the Li family? At this revelation, many were consumed with bitter regret. After a time, representatives from the various major forces began arriving one after another, bearing treasures one after another. Some were encased in ornate boxes, others contained within bottles, each more curious and peculiar than the last. Li Qingshun could not help but feel a spark of anticipation, and settling into his seat, he instinctively propped one leg over the other. This peculiar posture immediately drew Li Yuan's attention. Divine Son, what manner of gesture is this? Bold yet unrestrained, it appears utterly audacious. Only then did Li Qingshun realize what he had done, the gesture having come to him as a matter of ingrained habit. Yet to preserve his luminous image, he explained without so much as a flicker of hesitation or a trace of embarrassment. In truth, this is a technique beneficial to one's cultivation. When Li Qingshun set about deceiving others, he did so without batting an eye. In an instant, everyone pricked up their ears. The exchange between the two had not been quiet, and the gathered assembly below had naturally overheard every word. Upon seeing all eyes converge upon him, Li Qingshun assumed a solemn air and adjusted his collar with practiced gravity. Alas, it seemed he wore no collar. With an elegance that lost none of his distinguished bearing, he slowly lowered his hand and spoke. This gesture can relax both body and mind. A gentle sway can further bolster one's confidence, proving immensely beneficial to one's cultivation. If you do not believe me, you are welcome to try it yourselves. Upon hearing this, the assembly mimicked Li Qingshun's posture in their own seats, crossing one leg over the other. Li Yuan somehow procured a chair from somewhere, and affecting an air of solemn importance, crossed his legs as well. Indeed, the moment his leg was raised, the man was instantly imbued with a far greater confidence, possessed of the bearing of one who is a true powerhouse. Some even achieved breakthroughs on the very spot, and not a few at that, causing the crowd to cry out in astonishment at the marvel they had witnessed. The Divine Son's words had proven utterly correct, truly worthy of one from an ancient aristocratic house. Even the merest glimpse of his methods was sufficient to bestow lifelong benefit. Little did they know that Li Qingshun himself gazed upon the scene dumbfounded. How could such a thing truly induce breakthroughs? It was utterly preposterous. In truth, it was simply because they had suppressed themselves for far too long, acting timidly hesitant at every turn. They had always regarded themselves as insignificant figures, their edges worn smooth by the world. But now, in this moment of release, granting themselves the belief that they were powerhouses, their hearts were suddenly overcome with a lightness they had not known. With their minds unburdened and their thoughts flowing freely, breakthroughs came as a matter of course. As for the present situation, Li Qingshun was deeply pleased. There was something rather satisfying about the role of teacher. After the commotion over the crossed legs posture had passed, certain forces began producing treasures they deemed exceptional, presenting them with utmost reverence before Li Qingshun. Divine Son, this is the jade-scaled serpent carefully nurtured within our 100 Poison Sect. The elder of the 100 Poison Sect slowly extended his palm, revealing a verdant little serpent. It flicked its forked tongue, its large eyes gazing at him with curious wonder. The little serpent appeared adorably foolish and impossibly endearing. Yet this seemingly harmless creature gave rise to waves of astonished exclamations among the assembly. A jade-scaled serpent, ranked 5th among the 100 greatest venomous beasts. Qing Wuyan's eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. These people were utterly ruthless. To possess even such a creature was already beyond extraordinary. Legend has it that an adult jade-scaled serpent possesses strength comparable to a saint, and with its venom can even contend with a saint king. Indeed, the 100 Poison Sect has actually brought it forth. If it were me, wouldn't I simply cultivate it myself? Are you a fool? Do you have any idea how many resources it takes to raise it to adulthood? Can you even bear such a cost? Not only could one not afford it, one might even bankrupt the entire sect in the attempt. Only a family of the Divine Son's caliber could possibly afford to raise such a creature. The elder of the 100 Poison Sect sighed inwardly. The truth was precisely as these people had said. The jade-scaled serpent was indeed a treasure of extraordinary value, and their sect was most reluctant to part with it. But the resources required to nurture it to adulthood were simply beyond their capacity to bear. Were they to gamble their entire sect upon it, or should some great power take notice midway, the danger they would face would be grave. If given the choice, who would not wish to keep such a creature? It was a being that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Saint King. Thus, rather than carrying a ticking time bomb upon their person, it was far more practical to trade it for the protection of the Li family. This was the tangible reality. Truth be told, when Li Qingshun first laid eyes upon the jade-scaled serpent, he nearly sprang to his feet, his heart struck with profound astonishment. From the words of his family's elders and the knowledge he had gathered over the years, demonic beasts were exceedingly rare, and young demonic beasts were rarer still. The latter could be tamed, and that was what mattered most. Therefore, whenever a young demonic beast was discovered, it would invariably ignite a great war. He had never imagined that today would bring him so many marvels, the first being the spirit-gathering divine marrow, and the second, astonishingly, a jade-scaled serpent cub. Li Qingshun felt that this excursion was quite possibly one of the best decisions he had ever made in his life. Casting a sidelong look, he noticed that elderly Yuan too wore a moved expression upon his features. It seemed the elder too had been struck with astonishment. The very same token was tossed into the hands of the 100 Poison Sect, though, with one notable difference. This time a jade slip was tucked within. In the future, should you face any crisis, you may reveal this token. If even the token proves insufficient, crush the jade slip, and my Li family shall extend our protection to your sect once. Many thanks, Divine Son. The elder received the two items with trembling hands, his entire being aquiver with overwhelming emotion. He had expected not more than the token and never dared hope for an additional safeguard. This protection, how immensely valuable it might prove at a critical juncture. The mere knowledge of its existence served as a deterrent in itself. Possessing this jade slip, everything had become worthwhile, and his earlier reluctance to part with the jade-scaled serpent had wholly evaporated. With a casual motion of his palm, the jade-scaled serpent appeared in Li Qingshun's grasp. Those nearby had already been driven to the very brink of madness by astonishment. If moments ago there had been some who pitted the 100 Poison Sect, now they regarded them with naked, undisguised envy. A single pledge of protection from the Li family. Precisely what did such a thing signify? It meant one could stride with impunity throughout the entire Huangling Grand World, nay, throughout the entire Linlang Immortal Domain, so long as that one opportunity remained unspent. People watched as the old man settled back into his seat, while elders inside the doorway laughed. Expression was it gave, and inwardly they schemed on how to win the divine child's favor. Li Yuan beside Li Qingshun was sincerely relieved. The divine child at such a young age already knew how to win others over and how to leverage his own background. With such moves, those who suffered losses still cried out, "Long live the divine child," and others pushed forward to offer even more. Even a single azure scale serpent cub would have required the clan to intervene 3 times, yet the divine child disposed of it with 1 token and a single chance. Truly, it was all for the sake of the family, for seeking benefits and development. Hearing this, Li Yuan gave Li Qingshun a look of quiet satisfaction. Li Qingshun felt a chill at the sight. Was the elder eyeing him? The gaze tightened something inside him, and he knew this wouldn't do. How could 2 grown men do that? No way, no way. Li Qingshun turned to face him, crossed his arms over his chest in a refusing pose, and slowly shook his head. Li Yuan. The crowd below. Li Qingshun realized the mood had shifted, straightened up, and said lightly, ahem. Please continue. The crowd froze for a moment, then regained their senses, as such thoughts among the elders were not something these people could guess. A wrong move could cost someone their head. Our Xianmin brings the thunderbolt fruit to pay respects to the divine child. A middle-aged man knelt on one knee, cradling a jade box. Inside lay a blue fruit surrounded by crackling electric light. It looked decent, but Li Qingshun merely glanced once and shook his head. The thunderbolt fruit is a spiritual fruit that can help a body cultivate rapidly, and it is among the rarer treasures. But the clan already had a place for body refining. Its effects were far superior to this thunderbolt fruit, and there was no need for it. Li Qingshun shook his head. The middle-aged man wore a look of regret as he returned to his seat. Indeed, such items would not be valued by an ancient clan. Yet this was the most precious item the sect could offer. Sighing, he continued to survey what other sects could present. If the divine child didn't fancy any of them, at least it would give him some consolation. Next, what Yining Gui? Li Qingshun shook his head. Wah, another shake. He continued to shake his head. As time passed, not a single item managed to enter Li Qingshun's gaze. This left the crowd with a palpable sense of disappointment, peaking when they saw the smug faces of Shengdan Zong and Baidu men. Li Qingshun was disappointed too, but upon reflection, perhaps his expectations were too high. This desolate spirit world was already controlled by several great powers. Even obtaining an azure-scaled snake had required great fortune. He himself still wanted more, which was truly wishful thinking. From now on, he would leave such matters to elderly Yuan. He meanwhile played with the snakes nearby, tugging and stroking them, playing in every possible way. Just playing. He would occasionally glance at the items offered by those below. Watching the crowd's deference, clearly not as respectful as when they faced him, Li Qingshun found it amusing. I wonder what their expressions would be if they knew the person before them stood at the pinnacle of the Saint Realm. One after another they came and went. There was nothing left that could catch Li Qingshun's eye. This left the remaining 2 clans with a palpable tension, their faces betraying smugness. Those who failed hoped the next offerings would not pass. Thus their inner balance began to settle. Next came a middle-aged man dressed plainly, walking with a tremulous gait, as if he might fall at any moment. With both hands he held a box, trembling slightly, sweat beads dotting his face. Those around immediately recognized him. Isn't that the Lord of Fei Tai Zong? What is he doing here? With that poor look, what treasures could he possibly have? Why hasn't this sect fallen yet? The middle-aged man's face paled. He hadn't expected the situation to unfold this way. His name was Duan Ling, the Lord of Duantiezong, a sect focused on forging artifacts. It wasn't the Fei Tai Zong many claimed, and he understood why others said so. That was because the sect plus him totaled only 3 people. The sect had long since been a hollow shell. This time he happened to be outside and saw many powers rushing in one direction. He believed there must be a treasure in sight, so he trailed along hoping to pick up a loot. But he hadn't expected to arrive here and learn that it was people from an ancient clan gathered. Watching others come up with gleaming treasures, he panicked. Duan Ling, who had nothing of value on him, didn't know what to do. Seeing the numbers dwindle, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and step forward. He opened the box, revealing a purple flame ore and a diamond-shaped crystal of unknown origin. The purple flame ore was a forging material, not particularly rare, while the crystal was something he had picked up during a trial because it looked pretty. Although there was no real hope these 2 items would catch the divine child's eye, he still looked up with a sliver of expectation. Li Yuan glanced and slowly shook his head. Duan Ling's eyes dimmed. Obviously this wouldn't suffice. Look at him. Thinking he can turn things around, haha, someone said. Exactly. The surrounding voices continued to be harsh, each hit like a blade on his chest. Hold on. Duan Ling was about to depart when he heard that remark. He looked up and saw the divine child approaching, making his heart tremble with anxiety. Li Qingshun ignored the puzzled gazes around him and walked straight up to the middle-aged man, picking up the crystal and examining it closely. Earlier he had noticed the noisy chatter below, and turning his head caught a glimpse of the crystal. Instantly it felt as though this thing was not a common artifact. He decisively unleashed the Keitianju. Indeed, nothing could be gleaned. This precisely proved the point. A token and a jade slip were deftly tossed into Duan Ling's hands by Li Qingchen. He also took the box into his own hands. The function you probably already know, there is no need for me to say more. After speaking, he sat back on the throne, and the sensation was not bad at all. Duan Ling stared at the token and jade slip, stunned, hardly believing it was real. Turning his head, he saw the surrounding people with their mouths agape. Those who had just taunted Duan Ling now felt their faces burn with shame. The taunts had turned into envy. It's easy to imagine that it wouldn't be long before this sect would once again prosper. Even some small sects began to calculate whether to bring their entire clan under the Duantia zone. In an instant, Duan Ling rose from a mocked emblem of a failed sect to a coveted treasure. And all of this happened because of Li Qingchen's one remark. Even after settling into his seat, Duan Ling's mind remained in a haze. Beyond his own bewilderment, everyone present, with the sole exception of Li Qingchen himself, wore expressions of utter confusion, including elder Li Yuan. No matter how they examined it, it was plainly nothing more than an ordinary crystal devoid of anything remotely peculiar. They could stare until their eyes bled and find nothing remarkable, just as a lump of yellow dung could never transform into gold. This thing is rather strange. Li Qingchen muttered, one hand stroking his chin while the other cradled the crystal. Indeed, by every appearance the object seemed utterly commonplace, and he himself shared that very impression. Yet under the sway of that premonition moments ago, even his celestial divination art had failed to glean a single shred of information about it. This convinced him the object was no ordinary thing. After a brief deliberation, Li Qingchen reached a decision. His gaze shifted abruptly, and a beam of golden radiance radiated from his eyes, accompanied by an ancient aura of primordial chaos. With the emergence of that radiance, everyone felt as though they harbored not a single secret within them, utterly exposed beneath his stare. A collective shiver ran through them all, even though Li Qingchen's gaze had not been cast upon a single one of them. Moreover, their senses could perceive the immense power hidden within those eyes. What pupil technique is the Holy Sun wielding? Its might is truly staggering. Indeed, merely gazing upon it sends chills down my spine. That is no pupil technique at all. That is clearly a divine pupil. But no such form has ever been recorded on the divine pupil rankings, has it? Precisely, golden-eyed divine pupils are not unheard of, yet the golden pupil ranked only 15th, and it possessed nothing like this might. Once more the crowd was seized by astonishment, and Li Yuan was equally taken aback. Within the clan he had never once heard mention of the Holy Sun possessing a divine pupil. One could never have anticipated such a delightful surprise. One could never fathom how many more secrets he still concealed, rendering him utterly inscrutable. Upon his throne, Li Qingchen fixed his gaze intently upon the crystal. This marked the first time his chaotic divine pupils had been unveiled before others. The chaotic divine pupils heralded as capable of piercing through the very essence of all things. Yet now Li Qingchen began to suspect that his eyes might be counterfeit. He scrutinized it from every angle, yet discerned nothing whatsoever. For a moment, he even entertained the notion that the crystal might truly be nothing more than an ordinary specimen. But upon reflection, something did not add up. What ordinary crystal could elude the celestial divination art and defy even the chaotic divine pupils? After pondering endlessly without arriving at any conclusion, Li Qingchen had no choice but to stow it away. Upon withdrawing his chaotic divine pupils, he noticed that everyone was staring at him. Puzzled, he touched his face. There was nothing amiss on it after all. What are you all doing? Qing Wuyan was the first to recover. He promptly offered, We are merely admiring the divine majesty of you, Lord Holy Sun. Those around him nodded in swift agreement. That remark was rather pleasing to Li Qingqian's ears, and he realized he had simply been too absorbed moments before, deploying his chaotic divine pupils so unreservedly as though no one were present. He ought to exercise greater caution henceforth. Otherwise, all his hidden cards would be laid bare for the world to see. A man ought to keep something in reserve. At this moment the final person ascended with his offering, and Li Qingqian entertained a faint hope that this one might yet deliver another pleasant surprise. But he was disappointed. Within lay an item scarcely worthy of being called precious. After a single glance, he shook his head. Disperse. This holy son finds himself somewhat weary. Yes, my lord. The assembly responded in unison before slowly departing the grand hall. Of this audience, some departed in joy, others in sorrow. Li Qingqian and elder Li Yuan likewise prepared to leave the hall for a brief respite. Lift a foot walk. Lift a foot walk. Thud. Something seemed to be clinging to his leg. Li Qingqian looked down to discover the very man who had just presented the offering prostrated himself at his feet, clinging fiercely to his thigh. The spectacle instantly drew the attention of all present, who halted their departure and lingered to observe. Lord Holy Son, now that you are weary, might you desire someone to warm your bed? I can deliver her to you at once. The corners of the surrounding crowd's mouths twitched. Given the Holy Son's status, what woman could he not have? Did he truly need this fool to offer? Get lost. Li Qingqian delivered a single kick that sent him sprawling. His temper was mild certainly, but that did not mean just anyone could throw themselves at his legs. Was this truly how one sought to curry favor? He was the holy son of the Li clan after all. Did he have no dignity to uphold? The fact that he refrained from slapping the man dead was mercy enough. I took a concubine just yesterday, seized her only a few days prior. She is a vision of celestial beauty, my lord. I haven't even laid a finger on her yet. I merely touched her a little while. If the Holy Son requires someone to warm your bed, I shall bring her to you this instant. The man continued from the ground, trembling with fervor. The onlookers stared in utter disbelief. The Holy Son had already spared him once. Did this fool truly possess the brain of a cretin? I know him now. Isn't that Shu the madman? Has he succumbed to his affliction again? Someone suddenly cried out. It appears so. Oh dear, he's truly lost his mind this time. No one shall be able to save him now. The assembly watched him, their eyes brimming with malicious delight. Shu the madman, originally Chu Rinquang, was said to have suffered a deviation of qi during a cultivation session, nearly perishing. Though he had ultimately clawed his way back from the brink of death, he was left with an affliction each month for some 20 or 30 days at a stretch. He would become utterly deranged. Thus was born the moniker, Shu the madman. Nearly everyone present had been harassed by him at one point or another, yet despite his madness his strength was formidable beyond measure. None could do anything about him. Otherwise he would have been annihilated long ago rather than remaining at large until this very day. Li Qingqian's countenance darkened somewhat, and Li Yuan's expression fared no better. To think, when had their illustrious Li clan ever endured such an affront, and at the hands of such a wretch no less? Yet he could not act of his own accord, for his duty was solely the protection of the Holy Son's safety. Unless absolutely necessary, he was forbidden from intervening. He had to await the Holy Son's inclination. Damn you! Without a moment's hesitation a curse erupted from Li Qingqian's lips. In the next instant the assembly beheld a golden sword materialize from thin air, radiating an overwhelming aura of might. Hiss! A sacred artifact. That is undeniably a sacred artifact. Oh heavens above! We ought to retreat a good distance. I fear the Holy Son might just cleave us along with him. In the blink of an eye not a soul remained within Shu the madman's vicinity. Yet he continued to cackle foolishly where he stood. Li Qingqian unleashed his stellar sword art, and the assembly watched as a colossal blade of light bearing devastating fluctuations cleaved toward Shu the madman. He too plainly sensed the mortal peril. His form leapt skyward in a single bound as his full aura erupted forth. His cultivation had already brushed against the threshold of the quasi-saint realm. No wonder none could contend with him, but it availed him nothing. Regardless of how desperately he sought to defend himself, the blade of light pierced relentlessly through his body. In the span of mere moments the renowned madman of the desolate spirit great world had thus perished. This granted all present an even more visceral appreciation of Li Qingqian's strength, each and every one of them awestruck beyond measure. The Holy Son is truly formidable. A single sword strike was enough to cleave Shu the madman clean in two. By that technique from moments ago, none present could have withstood it. Thus concluded the events within the Qingli Imperial Palace. Li Qingqian had originally returned merely to rest for the night, yet this occasion's harvest had surpassed all expectations. His gaze drifted toward the distance. The jade-scaled serpent coiled itself into a ball upon his shoulder, seemingly at rest. The next step would be to pay that place a visit. Early the next morning Li Qingqian, An elderly Yuan stood outside the main hall of the Qingli Kingdom's imperial palace. Beside them were Qing Wuya and the others with Qing Yu among them gazing at him with an infatuated expression. Unfortunately, Li Qingchen held little interest in her. "Let us go." The words departed from Li Qingchen's lips, and as Li Yuan nodded, the two ascended into the sky, flying toward the east. Only Qing Wuya and Qing Yu remained. Qing Yu's gaze followed Li Qingchen's receding figure. Witnessing this, Qing Wuya sighed softly. "Ah, foolish child. How could someone like the Divine Sun ever be within your reach? The gap between you is far too great. Cultivate diligently, for only through such efforts might there be a sliver of possibility." Qing Yu nodded in understanding. She recognized that her feelings were merely illusory. Only through dedicated cultivation could she hope to glimpse the Divine Sun's shadow. Some thousands of li east of Qingli Kingdom, Li Qingchen and Li Yuan came to a halt before a massive mountain range. A contemplative expression crossed Li Qingchen's face. According to Qing Wuya, nearly all the demonic beasts of the Huangling Great World resided within this mountain range, yet such a large-scale outbreak had never occurred before. Demonic beasts and humans had always coexisted without interference, making this sudden disturbance all the more striking. It caught his attention, and when he employed the heaven-piercing art to divine the outcome, he confirmed what he had suspected. There was an opportunity hidden within. This was precisely why he had lingered in the Huangling Great World, though otherwise he would have already returned. Gathering his thoughts, Li Qingchen and Li Yuan stepped into the mountain range together. At the same time, within a superpower of some great world, Wu Lu knelt on the ground in agony, tears streaming down his face like a breached dam. "My lord, you must avenge us. He didn't even regard us as worthy of consideration." The figure ahead was shrouded in darkness, their face indistinguishable, but a deep, resonant voice emerged. "Oh, who dares to be so bold? Does he not know you are backed by a superpower?" They knew, yet they felt no fear whatsoever. The man's brow twitched, though no one witnessed it. "How intriguing. It seems we must teach him a lesson. Who is it?" Wu Lu's expression brightened with hope, and he hurriedly replied, "Someone from the Li family." For a long moment, there was no response from the other end. Wu Lu grew puzzled and opened his mouth to ask, but before he could speak, a fierce attack pierced through his body. In his final moments, he heard a calm voice devoid of emotion. "You dared provoke the Li family, and now you expect me to deal with someone from the Li family. Perhaps you've lost your senses." The man almost laughed in anger. This person dared to deceive him deliberately, withholding that the target belonged to the Li family until after he'd already agreed. Previously, not a single word had been mentioned. To think this person expected him to take on the Li family, it was nothing short of delusional. Surely no one in the entire Linlang immortal domain would be unaware of the Li family's stature. Upon entering the mountain range, Li Qingchen and his companion immediately noticed that the surroundings were teeming with demonic beasts, though their condition was far better than during the earlier rampage. Human corpses were scattered everywhere, likely cultivators who had been training within the mountain range during the beast uprising and failed to escape in time. Along the way, they encountered numerous demonic beast attacks, but with elderly Yuan at the peak of the Saint Realm, Li Qingchen hardly needed to lift a finger. A mere display of his aura would dispatch entire groups, making the journey relatively uneventful. "Divine Sun, where exactly are we headed?" Elderly Yuan asked with some confusion. Without mastery of the heaven-piercing art, he had no idea what Li Qingchen's plans were. He only knew he was there to ensure the Divine Sun's safety, which was why he had followed along. Watching Li Qingchen move with clear purpose toward a specific direction, he finally couldn't hold back his question any longer. Li Qingchen had anticipated this question and offered a faint smile before replying, "To a place where opportunities await." Elderly Yuan nodded in acknowledgement. As expected, the Divine Sun remained unfathomable. His only duty was to follow faithfully. As they ventured deeper, the demonic beasts they encountered grew increasingly powerful, though none posed a genuine threat to them. Along the way, Li Qingchen intervened several times, casually swatting down 9th-stage demonic beasts without any difficulty. To him, 9th-stage magical beasts were merely at the Demon King realm, easily overpowered by his physical strength alone. Yet he failed to notice that his own cultivation was only at the transformation spirit stage, albeit endowed with the heaven-defying chaos supreme physique. Each time Li Qingchen struck, elderly Yuan would marvel in astonishment. Even Li Sufeng, ranked first on the genius rankings, would likely stand no chance against the Divine Sun. After walking and pausing intermittently, the pair finally came to a halt outside a valley after a quarter hour. Li Qingchen closed his eyes and pondered for a moment before opening them again. A flicker of something unusual passed through his gaze as he walked straight ahead, with elderly Yuan following behind. Upon entering the valley, they discovered a shimmering barrier standing taller than a person. Seeing it, Li Qingchen smiled faintly. His suspicions were confirmed. This must be the source of the demonic beast's disturbances. Elderly Yuan could only admire their fortune. Such a place truly existed, and they had stumbled upon it. The aura emanating from within this barrier is likely what triggered the demonic beast's frenzy. Li Qingchen stood beside the barrier carefully observing its properties. Elder Li Yuan approached and examined it, as well confirming the same sensation. However, the reason this particular aura drove the beasts into a violent rampage remained unknown. Suddenly Li Qingchen extended his hand into the barrier. Elder Li Yuan was startled and quickly urged, "Divine Sun, come out immediately. What if this holds danger? This appears to be an entrance to a secret realm. It should be harmless." Seeing Li Qingchen seemed unharmed, Elder Li Yuan finally relaxed. If anything had happened to the Divine Sun, he would have lost all face. In that brief moment, half of Li Qingchen's body had already passed through. Upon seeing this, Elder Li Yuan decided to follow since his duty was to protect the Divine Sun. However, Li Qingchen stopped him before he could reach the barrier. This light screen appears to restrict entry to those at the quasi-saint realm cultivation level. Elder Li Yuan paused, seeming skeptical. He reached out a hand to test the barrier himself. Li Qingchen offered no objection. He too was uncertain of the exact nature of this restriction. It would be wise to verify the principle through direct experience. As Elder Li Yuan's palm neared the barrier, a transparent wall materialized, halting its advance. The force of the barrier simultaneously ejected Li Qingchen, who had been nearly fully inside. He rubbed his head in mild frustration. Undeterred, Elder Li Yuan unleashed the full power of the Saint Realm against the barrier, but it remained completely unaffected. Only then did he realize the Divine Sun's assessment had been accurate. There was indeed a restriction in place. His gaze toward Li Qingchen grew pleading and pitiful. "Divine Sun, must you go inside? Why do you ask? What if something happens to you?" Li Qingchen's lips twitched slightly. Even before entering, the elder was already fretting over potential dangers. Was he cursing him? And as a being hundreds of years old, couldn't he refrain from such childish pleading? It was unbearable. "Rest assured, I'll be fine, I guarantee it," Li Qingchen explained patiently. "No." Elder Li Yuan's tone was resolute. An idea struck Li Qingchen and he began to coax. "How about this? I'll teach you a protective charm. As long as you recite it regularly, I'll remain unharmed." Knowing Elder Li Yuan wouldn't easily believe him, he continued, "Rest assured, this charm was taught to me by our ancestor." Only then did Elder Li Yuan nod in acceptance. "The charm is, remember it well. Remember it well, remember it well." Elder Li Yuan repeated the words a few times before hurrying off to practice, leaving Li Qingchen entirely forgotten. A wicked smile crossed Li Qingchen's face as he turned and charged straight through the barrier. The moment Li Qingchen stepped through the luminous veil, a searing blaze of radiance assailed his senses, so blinding that he could barely keep his eyes open. The brilliance seemed to sear his very vision, and after only a brief moment of endurance, consciousness slipped away from him entirely, and he collapsed into oblivion. He knew not how long he had been adrift in that void. Perhaps a day, perhaps two. Then amidst the haze of his confusion, a voice reached him, urgent and harried. "Divine Sun, please wake up. Wake up." Stirred from his stupor against his will, Li Qingchen slowly opened his eyes to find a stranger's face hovering above him. His first instinct was that the fellow had mistaken him for someone else. Yet, judging from the sheer delight etched across the man's countenance, that did not appear to be the case. "Divine Sun, you have finally awakened. The battle has already commenced. We have been awaiting you." The man pressed him with unmistakable anxiety. Li Qingchen's mind swarmed with questions. A battle? He had known nothing of any battle. Furthermore, had he not been with Elder Li Yuan amid the mountain ranges of the wild spirit great world, having just passed through that luminous veil? What manner of place was this? Li Qingchen paid the man no heed for the moment, turning instead to survey his surroundings with careful attention. He found himself within a chamber sprawled upon a bed. When his gaze fell upon the bed itself, Li Qingchen was overcome with astonishment. This was no ordinary bed. It was a sheeming silk bed. The sheeming was a fearsome beast akin to a lizard, renowned for its capacity to spin silk. The silk it produced possessed the extraordinary virtue of gathering the spirit and restoring the essence. Supple beyond compare, it was ideally suited for crafting beds and garments alike. Such beasts were exceedingly rare, and their silk even more so. A mere palm-sized fragment might be obtained only once in 100 years. Within his own clan, passed down through the ages, there existed scarcely more than a few dozen such beds. Yet surely the sheeming had vanished from this world long ago. Judging by the silk's appearance, however, it had clearly been spun within the past century at most. Surveying the chamber further, he was struck even more profoundly. Its aesthetic bore no resemblance to anything he had ever encountered. Indeed, within that room, he glimpsed artifacts that had long been thought extinct. What place could this possibly be? Li Qingchen was utterly bewildered. Could such a secret realm truly exist? "Divine Sun, what troubles you?" "This is the Shindao sect." The man's face was clouded with puzzlement. How could the Divine Sun have forgotten such a thing after a mere nap? "What?" Li Qingchen leapt from the bed in a single bound, exclaiming in shock. "What place did you just say?" "The Shindao sect." Li Qingchen stood rooted, his visage a portrait of utter disbelief. The Shindao sect. Was that not the primordial sect of 100,000 years past? Had it not long since vanished from the world? He inquired further, what calendar era do we presently inhabit? The divine sovereign calendar. The divine sovereign calendar. Was that not 100,000 years ago? This was utterly preposterous. Had he truly traveled back 100,000 years? Li Qingqian's thoughts spiraled into chaos. Divine Son, the challenge is about to commence. If we tarry longer, there will be no time. The man urged him once more with frantic urgency. A challenge? What challenge? Li Qingqian's mind remained a turbulent tempest, the situation beyond all comprehension. Then suddenly an excruciating pain erupted within his skull, compelling him to clutch his head involuntarily. When the agony at last subsided, Li Qingqian's spirit drifted in a daze. A vast torrent of memories had suddenly surged into his consciousness, and at last he understood. This place was indeed 100,000 years in the past, and his current name appeared to be Lin Fan. He had only recently been appointed as the divine son of the Shindao sect a few days prior, though certain individuals refused to accept this and wished to challenge him, the very day being today. Yet none of this mattered as much as the staggering truth: this was truly the Shindao sect. This is absolutely insane. Could anything be more thrilling? The Shindao sect was the foremost among the 4 great primordial sects. According to the historical records he had studied, those 4 supreme sects were the Shindao sect, the Sacred Spirit sect, the Imperial Extreme sect, and the Royal Mystic sect. Though countless powers flourished in that ancient era, these 4 stood unrivaled as the true titans. The Shindao sect, as their vanguard, wielded indisputable might. 3 great emperors within a single sect, 10 supreme saints, and several dozen great saints besides. Not a single force across the realm could stand against them. To become the divine son of such a sect was a thought he would never have dared entertain, yet he already was. After the initial shock subsided, another thought struck Li Qingqian. The Li clan appeared to have persisted for several 100,000 years. If so, the Li clan should still exist in this era, and by his calculations there should be a great emperor bearing the Li surname at this very time. Ah yes, it was great Emperor Li Qingqian. His star swordsmanship had been created by that very figure. And as for his Imperial Extreme Palm technique, it seemed to have been passed down from the Imperial Extreme sect. An ancestor had once mentioned as much. If they discovered he employed these martial arts, might they seize him for brutal interrogation? The prospect was genuinely terrifying. Divine Son, there truly is no time to lose. This is your inaugural battle as Divine Son. You cannot allow others to look down upon you. The man's anxious voice rang out once more, shattering Li Qingqian's wandering thoughts. At last he discerned the identity of this man. The fellow was named Zhang Feng, an outer disciple of the Shindao sect. When he had first become the divine son, it seemed he had noticed Zhang Feng's diligent cultivation and, seized by a whim, had appointed him to attend to various miscellaneous affairs. Li Qingqian smiled faintly and said with gentle warmth, "Have no fear, Xiao Feng, we shall arrive in time." Before departing he added, "Follow along behind me." Then he activated his flowing light phantom technique and vanished. Only Zhang Feng remained standing in bewildered silence. If the divine son was still standing here, why had he been told to follow? When Zhang Feng called out once more to urge the divine son forward, he noticed at last that the figure before him was not responding. It was then he realized it had been merely an illusion left behind. Panic seized him instantly, and he dashed toward the arena without delay. Within the Shindao sect's martial combat arena. By this time the surrounding area had already become densely packed with spectators, and more than one elder was present at the scene. After all, this was the divine son's debut battle, and he was such a particularly special divine son. Naturally, countless eyes had been drawn to witness the event. Tell me, where exactly did this Lin Fan emerge from? I haven't the faintest idea. I was equally stunned. It felt as though he had simply appeared out of thin air. Indeed. And to think he so inexplicably became the divine son. The most remarkable part is that the sect master himself made the announcement. The disciples exchanged hushed murmurs. This had indeed defied all their expectations. Old Mo, why do you suppose the sect master chose such an obscure youth to be the divine son? From a seat not far from the arena, an elder's countenance was etched with bewilderment. Beside him, the old man he had addressed as Old Mo was in no better state. Stroking his beard, his face wore a matching expression of perplexity. The sect master's decisions have always carried purpose, yet truth be told, even I cannot fathom this one. Both men were elders of considerable authority within the Shindao sect, their cultivation at the level of supreme saints, and they had served the sect for many years. They believed they possessed a fair understanding of the sect master. Though the sect master's decisions had often been inscrutable, they could usually discern his underlying intentions. Yet this time neither of them could have anticipated what had transpired. When selecting the divine son, the sect master had bypassed Yang Dianfeng, a disciple of formidable strength and exceptional talent, in favor of the utterly unknown Lin Fan. Coincidentally, Yang Dianfeng now sought to challenge Lin Fan, so the two elders had come together to observe what extraordinary qualities this Lin Fan might possess. Speaking of which, why has Lin Fan still not arrived? The appointed hour is nearly upon us. Elder Mo's face was a portrait of puzzlement as he exchanged glances with Elder Shi beside him. They were tempted to suspect that Lin Fan had fled in cowardice, but given that this was the sect master's personal choice, they chose to place their faith in him regardless. Time crept onward. Just as the surrounding disciples were growing restless and the two elders were beginning to harbor grave doubts about the sect master's judgment, a solitary figure materialized at the very heart of the arena. This figure was naturally Li Qingqian, who should have arrived much earlier. However, unable to contain his curiosity about the Shindao sect, he had wandered around for a couple of extra laps. After all, it was the most powerful sect of the ancient era. Whether or not that was true, touring the grounds first couldn't hurt. Look, he's arrived. He actually came. I thought he would flee before the fight. He's rather good looking, but who knows about his strength? I still put my faith in senior brother Yang. The crowd was unaware of Li Qingqian's true power, so they all harbored considerable dissatisfaction with his appointment as the Divine Son. If he could defeat Yang Dianfeng, he might earn their recognition, but they did not believe Li Qingqian possessed such ability. Of course, the Li Qingqian in their eyes should currently be called Lin Fan. At this moment, Yang Dianfeng's gaze shifted toward Li Qingqian. Li Qingqian felt that gaze upon him and looked back in return. A single glance revealed that the young man across from him had a rather handsome face, stood around 6 feet tall, and was dressed in robes of pale blue. It was just a pity that someone so young had already gone completely white-haired and had chosen such a bold name. Dianfeng, peak. What two utterly aspirational words. Alas, his surname was Yang. So you are Lin Fan. Yang Dianfeng spoke. Li Qingqian wanted to deny it, but the words that left his lips were simply, indeed, I am. Then let us waste no more words. You strike first. I'm afraid you won't get another chance. Yang Dianfeng had never taken Li Qingqian seriously from the very beginning. In his view, this was merely someone who had stumbled upon a stroke of fleeting fortune. Such a person was utterly unworthy of standing in the same breath as himself. He was the chief disciple of the Shindao sect, the one whose talent and strength reigned supreme within the sect. It was simply unbearable that the one chosen as Divine Son was neither himself nor any of the other outstanding disciples, but rather some unknown fellow who had appeared out of nowhere. He could not swallow this bitter indignation, yet he could not question the sect master's decision either. Thus he had come to challenge this Lin Fan instead. If he could, Yang Dianfeng would have preferred to charge in and strike directly. However, in order to display the magnanimity befitting a senior brother, he had to allow his opponent to strike first. Li Qingqian's expression turned somewhat peculiar. Letting him strike first. Wouldn't that simply end the battle immediately? You go first instead. I'm afraid I might accidentally knock you flat. Li Qingqian decided to grant him this one chance, lest anyone later accuse him of bullying. What? This fellow is utterly arrogant. Exactly. Senior brother Yang let him strike first out of consideration for his dignity, so he wouldn't lose too disgracefully. And now he wants senior brother Yang to strike first. He simply doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If it were up to me, senior brother Yang shouldn't have given him any face at all, just beat him to the ground directly. While the crowd scoffed and jeered, only two elders wore peculiar expressions in their gazes. They sensed that this Lin Fan seemed to possess some measure of true strength. Yang Dianfeng's fists clenched tightly. His expression darkened his heart, already brimming with fury. He had intended to offer the other a graceful exit, so that his defeat would not appear too unsightly. Instead, he had only fueled the arrogance of his opponent. Since that was the case, there was nothing left to say. Brat, you can go down now. With those words, spiritual power erupted from his body as he hurled a fist at him. The spiritual force surged forth and coalesced into a colossal dragon in the air. In an instant, a domineering aura utterly engulfed Li Qingqian. This was a sage-tier art, the Overlord Dragon Fist. Li Qingqian was mildly surprised that his opponent had launched a sage-tier art right from the start, but upon reflection, he was within the Shindao sect, the foremost sect of the ancient era. He found his peace of mind restored. Facing the incoming dragon, he leaped into the air with unhurried composure. A towering golden giant materialized as an apparition behind him. The giant struck out with its palm, and an immense palm print materialized, grinding the dragon to ash inch by inch. Yet the momentum of that palm print remained undiminished, surging straight toward Yang Dianfeng. What? Yang Dianfeng recoiled in shock, never having anticipated such an outcome. He hastily hurled out another fist to block the strike, managing to deflect it, but was sent flying backwards several dozen zhang by the shockwave. The watching disciples were utterly dumbfounded. One must understand that even the chief disciples of the other three great sects would not have been able to suppress the senior brother in a single exchange. Yet now this Lin Fan had driven him back with a single palm. How can this person be so powerful? Come to think of it, that strike looked exactly like the Huangji palm of the Huangji sect. It doesn't just look like it. It is the Huangji palm. I once saw a member of the Huangji sect use it during a trial. Then how did he learn it? Could he be a spy sent by the Huangji sect? This fellow has even learned the Huangji sect's signature palm art. Elder Mo remarked with a chuckle. Beside him, Elder Shi also laughed. I really wonder where he picked it up. The two of them would not assume him to be a member of the Huangji sect merely because he knew one of their techniques. The sect master could not possibly have been ignorant of such a thing, and if he truly were from the Huangji sect, he would never have dared to use such a technique so openly on the Xindao sect's own grounds. As for how exactly Lin Fan had learned it, or where they were not in the least bit interested, the Huangji sect's Huangji palm, Yang Dianfeng recognized it at once. Unlike some of the disciples, he would not jump to the conclusion that Lin Fan was a spy, for such a thing proved nothing, just as he himself had mastered techniques of the Huangxin sect. Unleash your true strength, or I fear you won't stand a chance at all, Li Qingqian said coolly. Hearing this, Yang Dianfeng drew a deep breath, then, as you wish. His strength was indeed far from exhausted. His most fearsome asset was his spear art, a great emperor-tier technique of the sect, the Overlord spear art. To master this spear art, he had exhausted untold effort, completing missions, accumulating merit, and constantly challenging prodigious talents abroad. Only after enduring all manner of hardships had he obtained and successfully cultivated this technique. He had never unveiled this spear art before another soul. Today it seemed there was no avoiding its use. I must admit you have surprised me. But this far since here. Indeed, Li Qingqian nodded. It was time to bring this to a close. With a flick of Yang Dianfeng's wrist, a long spear materialized in his grasp. Its body a lustrous jet black, its tip gleaming with a cold and piercing light. A single glance was enough to sense the biting coldness emanating from it, as though one had been plunged into the depths of an icy lake. That's the senior brother's holy artifact, the soul-breaking spear. A disciple cried out in recognition. Yang Dianfeng shifted his stance, and in that very motion an unrivaled aura erupted from his entire being. The surrounding spiritual energy surged madly into the spear's tip, its momentum swelling ever greater. Seeing this, Li Qingqian did not hesitate any longer. The sovereign Xianyuan sword materialized from thin air into his grasp, and dense layered phantasms of stars ceaselessly flickered into being behind him. That's the great emperor-tier art of the Li family. The two elders could no longer remain composed. The earlier Huangji palm had not unsettled them, for that was merely a sage-tier art, rare, but not beyond the possibility of being leaked. But a great emperor-tier art was an entirely different matter. Generally, only core disciples and elders of one's own sect were permitted to cultivate it. Such techniques were never transmitted to outsiders, which was precisely why the two elders could not possibly remain calm upon witnessing Lin Fan employ one. The only explanation for his ability to wield such a technique was that he was a member of the Li family. There existed an unwritten convention in the cultivation world. Sects generally refrained from recruiting disciples who belonged to other major powers. This was because doing so could easily result in cultivating geniuses for one's enemies. Therefore, those they took in were mostly individuals with no ties to any major power. At this point, the two elders were already deliberating whether to investigate the background of this Lin Fan. It was not that they distrusted the sect master, but that such a matter allowed for no negligence. Kneel before me. With a thunderous roar, Yang Dianfeng's aura surged to its apex, and the spiritual power coursing through his spear transformed entirely into an abyssal black. An overwhelming aura emanated from the spear as Yang Dianfeng thrust it forward. The black spiritual power coalesced into the phantom of a colossal fierce beast which lunged directly toward Li Qingqian. Even disciples observing from afar could sense the immense power contained within. Li Qingqian's gaze sharpened as his own aura erupted to its zenith and the phantom stars fully materialized, 30,000 of them in total. A marked enhancement compared to before. Streams of blue stellar energy flowed ceaselessly from the star phantoms into the supreme Xianyuan sword in his grasp. In but a moment it had all been absorbed. Li Qingqian delivered a sudden devastating slash, and a colossal blue sword chi tore through the air. The sword chi collided with the fierce beast phantom, and a shockwave radiated outward from the point of impact. Countless disciples caught unprepared were sent tumbling to the ground. The power is absolutely terrifying. Indeed it is. I was blasted into the air by the shockwave from this distance. How can this Lin Fan be so impossibly powerful? There's no reason for it. I've never even heard of this person before. Hey brother, would you mind shifting your crotch? It's pressed right against my backside. Oh, my apologies. Quite the accident. At the center of the plaza, the fierce beast phantom held its ground for barely a moment before being cleaved apart by the sword chi, whose power remained undiminished as it cleaved straight toward Yang Dianfeng. This is bad. Elder Mo cried out in alarm. A surge of gray-white spiritual power erupted forth, shattering the sword chi in an instant. And yet that blade of energy had come within less than an arm's length of Yang Dianfeng. Yang Dianfeng's face was drenched in a dense sheen of cold sweat. Though he would not have perished had that sword chi gone unblocked, he most certainly would have sustained grave injuries. Li Qingqian knew with certainty that elders of the Shinto sect had intervened. Sure enough, two elderly figures appeared within his view, one clad in white robes, the other in black, both bearing solemn expressions. ELD. Yang Jianfeng had barely begun his greeting when Elder Mo raised a hand to silence him, and he could only retreat slowly. He had already lost. Remaining here any longer served no purpose, and it was clear the two elders had come for Lin Fan. Look, it's Elder Mo and Elder Sure. Indeed it is. Why are they walking toward Lin? The Holy Sun. What's happening? Could there be some hidden circumstances behind all this? Li Qingqian watched the two elders approach him slowly, his heart trembling with unease. After all, he had arrived here through inexplicable means, and had inexplicably become this person called Lin Fan. And now the Holy Son of the Shinto sect, no less. If his identity as an impostor were ever uncovered, the crime would be a grave one. Truthfully, this marked the first time since his transmigration that he had been gripped by genuine fear. Though the two supreme saints had not emanated even the faintest aura, the sheer weight of their presence remained palpable. Li Qingqian discerned from their expressions that his earlier use of the stellar sword art had undoubtedly drawn their attention. Truth be told, this is also our first time laying eyes upon you. The two elders had by now arrived before Li Qingqian, and it was Elder Mo who spoke first. You differ rather considerably from what we had imagined. Am I unsightly? Li Qingqian asked, bewildered. Of course not unsightly, merely vastly different from our expectations. Elder Sure could not fathom why he had suddenly posed such a question. Shall I leave then? Li Qingqian wished only to return swiftly to his humble dwelling. The pressure in the presence of these two elders was simply too immense to bear. Alas, you must come with us to the Grand Hall. Elder Mo sighed. The question was no longer whether Lin Fan might leave, but whether he was permitted to. At least until the matter had been thoroughly investigated, Lin Fan could not depart. Of course they could not treat him harshly either. Everything must await the sect master's judgment. Ha. What do you find so amusing? Elder Mo's gaze sharpened. Something about this Lin Fan seemed increasingly amiss. Li Qingqian hastily suppressed his laughter, waving his hands. Nothing at all. I merely recalled something amusing, that's all. Come with us. Oh. The three then proceeded toward the Grand Hall. In truth, Li Qingqian was not walking of his own accord at the rear. He was being carried forward by the aura of the two venerable figures. He had only realized this upon pausing for a moment. He had stopped, yet not fully stopped. His entire body continued gliding forward, and at a pace swifter than his own walking. Thus, he simply abandoned any effort to walk, conserving both time and energy. Elders, might I inquire your esteemed surnames? Are you married? How venerable is your age? Have you ever partaken in wellness treatments? Do you know how to dance the plaza dance? With nothing better to occupy himself, Li Qingqian cast forth a volley of questions in rapid succession. The two elders glanced at him simultaneously, their suspicion mounting. What on earth was this fellow asking about? The first few inquiries were at least comprehensible, but the latter two were utterly foreign to them. Neither deigned to respond. Seeing their silence, Li Qingqian lost his enthusiasm and quietly continued on the journey. Outside the council hall of the Shinto sect, Li Qingqian lifted his gaze, staring at the colossal palace before him for what felt like an eternity, lost for words. It was absurdly enormous. He had thought the Li family's estate vast beyond measure, yet this exceeded it several times over. Boy, stunned speechless are you? Stunned speechless indeed. Enough, let us enter. Oh. Li Qingqian followed the two elders inside with marked reluctance, though by now his earlier anxiety had considerably subsided. Upon reflection, he had merely stumbled into this place by accident. Its authenticity remained unverified. Yet he suspected there was a substantial probability this was merely a dream or illusion, rendering any cause for fear entirely unnecessary. He could simply act with abandon. The moment he stepped into the Grand Hall, Li Qingqian was utterly dumbfounded by the assembly. The hall's two sides were filled with seated figures. 8 supreme saints at the front with several dozen great saints behind them. Most terrifying of all was the middle-aged man at the head of the hall, seated upon the foremost throne with his eyes closed. Even from a considerable distance, Li Qingqian could sense a tremulous aura radiating from his person. This must surely be Dao Weiyuan, sect master of the Shinto sect, a sovereign of the great emperor realm, terrifying beyond words. The two elders cupped their fists. Sect master regarding the Holy Sun. I am aware. There is no need to elaborate. Dao Weiyuan silenced them, his eyes remaining closed. The other elders seated below in the hall offered no comment either. The two exchanged a glance, then proceeded toward the 2 vacant seats ahead and sat down slowly. It was at this moment that Li Qingqian noticed the man upon the foremost throne had opened his eyes. Merely gazing into those eyes, he felt as though he might plummet into an abyss. Is this not a dream? Or perhaps an illusion? How then could it feel so impossibly real? To verify his conjecture, Li Qingqian began behaving with impropriety. Regardless of the occasion, regardless of the circumstances, and regardless of any consequences, he cast all such considerations to the wind. He proceeded to tug at the beard of an elder at the great saint realm, then groped at this one and that one. The result was his discovery that he suffered no consequences whatsoever. These elders displayed no reaction either, merely fixing him with piercing gazes. As expected, this is nothing more than an illusion.